Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Chapter 351, Lighting the Match. Chapter 351, Lighting the Match. June 13, 2013, Avengers Tower. Tony Stark POV. I'm sorry, Tony, but I just can't sit still and do nothing. I would like to think that Bucky would understand that I would choose saving lives and waiting a little longer to see him again. He would know that my priority is always the people I protect. And that he would do the same if he was in my place, the men responded. The "unlike you" was unsaid, but he didn't need to do it. Everyone understood the implication that Tony was unworthy in Steve's eyes. Well, he's done trying. If the man wants to get himself arrested for his own self-righteousness, then he was welcome to do so without his input. Tony just sighed and deflated. You're set on this, aren't you? Yes. I'm sorry that it's coming to this, Tony. I really am. No, you're not. But you do this and get arrested, and I'll be washing my hands of you. I tried to reason with you and you're the ones that are too stubborn to listen, Tony replied. The Cap nodded and turned towards the elevator. He was followed by Sam, the Falcon, Wilson and Bruce, the Hulk, Banner. They were going to fight the Abomination and inevitably fall to Ross' plan. Yeah, things were so going to shit. Tony just stood there staring at the elevator as half of his team walked out on their plan just because Cap was too stubborn to listen to him. He sighed in exasperation before knocking over the table next to him in anger while yelling out, "That fucking idiot." There was nothing he could do now, and he knew it. If he tried to stop Rogers, then the both of them would be arrested. Honestly, Tony couldn't risk him being arrested at all. The government would be able to repossess everything he owned, which would include the designs of the arc reactor and his suits, and that would be a catastrophe on a global scale. Natasha seemed the far more sensible one. We need a plan for the fallout. What plan? They fucking ruined the entire plan. I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. Those three idiots will fight the Abomination. Wilson will just stand there doing nothing, except maybe go around saving civilians. Because in a fight like this, he wouldn't be able to do much. Cap will barely be able to do anything because he's not even close to matching Abomination's raw strength, but he'll still try to fight him head-on and will easily be defeated. Tony protested. Rhodey nodded. Yeah, that's probably it. What about Banner? Well, he is obviously going to be the one actually fighting, Tony drawled back, which will end up like the Harlem fight. And either way the collateral damage of a fight of this scale will be very high, which will push the public towards assigning the Accords. But get this is the best possible outcome. The worst one is them declared as fugitives and hunted down across the country, in which case they will need to hide away somewhere, probably Wakanda. Which is exactly what we should have done. We could have stood in the sidelines of these Accords, trying to find a better way, but Steve is forcing the issue with his hero complex. So, we're fucked. Rhodey asked mockingly. Tony nodded. That's an apt way of summarizing our situation. Look, you'll be fine. You're our military liaison and you're not enhanced, and as long as you don't fire weapons without being ordered to, you're not breaking any laws and don't have to sign anything. Same thing with me and Nat, we don't have superpowers, and as long as we don't break the law in obvious ways, the Accords don't apply to us. The Avengers were an issue while not signing because of Steve and Bruce, and now our only enhanced members are breaking the Accords in the middle of the day. Rhodey groaned, finally understanding the billionaire's point. So, Bruce and Steve will be declared as fugitives for breaking the Accords and making an example out of them. And Sam will be arrested for vigilante behavior and illegally firing guns in the middle of a crowded street. And since the rest of us don't actually have any superpowers, our silent protest won't mean shit. The genius nodded. Now you get it. I tried explaining it to them, but now they screwed things up. In his little righteous speech, Steve made sure that we won't have any say in the Accords or help amend them in any way. Sure, he'll probably save a few people, but he stopped us from helping an entire race, which will probably start a war. Tony released a bitter smile and walked to the bar and opened a bottle of whiskey. He poured it into his glass and raised it, to Captain America, everyone. Honestly, Tony had the right to be angry. Even after the New York invasion, people still trusted Steve fucking Rogers more than they did him. Tony couldn't believe that this was the man his father kept bragging about. He was so close-minded that it wasn't even funny. Because of him, Wilson will probably end up in prison while Bruce will be on the run again. Then again, they were all adults and knew the risks. It's just a shame that they didn't see how much their actions would end up hurting thousands if not millions around the world. Tony just opened the television towards a news channel, waiting for the inevitable. So far, his teammates hadn't arrived yet to the fight, probably because Tony refused them access to the Quinjet. They probably had to get there on foot or while driving. Rogers did have a motorcycle that could transport him and Banner while Wilson flies. Tony winced when he saw the Abomination take out a lamppost and use it to skewer a few cars. There were barely any civilians left, having wisely run away from the big green monster. For a fraction of a second, Tony hoped that Steve had changed his mind, that he would see reason. Alas, that hope was crushed seconds later when he saw Falcon try to drop-kick the abomination. He might as well have been a fly trying to punch an elephant. Blonsky barely noticed it and just slapped him away. The Falcon-themed hero righted himself in the air and fired his guns at the abomination, which, considering how little they affected the Hulk, was a very bad idea. As expected, Blonsky snarled and grabbed Wilson before throwing him away in the air. It wasn't really that surprising. A man with a glorified jetpack and wings can't fight a giant gamma monster that was almost invincible. Thankfully, the abomination didn't have the time to finish the job since he was hit with Captain America's shield in the face. Funnily enough, his neck cracked from the impact. That damn shield was really something, but any attempt at scanning the materials didn't work for some reason. He couldn't even get a sample to perform tests properly. The gamma monster snarled in anger and ran towards the World War II hero. Steve really showed why he's known as the first super soldier, as he jumped over his enemy's thrusting arm, and ran up it to kick him in the face. People really underestimated how strong Steve really was. Although, the billionaire was pretty sure that his young pseudo-apprentice, also known as Spider-Man, was a lot stronger. Speaking of the kid, Tony was happy to see that he was keeping his head down ever since the Accords became a thing. The genius had warned him not to go out as Spider-Man because of the very real risk of him being arrested. Honestly, the kid was pretty bad at covering his tracks and Tony had to hack a few computers just to delete footage or photos that might jeopardize Peter's identity. Although, it was nice to see that at least someone listened to his plans. The fact that a teenager had more sense than Captain fucking America was very ironic, especially because of the PSA videos that the man accidentally agreed to film. Those were hilarious. The kid told him about his school using them during detention or something. Back to the fight at hand, Cap was able to hold his ground but didn't really cause any damage to his opponent. Oh, he was doing very well all things considered, but he was, just not enough. Finally, the war hero was taken by surprise by a feint, and ended up blocking a punch with his shield. Oh, the man was fine, but he had lost his shield. The abomination tried to grab him with his arm, only for him to widen his arms at the resistance. Captain America was somehow stopping the hand of the monster with all his might. Rhodey whistled, "I didn't know Steve was that strong." "Oh, he is," Tony replied, "that serum really is something special to be able to do something like that. Too bad that he's fighting so inefficiently." Natasha nodded, "Yeah, he should have tried to glue his mouth and nostrils shut. Super monster or not, Blonsky needs to breathe. It probably wouldn't kill him, but it could knock him out." Tony nodded in acceptance, and they all continued to anxiously watch the fight. Cap was still holding back Blonsky's arm. But unfortunately, the super soldier also forgot about the thing's second hand which punched the hero in the face, sending him flying back. Tony winced at the impact. That had to have hurt. The gamma monster slowly walked towards the downed war hero but was interrupted by a roar. The billionaire didn't know whether to be happy or exasperated by the Hulk's appearance. Bruce seemed to finally let the monster out and this was going to be a slugfest of the highest proportions. The only thing he could think of would be to use his Hulkbuster armor, but he would rather the government not know about it, and he would be arrested with them. As expected, the abomination turned towards its mortal enemy and ran at him. Unlucky for him, the Hulk had gotten a lot stronger since their last encounter. Tony's teammate dodged the charge and hit him with a punch in the face. The gamma monster flew back into a building that looked partially destroyed. The Hulk then grabbed a car and threw it at him, causing another explosion. Tony winced as he saw this happen. This didn't look good for them at all. He could practically see their credibility as humanity's defenders slowly wither away. The abomination returned unharmed, and the fight continued. Honestly, it was horrifying to watch. The two giants kept fighting and destroying building after building, car after car. And Tony was helpless to do anything but watch. The city block looked more like a war zone barely a few minutes later. Cap and Falcon had joined up with the Hulk, but they were barely any help aside from acting like distractions. Damn it, Rogers, this was precisely why he didn't want to get involved in this. Still, Tony was still waiting for the other shoe to drop, and he was proven correct once again barely more than a minute later. The two giants seemed to freeze momentarily, until a blonde woman wearing a blue jumpsuit revealed herself. Tony immediately recognized her as Susan Storm, and she was holding a force field to stop the two gamma monsters. Of course, the two monsters broke through the fields quite easily and attacked the blonde, only for them to be hit with a fireball courtesy of Susan's brother who arrived flying down. Ben Grimm ran at the Hulk with a giant needle in hand which somehow penetrated the giant's skin. As for the abomination, Reed Richards' hand entangled himself around its body, immobilizing it, and stabbed him with the same kind of needle. The two gamma monsters stumbled around and then fell unconscious, and that was it. The abomination and Hulk were out, Cap and Wilson were restrained by Susan Storm, and her boyfriend spoke up, Emil Blonsky, Bruce Banner, and Steve Rogers, "You are under arrest for violating the Enhanced Registration Act." Sam Wilson, you are under arrest for vigilantism and firing a lethal weapon illegally in a public place. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 352, Backup. Chapter 352, Backup. June 13, 2013, Avengers Tower. Tony Stark POV. The two giants seemed to freeze momentarily, until a blonde woman wearing a blue jumpsuit revealed herself. Tony immediately recognized her as Susan Storm, and she was holding a force field to stop the two gamma monsters. Of course, the two monsters broke through the fields quite easily and attacked the blonde, only for them to be hit with a fireball courtesy of Susan's brother who arrived flying down. Ben Grimm ran at the Hulk with a giant needle in hand which somehow penetrated the giant's skin. As for the Abomination, Reed Richards' hand entangled himself around its body, immobilizing it, and stabbed him with the same kind of needle. The two gamma monsters stumbled around and then fell unconscious, and that was it. The Abomination and Hulk were out, Cap and Wilson were restrained by Susan Storm, and her boyfriend spoke up, Emil Blonsky, Bruce Banner, and Steve Rogers, you are under arrest for violating the Enhanced Registration Act. Sam Wilson, you are under arrest for vigilantism and firing a lethal weapon illegally in a public place. Tony sighed in exasperation and closed the television. The remaining Avengers just stayed silent at the clusterfuck that just occurred. Rhodey was the one to break the silence. Well, that just happened. Tony nodded solemnly. Yes, it did. I told Cap not to get involved, to do things the right way. Now, we're fucked. Our reputation is in ruins, and whatever voice we had regarding the Accords is gone. What do we do, now? Natasha asked. Honestly, Tony didn't know. I don't think there's anything we could do. We're not much of a team, are we? We're 3 humans, 2 of which use high-tech armor, and another is an assassin. I don't think that the Avengers are a thing anymore. That sucks. Rhodey snarled. Yeah, it does. But Ross played it well. The Abomination was right next to us, and Steve wouldn't have been able to stop himself. Tony downed his drink and called out, to the Avengers. We had a good time. The moment he finished, he heard a voice behind him, that you did, Stark. That you did. The billionaire turned around and saw the 2 redheads that he was supposed to help change the Accords. They had a plan which backfired disastrously. Tony didn't keep his part of the bargain. Honestly, Tony didn't care that he was going to get chewed out by the 2 women, he was too devastated because of what happened to his team. He gave the intruders a sad smile. Are you here to yell at me again? Maximoff seemed to be the one snarling at him. How the hell did that happen? We had a plan, Stark. Tony nodded. We did, and I didn't do my part. Arguing with Steve Rogers against saving people and fighting monsters is like talking to a wall. Screw Rogers, Gray exclaimed. The biggest problem is Banner destroying half a city block in his fight with the Abomination. Who let the idiot join a fight near civilian settlements? He thought that it was his responsibility because the Abomination was made using his blood or something. Look, what am I supposed to do? I'm not the leader here, and half my team didn't ever respect me enough to listen to me. The billionaire turned towards what remained of his team and noticed that both Rhodey and Nat had raised their guns, and were pointing them at the intruders. He snorted, put the guns down, trust me, they wouldn't do much against them. Plus, they're my guests. We hatched the whole silent protest plan together, and they helped us guarantee Wakanda's help as well. Natasha seemed to recognize them, Wanda Maximoff and Jean Grey, 2 of the most powerful mutants in the world. Yeah, I get your point. They both lowered their guns, but still stayed alert in case of an attack. It was sweet in a murdery sort of way. Still, for all he wanted to get wasted and stop thinking about the sinking ship that was his team, Tony needed to plan on what to do going forwards. So, what now? Jean groaned. Well, we tried the peaceful way by working with them to make the damn things at least adhere to basic human rights. But Ross and Richards have done their best to destroy any hope of that. So, now, we'll need to destroy the Accords entirely and set back the official recognition of enhanced beings in laws by years. But it's better than our whole race being enslaved. Tony didn't like the sound of that. It reminded him eerily of fanatics. Natasha seemed to have gotten to the same conclusion. And how are you going to do that? You're sounding too much like Magneto for my liking. Maximoff snorted. I killed that man for what he was planning to do, and what he had done to me. Trust me, you have no idea what he was like. The redhead grabbed her companion's hand to comfort her. No, we won't be using violence at all. Did you really think that we would put all of our eggs in one basket? No, Stark, you were just the safest and all-around best choice. No, we'll do to the Accords what Jasmine did to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. We're going to use the entire public against them. And how are you going to do that? Rhodey questioned. Did you really think that we have been doing nothing for the past few days? Ever since our last meeting with Tony, we have put invisible bugs near every single influential person that is heavily supporting the Accords. In mere days, we have a collection of videos ready to be leaked about politicians trying to use the Accords to make their own enhanced armies, or to use them in certain experiments, or maybe even to just kill them in fear of their powers. We have everything we need to destroy any credibility the Accords might have. Wanda said with a smug voice. Then why haven't you? Natasha asked with a frown. The idea of the Accords isn't really bad in theory. It was the logical step to deal with the rising number of people with superpowers around the world. Laws specific to these cases needed to be written, and registering powers was always going to happen. Jean explained, we were all for the Accords, as long as the people registering weren't hunted down in their civilian lives, and the Accords were fair to everyone. But what was written didn't even try to be fair, just exert the most control over the population. Which is why we resisted. Using the Avengers population to amend the troublesome sections of the laws would have helped bridge the gap between regular humans and enhanced ones. Tearing it apart entirely wouldn't be a step in the right direction and will only prolong this integration. But it's far better than following the current Accords and rolling over. Tony snorted, so, either way, Ross loses. Yeah, he does. Our bugs on him did reveal an interesting conversation between him and Richards, where Ross blackmailed him into trying to convince you to sign the Accords. Ross is done for, that's something that we're sure about. All we have to do is click one button, and all his ambitions, all his reputation will be gone. We tried playing nice with him, but he wanted to fight dirty. It's only right that we do too, Wanda replied with a bloodthirsty grin. What about our teammates? The former assassin questioned. The two intruders looked at each other and burst into laughter. They're already in Wakanda, safe and sound. King Chaka should take care of them there. And we did leave Ross a nice present in their place. The redhead nodded. Look, let's just get this thing started. She opened her phone and pushed a button. Now, it's done. All we have to do is watch as the Accords burn. Huh, Tony liked the sound of that, although he did wonder what the surprise that they left Ross was. Thaddeus Ross POV. Thaddeus Ross was over the moon. His plan worked without a hitch, and Richards played his part perfectly. The Hulk and Captain America were now under arrest and would soon sign the Accords, and serve their country in his name. Blonsky, also known as the Abomination, had been released in the middle of a street in New York, right next to the ridiculous Avengers Tower. Trust Stark to make such a disgusting and high-profile building to satisfy his ego. Richards had designed a drug especially made to deal with the Hulk, which would mean that it would work on Blonsky as well. He had even made a special needle that could break through their skin to administer the sedative. Of course, the idiots that call themselves Earth's mightiest heroes decided to fight the Abomination, although unfortunately only half of them showed up, and Stark hadn't come to do it. Still, the Hulk and Captain America were enough to discredit Stark and his team, enough for people to start seeing the Accords as a viable option and not follow the Avengers' lead and not sign. Because Ross knew how the Enhanced thought. They were arrogant in their powers, dismissive of the police and military, dismissive of regular people as a whole. They thought themselves to be gods, and Ross had shown the world time and time again that they were not. This was why he was hired as the Secretary of State. He had experience in dealing with these kinds of people, and what happened to the Avengers were proof of that. And now it was time for him to reclaim his prize. He walked to the cells designed specifically for each captured Avenger. Their gear was collected to be sent to the labs and studied later. When he saw the cells, he imagined seeing the terrified face of Bruce Banner, the man who had cost him his relationship with his daughter, the man that Ross had chased for almost a decade and cost him many of his men. And yet, when he looked through the cell, he didn't see any of that. He blinked to make sure that he wasn't imagining it, but instead of Banner, there was a huge stuffed toy of the Hulk that was the size of a grown man. He gritted his teeth, looked at the sergeant that escorted him in, and snarled, "Are you joking with me, soldier?" "Sir," the man responded with a confused tone. "Tell me why a toy is in that room instead of my prisoner." Ross responded while gritting his teeth. The soldier looked inside and paled. "I swear to you, sir, that the prisoner was unconscious, and in that room, the last time I was here." "I want the security footage, and check on the other prisoners," the Secretary of State ordered. "Yes, sir," the sergeant responded. He ran back and returned 2 minutes later, visibly tired. "The prisoners are all replaced by toys, but Blonsky is still in our custody. The surveillance footage has been sent to you. And the gear. Also replaced by toys, sir." Ross gritted his teeth and opened his phone to see the footage sent to him. It didn't show much, only that everything happened in a single frame. Everything was looking fine, the prisoners were all locked up and their gear was fine. And in the next frame, they were all replaced by toys. It was madness. Whoever had done this wanted to rescue the Avengers. It was probably Stark. He was the only one with the pull and technology to pull something like this. Before he could say anything, he was called by the President of the United States. How did he know about this so quickly? The former general responded, "Hello. The president seemed to be calm and very nervous at the same time. Thaddeus, we have a big problem. Oh, he didn't like the sound of that at all. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 353, Prepared for the Worst. Chapter 353, Prepared for the Worst. June 13, 2013, Thaddeus Ross Office. Thaddeus Ross POV. Ross gritted his teeth and opened his phone to see the footage sent to him. It didn't show much, only that everything happened in a single frame. Everything was looking fine, the prisoners were all locked up and their gear was fine. And in the next frame, they were all replaced by toys. It was madness. Whoever had done this wanted to rescue the Avengers. It was probably Stark, he was the only one with the pull and technology to pull something like this. Before he could say anything, he was called by the President of the United States. How did he know about this so quickly? The former general responded, "Hello." The president seemed to be calm and very nervous at the same time. "Thaddeus, we have a big problem." Oh, he didn't like the sound of that at all. Well, it didn't take long to see the damage caused by Stark's little temper tantrum. Because it was obviously Stark who had done so, as a response for arresting his teammates. The videos were posted minutes after the Avengers' arrests, and around the same time as their incomprehensible escape. Alas, it didn't matter who did it, only that it did happen. Ross' career was practically over, but worst of all, his project, his dream of a better world was as good as dead. The Accords were the pinnacle of his life's work, his masterpiece. He was able to convince the world to legally oppress people with powers. Had Stark not ruined it, by the end of the year, Ross would have tagged and recruited most of the people with superpowers in the country. He would have had a veritable army of superweapons, ready to serve their country, willingly or not. There are methods to force compliance to uncooperative subjects, after all. He would have even been able to rouse the hidden mutants from society. Oh, he knew that they didn't disappear, but after Magneto and Xavier's deaths, the mutant factions were dissolved and there were very few major conflicts. All known mutants fled and disappeared, and the unknown ones hid their powers and lived under the radar. That's what the analysts said anyway. The Accords would have given them a way to stop hiding who they were, a pretense of freedom, where they would be monitored and arrested the moment they cross any line. Yes, the Accords were unjust and oppressive, but they had to be. He needed to bring order into a world where a teenager could blow up a street in a temper tantrum. The rules needed to be strict. They first needed for things to become orderly, before they could relax the restrictions. But Stark had ruined all of this. He had somehow bugged the devices of every person that Ross had convinced of the Accords' viability, and brought all of their dirt forward. Ross' own classified documents regarding his encounters with the Hulk and his relentless pursuit of him ended up on the web. That's not even mentioning many of his meetings, including the one where he told his subordinates to release the Abomination. The meeting with Reed, pressuring him into convincing Stark to sign, was the cherry on top. Ross came off like some power-hungry monster instead of the patriotic soldier he was deep down. Well, the Accords lost most of their credibility with that stunt, and Ross sincerely hoped that Stark was proud of himself. The future was now uncertain, but a war between humans and the Enhanced was very probable. The Secretary of State needed to find a way out of this mess, which was why he was planning on visiting the Avengers Tower as soon as possible. He was practically on his way out when his receptionist buzzed. "What is it, Mary?" "Bolivar Trask is here to see you, sir." The woman responded. The Secretary of State stifled a groan. He really didn't have the energy to deal with Trask at this moment. He was a businessman that was a snake through and through. Unfortunately, the man was also a very heavy sponsor of the Accords, and now that they were in jeopardy, the men came either to collect or to put more pressure on Ross. Well, he might as well bite the bullet. Let him in. A minute later, the dwarf genius entered his office with an arrogant swagger. The former general wanted to punch him in the face immediately. "Dr. Trask, I wasn't expecting you." "Well, with how things are suddenly spiraling out of control, I thought that some impulsivity was required. I couldn't just wait for the usual channels to arrange a meeting. So, I chose to come and see you as soon as possible." The men responded. Ross wasn't in the mood for political talks. "Look, what do you want, Trask? You already know how much I have to deal with. Just say your piece and let me try to salvage this situation." The dwarf chuckled. "You're misunderstanding my presence here. I am not here to admonish you or ridicule you, I am here to help you." "How did you put it?" "Oh yes, salvage the situation, . And how are you going to do that?" "Well, you do know that the UN had given me a contract to create machines that would help enforce the Accords. Well, I am done. It took a lot of time and experimentation, but I have finally built the ultimate anti-enhanced weapons. They will not remain unchecked for much longer," the businessman bragged. "Yes, but the Accords are already in contention," Ross answered. These machines will be useless if they are redacted or voted out. Perhaps, but the Accords are in jeopardy because of the Avengers. Prove to the world that you can enforce the Accords, that you can defy the Avengers, that you can protect humanity in their stead, and you will be respected and feared enough that no one would dare oppose what you stand for, the dwarf monologued. The man wasn't really wrong. Oh, he thought he was manipulating Ross, and that would be funny, if it wasn't for the mess he was dealing with. But yes, as far as Ross could see, nothing would be able to change the public opinion about the Accords. No one could take back the videos and leaked documents that are online. The only way forward, with even the slightest chance at salvaging the Accords, would be with a show of force. An implicit threat of what might happen if the Accords do not go through. And what better show of power was there than defeating Earth's mightiest heroes? Unfortunately, with Richards ghosting his calls, there was nothing he could do on that front. A nice idea, the former general commented, but we can't deal with them, especially with Stark's technology. We simply lack the firepower to do so. Not anymore, Trask affirmed, this is what I have made for the UN. This is the Sentinel program. The dwarf put a small cube on his desk, and a hologram appeared. Nonetheless, Ross was speechless at what he saw. It was the designs of a suit that looked even more advanced than Stark's, with some kind of adaptive technology. The former general stared at the designs and blueprints with awe. Is this a suit? No, General, this isn't a suit. This is a fully autonomous drone with a basic targeting and combat artificial intelligence. I was able to create a scanner capable of detecting a type of radiation that comes from most mutants and a few types of enhanced beings. I will admit that I wasn't able to replicate Stark's power source, but a few of the Chitauri cores from the invasion fixed that issue. The Sentinels are capable of flight and hold a lot of firepower. They will not tire, and they will not make any mistakes. But the most impressive thing is the advancement in adaptive nanotechnology that was able to make them adaptive to practically any opponent. They are also made almost entirely out of adamantium, and thus are practically indestructible. These are the ultimate weapons against mutants. The swords of humanity. They are my masterpieces and I know that you'll use them well. Show the world that might does not make right, that the Avengers can be held accountable as well. The Secretary of State would never admit to it, but he was completely taken by the speech. These were the answer, the ultimate firepower he needed, to make his dreams come true. This was the proper way of making sure that order was maintained. He steeled himself and asked, how many have you made so far? 10 exactly, the genius answered. I was going to present them in the next meeting, but, as you probably know, things didn't really go according to plan. Transport them here as soon as you can. I will need to use them soon. The dwarf gave him a wide smile. I'm sure that you'll use them wisely. The Sentinels should be ready and at your disposal this afternoon. Now, I know that you're a busy man, so I will let you be. If you have any issues or questions, this is my private number. Goodbye, Mr. Secretary, and good luck. The man left a card on his desk and walked away. Ross, though, didn't really care. He had found his answer. The Sentinels couldn't have come at a better time. The detection system that Trask had made could be used and distributed worldwide as to make sure that no mutant would be able to hide. The Sentinels themselves were the weapons that the Iron Man suit should have been in the first place. They would be enough to deal with most opponents, but doubts started to appear in Ross' mind. He had seen the Hulk firsthand. Could they deal with someone like Banner, who can destroy buildings with a punch, and travel miles with a single jump? The answer was a resounding no. They would give Stark and his little army of Iron Men trouble, probably even defeat them. They would decimate Steve Rogers, and the rest of the Avengers without any issue. Thor was off-world, which was a good thing. But the main problem was the Hulk. Richards wasn't answering him, and thus neither the drug the genius created, nor the syringe to bypass Banner's skin, would be available to him to fight against the Green Gamma monster. Fine, the former general murmured to himself, I'll do it myself. Yes, he would. It was something of a last resort, but if he doesn't succeed with his mission, everything he ever worked for would turn to dust, and he couldn't let that happen. Ross walked to a painting on his wall and removed it, revealing the safe hidden behind. After unlocking it, he took out a silver briefcase and closed the safe once more. He sat down at his desk and opened the case. Inside was a red serum that was glowing ominously. It was something that the labs had discreetly made. He had found around a pint of Banner's blood after the mess with Blonsky years back. He asked the labs to somehow synthesize what made Banner into the Hulk, and they failed. The result was too unstable. Until, that is, one of the scientists had the bright idea to combine their failed batches with the extremis virus from another company that the military acquired. Of course, the result was explosive, and the batches destroyed, except for a single vial, where the two serums were able to counteract each other somehow and become stable. The science was above him, but he had on his hand an untested serum filled with the powers of the Hulk and the extremis virus. Honestly, he normally wouldn't have done anything this reckless, but he had no choice. Ross gritted his teeth and plunged the serum into his leg. He did his best to stifle the scream as the power coursed through his blood. Oh, he could feel the power all right. As the man's eyes grew red, and his skin started to change, despite the agony, Thaddeus Ross let out a bloodthirsty smile. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 354, Hope for the Best. June 13, 2013, Thaddeus Ross office. Thaddeus Ross POV. He asked the labs to somehow synthesize what made Banner into the Hulk, and they failed. The result was too unstable. Until, that is, one of the scientists had the bright idea to combine their failed batches with the extremis virus from another company that the military acquired. Of course, the result was explosive, and the batches destroyed, except for a single vial, where the two serums were able to counteract each other somehow and become stable. The science was above him, but he had on his hand an untested serum filled with the powers of the Hulk and the extremis virus. Honestly, he normally wouldn't have done anything this reckless, but he had no choice. Ross gritted his teeth and plunged the serum into his leg. He did his best to stifle the scream as the power coursed through his blood. Oh, he could feel the power all right. As the man's eyes grew red, and his skin started to change, despite the agony, Thaddeus Ross let out a bloodthirsty smile. Tony Stark POV. Tony Stark was drinking again. It was a shame, he was sober for months, but lately, things have been driving him to drinking much more. The previous day, Cap, Bruce, and Sam decided to foolishly fall to Ross' trap. And now, the Avengers were no more. If it wasn't for Gray and Maximoff, they would have still been in jail. Oh, they also practically nuked the Accords, and the public opinion kept getting worse and worse with every leaked photo and video. Honestly, the media had a field day with the number of scandals. Tony himself had bit the bullet and posted the Avengers debate about what to do with the Accords, and that was practically the final nail in the coffin. Even with the mess Cap had caused, people still listened to the Avengers, or at least, what used to be the Avengers. Funnily enough, Reed Richards and his team weren't affected too heavily by the backlash of these reveals. How the hell were Jean and Wanda able to leak a video of their meeting weeks ago, still baffled and scared the billionaire. It was obvious that Reed didn't approve of the Accords, and that he was only going along with it to start a governmental organization dealing with the enhanced individuals all over the planet. The genius had wanted to change the Accords from the inside, while he, Tony Stark, wanted to oppose them outright, and only sign when they're agreeable. As for the Avengers, well, the team was practically disbanded. Cap, Hulk, and Falcon were now in the outpost in Wakanda, living as outcasts, and considered to be fugitives in every country that had signed the Accords. Thor was off-world, Clint had retired, Rhodey was away dealing with the fallout with the military, and Natasha had disappeared, for some reason or another. That woman was still a mystery to him, even years later. Currently, Tony was the only Avenger in the tower. Perhaps he should name it back to Stark Tower. After all, it was true now. Tony snorted at the thought, but it wasn't as if his teammates were coming back anytime soon. Tony downed another shot of whiskey. Damn Ross for sacrificing hundreds of lives just to apprehend the Avengers. Damn Steve for falling for it so easily. Damn the two redhead mutants for using that to their advantage in the little worldwide chess game that they're playing. Oh, Tony could see it clearly. The Morrigan had manipulated history in ways that he could never imagine, and her underlings were doing the same with the mutant issue. Tony was used as a pawn in their little game, and he didn't like it. Oh, he benefited from their trick with Ross, but they were betting on his failing, not succeeding. It just rubbed him the wrong way. He wanted the world to be as simple as it used to be. Before New York, aliens, and mutant gods, before even Afghanistan. It was easier then to ignore the innocents that kept dying at the hands of the people in power. Tony's pondering was interrupted by Jarvis' voice. "Sir, it appears that the Secretary of State, Thaddeus Ross, is here to see you." The billionaire groaned to himself, what the hell does the bastard want now? He did not specify, "Sir, but he is very insistent in wanting to see you." Tony sighed in exasperation, just let him up. It's not like he could do anything, really. Right away, sir, the artificial intelligence responded. A couple of minutes later, the elevator opened, revealing Ross in his usual military uniform. He did not look happy, not that Tony expected him to be after the public crucifixion he was still going through. Tony didn't get up and just raised a glass to the former general. "Well, if it isn't Thaddeus Ross. Why did you grace me with your presence?" The Secretary of State gave him an incredulous look. "Are you seriously asking me what I'm doing here?" "Well, yeah," Tony answered with a shrug. "Do you have any idea of what you've done, what the consequences of your actions will be? Years of planning are now going down the drain, and you've all but made a war between humanity and mutants inevitable," the man yelled out. Tony snorted. "You seriously think that I was the one to cause the leak?" Oh, I will admit that the timing is suspect, but I honestly had nothing to do with it. The fact that my own systems were hacked, as well as Richard's, is a huge security risk that we should all be taking more seriously. Plus, I agreed with Reed when it came to the fact that the Accords were necessary. It was why I wanted to protest it, not destroy it. It's like accusing a protester of being a terrorist. Yeah, we might not like it and say that we don't, it doesn't mean that we're willing to destroy everything for no reason. Are you expecting me to believe that nonsense? The former general answered while gritting his teeth. I'm being honest here. I'm not the one responsible for the leak. I was just as surprised as you were. If I had to guess, it would be that a technologically inclined mutant did it. Seriously, my security is ironclad, and so is Reed's. It's the only thing that makes sense. Plus, you knew that our plan was to wait you out, it was why you released the abomination practically on our door, wasn't it? Believe me, it would have taken me at least a couple of days, maybe even a week to pull something like this off, and that's me talking. I know I'm arrogant and everything, but there are very few people who could surpass me in hacking, and whoever did it is better than I am. Ross seemed to pale in fear, then shook his head. I didn't send the abomination after you. I'm not an idiot, Ross. Blonsky was under your supervision, under your lock and key. He was constantly sedated, and somehow, just after the Accords were signed, he mysteriously escaped your military base, without anyone knowing about it, which considering your fights with the Hulk, is very unlikely to say the least, and came to New York, in the middle of Manhattan, a few blocks away from my tower, just to wreck some stuff for no reason. Yeah, shoot me if I don't believe such an obvious lie. Tony answered with a smirk on his face. The former general grinded his teeth until he huffed. Fine, I don't care about the leak. It's done, and there's no going back. What I need from you is the location of your teammates. Tony snorted. You declared half of my team to be fugitives, 2 practically retired, and 1 is the liaison to the military. Congratulations, Ross, the Avengers are dead, and you're the one who pulled the trigger. Then tell me where they are. Ross insisted. I honestly don't know. The only one whose location I know is Rhodey, and he's with the Air Force for some meeting regarding the Accords. The general glared at him, and Tony could swear that his eyes glowed slightly. Don't joke with me, Stark. You're the one who got them out. Replacing them with stuffed toys of themselves was very funny and everything, but they broke the law. You broke the law. I'm willing to forgive your transgressions in honor of your father, but my patience is wearing thin. I do not appreciate the way you are hiding criminals from justice. Again, I'm not the one who got them out. You need to stop blaming me for everything you don't like, Ross. Tony answered him with a smug grin on his face. This is your final warning, Stark. I know that it was you. Stop pretending that I'm an idiot, and just tell me where they are, so that we could put all this behind us. Was it getting hotter in the room? Tony certainly felt like it was. Maybe, the air conditioning was failing or something. Tony didn't care, he had to deal with Ross before he goes mad and tries to arrest him as well. The man was practically foaming from the mouth by the end of his rant. It was disturbing on so many levels, and Tony didn't like it. The former general seriously looked deranged, and would probably try to arrest him just for the sake of it. He needed the men to see reason and not do something hasty. Tony cleared his throat. Look, Ross. I'm not the one who leaked the files. I'm not even the one who rescued my teammates. But since that doesn't seem to matter to you, let me tell it to you in another way. The fact is that you don't have a shred of proof that I did anything wrong, and you won't find anything because I am innocent. I'm not enhanced so you can't arrest me just because you want to, and I didn't go out with my suit ever since the Accords were signed. If you want to try arresting me, you can speak with my legal team and do it through them, but you don't have the grounds to come here, threaten to arrest me for no reason other than you know that it was me. I can do whatever the fuck I want, Stark, the Secretary of State yelled out. Yeah, just back off. You already said a lot of morally dubious crap in this meeting, which is also being recorded. Just leave me alone, and I won't post anything. It's not like it would be worth anything, really, your days are numbered anyway, the billionaire responded. The former general, though, seemed to get angrier, and practically growled at the genius. Is that what you think, Stark? That I'm powerless? Well, aren't you? You're here as a last measure, where you're hoping to arrest the Avengers and put them back into your cells, to prove to the world that you're still capable. Well, you're wrong, and from what I'm seeing of you, you're barely stable as is. So, just accept your loss and move on, Thaddeus. It's better for everyone if you just do. I guarantee it. Guarantee it, the former general asked himself, guarantee it. You miserable son of a bitch. I have done everything I could to protect my country, and this is how you repay me. You ungrateful brat. As he was talking, he was getting redder and redder, and oddly growing. His eyes started to glow red, and it looked like they were on fire. The process was slow, but it didn't take long for the general to turn into some odd red version of the Hulk. Although, for some reason, he was oddly burning. The ground seemed to melt slightly with every step. Tony looked at the monster that used to be the Secretary of State, and only one word came to his mind: fuck. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 355, Red Hulk. Chapter 355, Red Hulk. June 13, 2013, Avengers Tower. Tony Stark POV. The former general, though, seemed to get angrier, and practically growled at the genius. Is that what you think, Stark? That I'm powerless? Well, aren't you? You're here as a last measure, where you're hoping to arrest the Avengers and put them back into your cells, to prove to the world that you're still capable. Well, you're wrong, and from what I'm seeing of you, you're barely stable as is. So, just accept your loss and move on, Thaddeus. It's better for everyone if you just do. I guarantee it. Guarantee it, the former general asked himself, guarantee it. You miserable son of a bitch. I have done everything I could to protect my country, and this is how you repay me. You ungrateful brat. As he was talking, he was getting redder and redder, and oddly growing. His eyes started to glow red, and it looked like they were on fire. The process was slow, but it didn't take long for the general to turn into some odd red version of the Hulk. Although, for some reason, he was oddly burning. The ground seemed to melt slightly with every step. Tony looked at the monster that used to be the Secretary of State, and only one word came to his mind: fuck. What the hell did Ross do to himself? Was he able to somehow reproduce Banner's accident? It was different, though. Outside the obvious red skin, the heat surrounding the former general's form was obviously something the Hulk never had to deal with. But could it be weaponized, or was it a side effect of the transformation? Tony didn't have the time to think on this further. He leapt in the air, dodging the giant red arm that tried to hold him. The Red Hulk smiled. Not so smart now, are you, Stark? What was it you just said? Oh, that's right, that I'm powerless. What do you think now? Tony forced out a chuckle to hide how nervous he felt. Well, I think you've definitely been taking something. Is it steroids? It certainly would explain the muscles. The general sneered. You're going to tell me everything I want. Or, what? Or what's left of you could be mistaken for ground beef. Trust me, I'll enjoy ripping you apart, you arrogant asshole, the former general responded. Tony didn't like the sound of that. How about a counteroffer? Before the red giant could voice his confusion, he was accosted by a veritable army of Iron Man suits. If Ross was anything like Banner, Tony knew that the suits wouldn't last long in the fight. Ross was unlucky. In a way, Tony had analyzed Bruce's transformation and structural weaknesses. Hulk's biggest weakness was his eyes. Oh, they were nearly indestructible, and from the tissue he analyzed, he figured that they could even grow back. But no, they were far more sensitive. Tony motioned to Jarvis to target the eyes, and the yell of pain was enough to tell the billionaire that the Red Hulk shared the same weakness. It was barely even a hit, but it was enough of a distraction for Tony to calculate his next move. He was alone in the tower. The Avengers were all away, either being fugitives, or just away from the tower like Nat and Rhodey. But first, Tony needed some basic protection, a suit. He called for one, which immediately opened up and let him come inside. With the familiar armor put in place, he wasn't as vulnerable and could actively participate in the fight. Still, Tony found no other option as he watched as the former general was tearing apart his suits with ease. Jarvis, call Veronica. He definitely did not want to deal with the aftermath of the world knowing that he had that kind of firepower, but he was kinda desperate and couldn't see any other way out. Now, he had to hold on until the Hulkbuster armor was ready, when Veronica comes down from the Stark Industries satellites. Ross finished off the last robot in the tower, and was now walking slowly towards him, the ground slowly melting with every step. Where are they, Stark? Where is Banner? Where is Rogers? Where is Wilson? Stark pretended that he wasn't terrified. I don't know. But I do know one thing. They're far beyond your reach. So, you're forcing me to do this the hard way. Remember, Stark, you brought this on yourself. The Red Hulk tried to grab him, but Tony dodged and answered with a repulsor beam to the head. Ross roared as Tony sent a small missile at him, practically destroying the penthouse. Tony flew away from the explosion, hoping that the fight was over, but still knowing deep down that it wasn't even close. His suspicions were proven to be correct when a red giant leapt from the building and punched Tony with the power of a truck. It took a few moments for Tony to stabilize in the air after the impact, and it was enough for his opponent to jump up, grab him and throw him to the street. The armored hero limped up, even if he could feel a few of his ribs having been broken in the crash. Ross, what are you doing? Don't you think that this is going too far? You're endangering civilians for no reason. The Red Hulk sneered. I can do whatever I want. I'm the one in control here. You think they'll change their minds about the Accords, that they will support it despite the bigotry, despite the corruption, because they're seeing you attack someone in their home? Hell, I'm a normal human, you're the one that's now enhanced. Did you register that in your precious Accords, or are you breaking the law? Technically, the government can put you in jail for life. How does that feel? Ross didn't seem to care. I am the government. Tony looked around and saw a few choppers filming the conflict. That's the media for you. Fucking suicidal idiots. I think the president would disagree. Look around, you're being filmed, and our conversation and you attacking me has been uploaded to the internet, right about now. So, didn't you say that this was a war of public opinion? They know exactly who you are, and why you're attacking me. With that, you just hammered the last nail in your coffin. You think I care, the Red Hulk bellowed, these people don't matter. You don't matter. Once I'm done with teaching you some manners, the rest will follow. If you survive what I'm about to do to you, that is. Tony didn't know what kind freaky logic the man had, but it was severely misguided. He didn't really think he could convince Ross to back down, but he did need to stall. The billionaire suppressed a grin when he heard Jarvis' voice. Veronica is online and ready, sir. Send the Hulkbuster armor at me, please. Yes, sir, the virtual intelligence answered. Tony jumped and started to fly up. Ross laughed. You think you can run away from me, Stark? The billionaire smirked and slowly, parts of the Hulkbuster armor started to fly down and assemble itself around his suit. By the time it was done, Tony was almost as large as his opponent, and he dived down and punched the Red Hulk in the face. He then picked him up and threw him in Central Park, away from the people, to avoid casualties. He jumped up and leapt towards his opponent, trying to punch him in the face again. Ross dodged by rolling away and kicked him in the chest. The impact sent Tony flying a few meters, but the genius was able to land on his feet and ready a repulsor beam at the Red Hulk's face. It seemed to be more effective than the one from his previous suit. Tony then ran and tackled him to the ground, and kept punching him in the face while muttering, "Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Got to sleep," repeatedly. Suddenly, Ross started steaming and heat came out of his body, blasting the Hulkbuster armor away. It had practically melted through a couple of layers in. However, the Red Hulk seemed to be more exhausted with that attack, and was kneeling while gasping for air. Tony decided to take advantage of this by powering his unibeam. 20 seconds later, he was ready to blast and fired his massive attack at his opponents. It was so powerful that the impact blinded him for a couple of seconds. As the dust settled, Tony noticed his opponent limping forwards. "I didn't think you had that in you, Stark. That's a damn good suit, I'll admit that." The red giant then let out a smug glare, "But you're not the only one with fancy suits." Before he could register the general's revelation, Tony was immediately accosted by a black mechanical suit. It looked almost like one of his own, but oddly organic. There was a hole on its chest that it was using to fly. It was a lot stronger than its size suggested, and Tony's inner engineer marveled at its creation. The damn thing was deceptively powerful too. It was able to tackle the Hulkbuster armor by itself. In response, Tony sent a punch at it and sent it away. Only to be accosted by another one from the back, which he grabbed and threw at the other one. He sent a repulsor beam at them, expecting them to be destroyed, but they were durable as well. The beams did seem to be effective, but the robots were regenerating and becoming more resistant to the impact somehow. It had to be some kind of nanotechnology. Tony was planning on delving into the subject himself, but never found the time to do some proper research. Did Richards build him these monstrosities? The suits were slowly walking towards him, only for Tony to be attacked again from the back. He grabbed the robot, threw it in the air and sent a small missile at it. Or at least he tried. One of the robot's arms somehow morphed into a blade and sliced one of the suit's arms off like a hot knife through butter. This was insane. Tony was so surprised that he didn't see the other robots cut off the suit's other arm and a leg. Unbalanced, Tony fell on the ground while trying to get Veronica to send him more limbs to fight this thing. What the hell were those things? Before he could respond, the Red Hulk walked up to him while grinning. "I see that you're admiring my sentinels. They really are a marvel, aren't they, Stark? These are the enforcers of the Accords. Trust me, when these things are mass-produced, no one will even think about breaking the law, especially with the mutant gene sensor they're equipped with. I have to say, they're very effective. Trask might be a dick, but he's an effective one, at least." Trask? That racist asshole built these suits. Who the hell was insane enough to approve a project like that? No, this wasn't the time for this crap. The Sentinels had destroyed some of the critical components in the Hulkbuster. He'll need to summon a new one. Tony ejected himself from the giant suit, staying in his smaller one, and activated the self-destruct of each of the limbs and torso. They exploded in his opponent's face, and he grinned slightly, only for him to feel pain in his gut. There was another Sentinel there. How many of these things were left? Tony fell down, while everything was getting dizzy. He thought that he was going to die, but for some reason, the pain turned to warmth, and his vision started getting clearer. He blinked and saw a familiar redhead appear next to him. He felt a voice in his head, "Are you all right, Tony? Words can't express how happy I am to see you, Gray." The redhead chuckled and Tony felt her reading his memories of the events. He normally would have complained about this breach of privacy, but considering the situation, he would hold his tongue. The redhead then turned towards the Red Hulk and waved her hand. The red giant immediately fell unconscious and every sentinel in the park turned to dust. What the hell? Tony had been fighting for his life, and the mutant could just walk there, wave her hands and just beat his enemy along with his overpowered robots. Life really wasn't fair. Tony didn't care that this was ironic considering that he was a billionaire. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 356, The Return. Chapter 356, The Return. June 13, 2013, Avengers Tower. Tony Stark POV. Tony ejected himself from the giant suit, staying in his smaller one, and activated the self-destruct of each of the limbs and torso. They exploded in his opponent's face, and he grinned slightly, only for him to feel pain in his gut. There was another sentinel there. How many of these things were left? Tony fell down, while everything was getting dizzy. He thought that he was going to die, but for some reason, the pain turned to warmth, and his vision started getting clearer. He blinked and saw a familiar redhead appear next to him. He felt a voice in his head, "Are you all right, Tony? Words can't express how happy I am to see you, Gray." The redhead chuckled and Tony felt her reading his memories of the events. He normally would have complained about this breach of privacy, but considering the situation, he would hold his tongue. The redhead then turned towards the Red Hulk and waved her hand. The red giant immediately fell unconscious and every sentinel in the park turned to dust. What the hell? Tony has been fighting for his life, and the mutant could just walk there, waving her hands and just beat his enemy and his overpowered robots. Life really wasn't fair. Tony didn't care that this was ironic considering he was a billionaire. Wanda Maximoff POV. It has been a week since the infamous Red Hulk incident occurred, and Wanda still had a headache on the matter. The Accords were now officially repelled. The fact that the UN was pressured so easily in a week was laughable. But now, the United States representative of the Enhanced Registration Act turned out to be some insane madman who was obsessed with the Hulk and made a serum that gave him similar powers. Honestly, no one could have made something like that up without having a few screws loose in the head. That man had to be one something to loudly proclaim his secrets in front of Stark, who he knew was recording him. The serum must have done something to enhance his rage somehow, but holy shit, Ross was a fucking politician. He was supposed to stay calm while manipulating any position to his advantage, and not, turn himself into a rage monster and somehow think that attacking Tony Stark in broad daylight while being filmed was a good idea to keep orders. All things considered, the Red Hulk wasn't even close to matching the original Hulk, who grew stronger the angrier he got. The main issue was the robots that accompanied him. These would have been very troubling for anyone that wasn't either her, Jean, or Jasmine. The suits were surprisingly competent in detecting mutants but also to manipulate their own atomic structure to kill as many mutants as possible. It was very impressive nanotechnology that surpassed even Stark's technology, but it was also very worrying. If these were let out, it was very possible that the mutant race would be hunted down to extinction in a decade or two. For the first time in a very long time, Wanda felt fear, and she finally understood her mother slightly more. This was the kind of stuff they dealt with frequently. This was what it meant to be a protector of Earth, and if Jasmine hadn't saved her from the asylum all those years ago, and hadn't taken Jean under her wing, then the entire mutant population would have been in severe danger. It opened up the possibility of genocide on a scale that humanity had never seen before, and it was only stopped because of her and Jean. Did Jasmine always feel like this? Like the whole world was pressing down on her shoulder, where taking a day off could set up the end of the world, because that's exactly what Wanda felt. The sad thing was that, while the Sentinels were a big issue, they also provided them an opportunity. With the coming battle, an army of Sentinels could protect the planet properly, and even then, become a standing force protecting Earth from any external invaders. They only needed to remove the mutant detector and alter the programming for that to work. Wanda had left a sample to Tony, who hadn't left his lab ever since he got it. Bored out of her mind, she took her phone and accessed Genosha's database on the creator of the Sentinels, Bolivar Trask. Emma Frost had sent a team to assassinate the genius and wipe out any trace of the project after reading his mind. The man really was despicable. He wished nothing but to destroy the mutant race and dedicated his entire life to fulfilling that purpose. Genosha's scientific division, led by Forge himself, was already modifying the Sentinels to serve as a force to protect humanity, with the official manufacturing plan to begin in a few months. As for the original Avengers, the manhunt on them was called off, but funnily enough, their status as fugitives still wasn't revoked. Ross had practically confessed to releasing the abomination and sending at the Avengers hoping to apprehend them, and yet they were still technically criminals. So far, they were staying in Wakanda, enjoying the hospitality of King T'Chaka in the most advanced country in the world. Jean and she had officially completed their mission. Jasmine had tasked them to prevent mutants from being hunted down like criminals, and either stop or ideally modify the Enhanced Registration Act. The Enhanced Registration Act was no more, and practically every person with powers was united against the mass violation of human rights that almost happened. Sure, it would have been better to start some kind of framework to work on how to handle people with powers, but it was a far better outcome than what could have been. Even Richards finally admitted in an interview that he was wrong to support the Accords and that he hadn't known how corrupt former Secretary Ross really was. However, he still is sure that the Accords themselves, while horrible, were the right step forward. He would have liked for them to be better, but he wasn't the one who wrote them and hoped to slowly change them from the inside over the years. It wasn't exactly a bad plan. Mathematically speaking, if the Accords were going to get voted and put in place in society anyway, then supporting them while slowly circumventing them was the best option, which had the least projected causalities to both sides. Richards, whose life was governed by mathematics, chose the best statistical option and stuck to it. He definitely didn't expect things to get this far, that the data which he used to draw his conclusion was false. The data leak that Jean and Wanda had caused destroyed the credibility of the politicians that voted for the Accords, and Ross' little temper tantrum destroyed its spirit. The Accords were over, and that meant that drafting new laws would become necessary in the close future. Somehow, things worked out for the best. Wanda had just manipulated the entire planet, and changed public opinion, from the background without really doing anything about it. The US government was trying to get into Trask Industries to get access to the Sentinels' blueprints, not that they would find anything since the entire project, and countless others related to it, were scrubbed from all databases that Trask knew of. The mutants had won and yet it didn't really feel like it. The anti-mutant sentiment was too entrained by society after countless debates on it, the mutant issue, in the media, and it would take a lot for things to calm down. Ordinary humans were afraid that a teenager with powers would kill them on a whim. It was a justified fear, especially before the nation of Genosha was taken over, and started monitoring mutants on a global scale. Fear of mutants died down, but it wasn't gone. The Accords could have abetted that fear of the unknown. After all, if the government dealt with something, then the average person wouldn't need to concern themselves with it. Superhuman crime would become like any other criminal act and punished accordingly, without them knowing of the specifics of it. Now, without the Accords, the tentative peace was fragile, and something needed to unite both humanity and mutant kind. With the coming conflict, a common enemy for all of the residents of Earth would come. Thanos was coming, and should Jasmine be victorious in her fight, and them in theirs, it would provide a foundation on which peace between the two people would be built, and soon after, the inclusion of the magical world would be smooth. Wanda could see it happening, and she marveled at her mother's planning. This was the work of decades of plots and plans that finally converged. Jasmine's offhand approach to the rising of mutant kind made sense now. There had to be conflict, and Jasmine planned on making it as light and as fast as possible, planning on using Thanos' invasion to unite every living being on the planet. It was sad that Jasmine's recent apathy made her dismiss her plans and relegate it to them. Her mother would not have given the mutant race's fate to them after planning for so long. She wouldn't have wiped Rose's memories of her the way she did. The Selene incident really shook her up and affected her immensely. Wanda's mother was slowly losing her humanity and there was nothing she could do about it. Was she even functional anymore? All she had left was her power and her fight with entropy, and it was sad that she didn't see what she's become. Wanda loved her mother, by all the powers in the multiverse, she really did. Jasmine had saved her from her lowest, and Wanda was going to do the same to her. She wouldn't abandon her, the way that she, herself, was abandoned by her own father and brother. Speaking of Pietro, he had practically gone off the grid for months, and honestly, Wanda couldn't be bothered to track him down. For all his talk about reuniting and becoming a family, the speedster did very little to make that a reality, darting from one part of the globe to another, until slowly, Wanda's willingness to even try to seek him out was getting lower with every conversation. Oh, she still tracked him down to make sure he was alright, but she had given up long ago that they would share a normal sibling relationship. Even Thor and Loki were closer siblings than she was, and they tried to kill each other routinely before Thor had to return him because of what happened after the Ragnarok mess. And well, Loki hadn't even woken up since then, which was starting to be worrying. Wanda's thoughts were interrupted by a loud sound. She ran out of Sayre Manor to see what was going on until she saw a familiar egg-shaped ship get inside the wards with a sonic boom, before stopping a few meters over the ground and slowly levitating down until it landed entirely. This was Jasmine's ship. Wanda remembered it flying up when her mother left the planet. The door slowly opened up, revealing a staircase. The familiar black-haired and green-eyed woman walked forwards, followed by Hela, who looked far more relaxed than she was when they left weeks before. Surprisingly, she was followed by another man that was wearing a red jacket, a woman with green skin, a topless gray man with red marks on his skin, a raccoon holding some kind of high-tech rifle, and a fucking walking tree of all things. Jasmine noticed her and smiled. "Hello there, Wanda. Meet my companions, this is Peter Quill, Gamera, Drax, Rocket, and Groot. They're part of a team called the Guardians of the Galaxy. Guys, this is Wanda Maximoff, my daughter. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 357, Drums of War. Chapter 357, Drums of War. June 13, 2013, Sayre Manor. Wanda Maximoff POV. Wanda's thoughts were interrupted by a loud sound. She ran out of Sayre Manor to see what was going on, until she saw a familiar egg-shaped ship get inside the wards with a sonic boom, before stopping a few meters over the ground and slowly levitating down, until it landed entirely. This was Jasmine's ship. Wanda remembered it flying up when her mother left the planet. The door slowly opened up, revealing a staircase. The familiar black-haired and green-eyed woman walked forwards, followed by Hela, who looked far more relaxed than she was when they left weeks before. Surprisingly, she was followed by another man that was wearing a red jacket, a woman with green skin, a topless gray man with red marks on his skin, a raccoon holding some kind of high-tech rifle, and a fucking walking tree of all things. Jasmine noticed her and smiled. "Hello there, Wanda. Meet my companions, this is Peter Quill, Gamera, Drax, Rocket, and Groot. They're part of a team called the Guardians of the Galaxy. Guys, this is Wanda Maximoff, my daughter. March 24, 2015, Sayre Manor. Jasmine Sayre POV. I had to admit that returning to Earth was slightly anticlimactic. Honestly, I didn't expect Wanda and Jean to succeed in their mission, and yet they did. I guess I was so used to the disappointment that Rose ended up being, that I failed to see how much they have flourished in the roles that I had assigned to them. I expected them to rebel slightly, I expected more trouble, especially with my apathetic behavior, but they sucked it up and did what I asked of them. The mutant race was now technically saved from the enslavement that the Accords represented, and while the girls weren't really subtle about it, they did achieve the main purpose. To be frank, I didn't expect Ross to be that much of a nutjob that he'd attack a public figure in broad daylight. Well, that's a lesson on how unpredictable humanity could be. And while I would have liked for the Accords to be amended and put in place, it was me being too optimistic. Still, all things considered, mutant kind was on its way to being integrated into normal society, and after the coming conflict, they should be practically united with humanity. In a few decades, I could see the statute of secrecy finally being abolished, and mages joining the rest of the residents of Earth. So, with my heirs performing above and beyond what I had expected, I was free to let them deal with humanity's mess while I prepare for my inevitable final clash with entropy. Most of it consisted of training Peter Quill and Loki, who had woken up a few months after my return. Quill's training was straightforward. Cosmic energy really was instinctive to manipulate, and the celestial hybrid really was a natural at it. It was mostly based on imagination and control. Imagination, he had plenty of it, but control was something that he lacked. Still, almost 2 years later, Quill was a fearsome opponent to practically anyone. Loki, on the other hand, was surprisingly silent considering the silver-tongued man he used to be before his injury. He had physically recovered from his injuries, but mentally, it was questionable. Being older than Jean, he had grasped quickly enough his role in the grand scheme of things. He was quick to study his powers, but was always solemn when he was by himself. I think that Thor would have probably helped him somehow, but the god of thunder was too busy ruling Asgard, since Odin still hasn't woken up. The Necrosword really was overpowered. While Quill's powers are based on creation and manipulation, Loki's are just on another level. Reality is his illusion, his dream, his story. In a way, Loki could use his new powers like his old illusions, by momentarily altering reality on that scale. It wasn't permanent by any means, but it was absolute. It easily trumped mine and Wanda's reality magic, but he could only do it on a limited scale. Still, I had formed an adequate team to fight entropy. It wasn't what I hoped for, but it was better than nothing. Jean, Loki, Quill, and I will lead the fight against the Endless Being, while the Avengers, the rest of the Guardians, the Wakandan, the Asgardians, the Sorcerers, and the mutant soldiers of Genosha would protect the planet from Thanos, and prevent him from getting the stones and snapping his fingers. I spent months making sure that this alliance was even possible. It took some time, but everyone was now on board. After all, fighting for mankind was a good way to unite the planet. The Wakandan government, in corroboration with Stark, were able to replicate the Sentinels using vibranium to act as foot soldiers against Thanos, which would be deployed at a moment's notice using the mutant called Doormaker, who was a critical asset for Genosha in general. Honestly, these past 2 years were the calm before the storm, the constant preparation against the inevitable enemy. This was work decades in the making, perhaps even more so. It was a shame that Dr. Doom chose not to involve himself, and funnily enough, so did Reed Richards and his team. Yeah, Reed's reputation suffered a lot because of his involvement with the Accords. He locked himself in his lab, stopped trying to explore the multiverse, thankfully, and kept his head down while making scientific discoveries. He chose to have nothing to do with the hero life, and his team must have come to the same conclusion, since they stopped going out and flaunting their powers like they used to. Well, Ben Grimm still showed his rock skin, he had no choice after all, but he stopped going out of his way to fight people. Doom took Reed's actions as some kind of surrender, since he chose not to attack the Fantastic Four ever since. Without the constant attacks on the Baxter building, it was rare to see the superhero team fighting, and when they did, it was only because they were attacked. As for the magical world, oddly enough, Rose seemed to pick up the slack after she had forgotten me. Without me there to solve all of her problems, my former sister had thrived, and I was all the more happy for it. She practically took over Britain, as Dumbledore did after defeating Grindelwald, and started making laws to turn her country into a more equal magical society. With Muggleborns pitching in to help save the wizarding world's economy, there was an appropriate plan to create a thriving society. Other magical nations followed her example, and while they weren't out of the woods, the road to recovery was there. It seemed like Rose had always had it in her to fulfill the role that I had planned for her, but was only resisting it because it wasn't something that she had chosen. I had pushed her to being my heir in the magical world, and she fought me every step of the way. But the moment that she saw that her nation was crumbling, and didn't have anyone to blame, she stepped up and took matters into her own hands. I was proud of her, but I will keep my distance. All our relationship ever brought her was pain and suffering, and now, she was finally happy. Perhaps, one day, she will have a family of her own, and the Potter line wouldn't die out with her. Still, I was glad that she had found a small share of happiness in this miserable world. Oh, back to the wizarding world, they weren't ready for any sort of fight. Honestly, in terms of fighting power, they weren't all that impressive, with practically every mage except for Rose, being completely hopeless in an actual fight. I wasn't planning on calling them for the fight anytime soon. They were still recovering and revealing their existence now while the mutant issue was still being contended would cause a disaster in the long run. Mages were prideful and humans were fearful of what they couldn't understand. War would be inevitable, but in a generation, it wouldn't have to be. That meant that outside of Fantastic Four and the magical world, practically every superhuman faction was united against the coming threat, and I could only hope that it would be enough. This was the calm before the storm, and I could feel it approaching. I'll be completely frank here and say that I don't really care about the outcome. If the multiverse is destroyed, then I'll be too dead to care anyway, and if it isn't then everything would go back to normal, and I will continue to live an empty life as the pawn of a cosmic entity. The only reason I was fighting was because of death's threat, but also because I didn't want my life to be in vain. Everything I had lost, every heartbreak, every second of agony of this cursed life was designed for this moment, and I hated it with all my core. And yet, if I just gave up, then it would have all been in vain. Every ounce of pain I ever felt would have been for nothing, and that was worse than being some pawn. What a miserable life I had led, filled with loneliness and suffering, with small fragments of happiness so that I wouldn't break. I cannot love without losing them, I cannot trust without being betrayed, I cannot give up because I wasn't allowed to. I realize that now. I was never free to make my own choices, even after the time loop was over. I was bound with one crisis after another, all of them leading me to this moment, this instance in time where I was supposed to do something critical for the survival of the multiverse. Yet, I had to wonder why it seemed to hate me so much, if I was to be its savior. Was I anything more than a sacrificial lamb that was forced to suffer until I had nothing left to lose? Why was I the one that had to suffer so much for no reason? And for what? To still be enslaved to an uncaring cosmic entity that relished in my suffering. Death is often fair and merciful, and yet why did she relish in watching my grief and sorrow? Did I believe for 1 second that this thing would ever let me go? No, I didn't. She has lied before, she has betrayed me before, and there was no guarantee that she wouldn't do so again. No more. She may control my life, but I will not allow my soul to be beholden by such a being. I might be a slave in life, no matter how death likes to deny it, but I will not be one in death. I refuse on principle to let that being have any hold over my immortal soul. She could reincarnate me once more, forcing me to fight endless battles for an eternity. No more. I am the avatar of death, but I will not always be. I was born to light yet forced to darkness. I have lost and suffered more than any being on this cursed planet. I have withstood loss after loss, pain after pain, with a heart of glass that is slowly shattering with every single one. I decree no more. I have given my entire life to death, she will not get a drop of what comes after. To prevent death itself from getting my soul, I will have to gift it to someone else, someone that she can't touch, and I have the perfect candidate. After all, the Queen of Olympus was invisible to her, and I would rather trust my soul to her, and live out my time in her realm after my death, than allow my patron to have it. And death did have a blind spot when Hestia is involved, didn't she? A sinister smile appeared on my face when the bare bones of a plan started to get put together. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 358, No Strings on Me. Chapter 358, No Strings on Me. March 24, 2015, Sayre Manor. Jasmine Sayre POV. I refuse on principle to let that being have any hold over my immortal soul. She could reincarnate me once more, forcing me to fight endless battles for an eternity. No more. I am the avatar of death, but I will not always be. I was born to light yet forced to darkness. I have lost and suffered more than any being on this cursed planet. I have withstood loss after loss, pain after pain, with a heart of glass that is slowly shattering with every single one. I decree no more. I have given my entire life to death, she will not get a drop of what comes after. To prevent death itself from getting my soul, I will have to gift it to someone else, someone that she can't touch, and I have the perfect candidate. After all, the Queen of Olympus was invisible to her, and I would rather trust my soul to her, and live out my time in her realm after my death, than allow my patron to have it. And death did have a blind spot when Hestia is involved, didn't she? A sinister smile appeared on my face when the bare bones of a plan started to get put together. It was 2 days later that the plan was ready to be executed. I had given my students a day off and teleported to a familiar cave in Wakanda. It really was the best place to make a ritual. The vibranium had absorbed most of the ambient magic around, making it an exceptional magically sterile environment to conduct any ritual. Yeah, that was how I was planning on executing my plan, with a ritual. Yeah, I didn't have the greatest track record with rituals, since, you know, I almost died in the last one. But binding your soul is a very delicate situation, one that needed precision. One wrong move and I could end up enslaved to a demon like Mephisto, or Dormammu. To give away your soul, its recipient must be technically your superior when it comes to raw power. They must have a lot of authority over your action to circumvent death's influence. It was why my binding was of a different kind. I was not offering a bond of servitude, but a bond of marriage. Honestly, something like this would have never been possible with any other god or demon. The Olympians were the only gods that had a soul, hence could get married to mortals in the old way, the Atlantean way. Hestia had proposed, and I realized that I never explicitly refused her offer. It was a verbal contract, one that I postponed answering. I gave her excuses, but nothing more. It was also a binding contract. After all, the words of gods are law. And Hestia hadn't taken it back after she left. I could still feel it, the tentative bond between the two of us, ready to become something deeper, something more intimate, something more. I didn't know whether Hestia just wanted a connection between the two of us, or just to give me a way to accept her proposal, but I was very thankful for it. I wanted to be free and now I found a way. A binding wedding, connecting my soul and hers for all of eternity would make me a part of Olympus. I wouldn't be part of Death's domain anymore, but Hestia's. And Death had no say on beings that wouldn't die. Wakanda was a dimensional nexus that was sealed years back. Someone had decided to summon demons in this place, before a powerful sorceress called Bast massacred them, closed down the breach, and sealed it using vibranium. The ancient Wakandan worshipped her as a goddess, who blessed them with the sacred metal. Bast being able to turn into a large black panther didn't help with the worship much. Still, the breach, even if sealed, could be unsealed. With a flick of my finger, a tear in spacetime appeared, and I was able to traverse the endless dimensional chaos using the bond between me and Hestia, the unfinished promise. I wouldn't have been able to do this without the bond. It was like a small crack in the wall, a small hole that Hestia made just for us to be connected, just so that the offer of marriage would still hold even in between dimensions. It didn't take long for me to find Olympus, the realm that I created in a hurry, the realm that I built to save the only remnants of my true home. These were my people, flaws and all, and they simply did not understand their legacy, their truth, and had grown arrogant in their power. I pinged the bond and I could feel Hestia's surprise, joy, and hope. She was still standing behind her offer, and I giggled slightly in hysterical relief and spoke up, in the eyes of the world, and everything else, I, the Morrigan, take this woman. I will be hers and she will be mine. May our souls be joined in love, hope, and acceptance. May our magic be one. May she be the light to my darkness, and I the darkness to her light. This was the start of a traditional Atlantean wedding. It was a joining of souls, with the purpose of staying together even in the afterlife. There was a reason that husbands and wives died soon after their spouses in my old home. After their death, you could still feel their presence, but they often yearned to move on, yet stayed with their spouse. I had never done this with Celine. I never really found the reason to. We were all we had anyway, and I wanted to move on as soon as possible when I died. I never did a lot of things with Celine, especially in regard to my home. Then, I heard Hestia's voice whisper around me, in the eyes of the world, and everything else, Hestia, take this woman. I will be hers and she will be mine. May our souls be joined in love, hope, and acceptance. May our magic be one. May she be the darkness to my light, and I the light to her darkness. I could feel the bond solidify, and there came the next step. The final binding. The one I could not come back from. With this, I abandoned the multiverse to Entropy's plan. With this I betray everything I suffered for, just in a bid for freedom, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I was done being the puppet, there were no strings on me. And yet, why did I feel so regretful? Why did I feel like I was losing something? Emotions were something that came difficult to me these days, and yet the grief was so intense it hurt. My daughter, my students, my family. I was leaving them to their fate, leaving them to die. There was a faint hope that they would be able to handle it without me. Loki and Jean were certainly powerful enough, but deep down, I knew that they wouldn't be able to do it. This was my operation, and I was giving up on them. Perhaps it was because I didn't say goodbye. I left without saying anything. I didn't even pretend to have an excuse. Would they keep waiting for me to come back? Would they even mourn my disappearance? Would they even move on after I'm gone? I was absolutely central to their existence. I had saved Wanda from her own powers, saved Jean from a life as a puppet, and so many more. And I was leaving without saying a word. Perhaps it would be better to leave them at least a goodbye, some kind of closure. I create a small illusion of myself that would act like a messenger and make it record. My surroundings, which was essentially a representation of the dimensional chaos, shifted into stars, and I could look at the earth below me. Was I subconsciously getting one last look at my world before saying goodbye? I didn't know, but it seemed fitting in a way. Ah, there it is, I find myself saying, silly old earth. The more I save it, the more I save it, and the more it needs saving. It's a treadmill. Yes, I know they'll probably get it all wrong without me. I have given everything for this silly little planet, and it's not enough. It will never be enough. I grimaced as I found myself arguing with nothing at all, and just straightened up and looked at the recording. I'm sorry I'm leaving you, I really am. I don't want to leave you out to dry, to deal with something I was supposed to fight, but I'm just tired. I refuse to be the universe's fixer, the puppet cosmic entities used to try to fix their messes with their prophecies and quests. I suppose I'm abandoning you, in a way, but don't I deserve to have my peace? Thousands of years I have been fighting one horror after another, saving the universe from horrors you cannot even comprehend. I have fought mighty gods and demons in realms where the laws of physics simply did not exist and was focused on the greater good, humanity's survival. And all I got for it was betrayal and heartbreak. I was so focused on some impossible goal for thousands of years that I forgot to live. The sad thing is that I know that death is planning something for my afterlife, and this is me saying the most beautiful word in the English language, no. I took a deep breath to stop my little speech. Sorry, I was ranting for a bit. But the truth is that I am broken. I have been broken for a long time. And this is just me not wanting to break even further. I know that the challenges that will await you will be frightening, so I thought I would give you a few pieces of advice an old woman like me learned the hard way. Basic stuff first, never be cruel, never be cowardly, and never ever eat pears. They're disgustingly squishy. I giggled slightly with tears in my eyes. I really hated the fruit, something that Wanda and Jean teased me about endlessly. I guess that makes this goodbye a little bitter. I straightened up and continued, remember, hate is always foolish, and love is always wise. Always try to be nice, but never fail to be kind. You never know how far a single act of kindness can reach. Give your best whenever you commit to anything. Save as many children as you can. They'll always surprise you. Laugh hard, run fast, be kind. I look down, with teary eyes, and murmur softly, it's time for me to let go now. I want you to know that I love you all, and that I cherish the time we had together. We all knew that I was preparing you for taking over for me. I guess this is me saying tag, you're it. I hope you do it better than me. I ended the message and made it so that it would be sent on the next day. With that done, I watched as the earth slowly morphed into the dimensional chaos and I stepped forward. I slowly floated towards the end of my bond that was getting stronger and stronger. With every second, it solidified, and the moment that I reached Hestia, our vows would become binding, and our marriage ritual would finally be completed. I would be free to make my own choices, to live as I wish, and perhaps to die as I wish. Oh, it wasn't even close to being perfect, but it was better than the alternative. I would be letting go of my mission, of the fated fight against entropy. I guess this is me saying fuck you to everyone involved in my misery. I could feel the golden realm of Olympus as I neared. My hand was barely a couple of inches away from it when everything turned white. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 359, Death's Confession. Chapter 359, Death's Confession. March 24, 2015, Dimensional Void. Jasmine Sayer POV. I look down, with teary eyes, and murmur softly, "It's time for me to let go now. I want you to know that I love you all, and that I cherish the time we had together. We all knew that I was preparing you for taking over for me. I guess this is me saying tag, you're it. I hope you do it better than me." I ended the message and made it so that it would be sent on the next day. With that done, I watched as the Earth slowly morphed into the dimensional chaos and I stepped forward. I slowly floated towards the end of my bond that was getting stronger and stronger. With every second, it solidified, and the moment that I reached Hestia, our vows would become binding, and our marriage ritual would finally be completed. I would be free to make my own choices, to live as I wish, and perhaps to die as I wish. Oh, it wasn't even close to being perfect, but it was better than the alternative. I would be letting go of my mission, of the fated fight against entropy. I guess this is me saying fuck you to everyone involved in my misery. I could feel the golden realm of Olympus as I neared. My hand was barely a couple of inches away from it when everything turned white. Blinking out at the sudden brightness, it took me a couple of minutes for things to come back to focus. My blurry vision slowly focused to a familiar place, Limbo. I had been here a few times, often whenever a cosmic entity wants to speak with me. That meant one thing. My little trip between dimensions had not been unnoticed. A cosmic entity had noticed just as I was finishing my ritual, just as my bond with Hestia was solidifying. I was so close to being free of the pain, free of their manipulation. Now, I had to face whatever cosmic entity had noticed me. I turned around and saw a familiarly cloaked figure, and I couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh, you have got to be fucking kidding me." It was Death, again. Could she not leave me alone? Honestly, out of all the cosmic entities that could have caught me, I wouldn't have expected them to be Death. The endless being had been circumvented by Hestia before, by complete accident. Death had no say in things that couldn't die, and Olympus was now a realm of the gods. She was only omniscient when it came to her domain, and Olympus was eternal. I had made sure of that. She shouldn't have noticed my connection to Olympus, nor how I planned to use it. She shouldn't have known that I had tried to be free of her influence. But if she knew about my plan, why did she wait until the last moment to stop me? She could have done it when I first opened the portal. The blind spot was still there, she probably just found another way to find me. With the rational explanation out of the way, all that remained was my rage. The cloaked figure just stayed silent, and I couldn't take it anymore. "Why do you always do this to me? Why have you always had to ruin every single hope I might have? Every single time I try to escape this cursed life, you always refuse me. Why do you focus so much on making my life miserable?" The figure just stayed silent, and I continued my rant. "You have bound me ever since I was a child, allowed space and time to bend just to hone your weapon. Staying in the same timeline when I landed in Atlantis wasn't a coincidence, was it? You made sure of it, just like you made sure that I was desperate enough to save my home, Atlantis, that I would serve you. You planned all of it." Death didn't respond and I just kept ranting. "You knew that I would live a half-life all those years ago. For thousands of years, I have served you, obeying your every command. I killed and killed in your name, while having to live with countless constraints, so that the timeline would remain the same. You wanted me in this timeline, but you had to preserve it, didn't you? And I was the one that had to pay for it. You knew that my path would lead to nothing but misery and pain, and you set me upon it again and again, punishing me for any selfish action, until I was barely more than a weapon, your puppet. And when I had the illusion that I was finally free, that the loop was over, you still found a way to bind me by getting my daughter to travel back in time while staying in the same timeline, something that was impossible, Darkhold or not, without a cosmic entity's approval. You allowed an entire world line to be pruned just for the sick desire of seeing me bound once more. You allowed entropy back in time, to cause even more chaos, while having the advantage of foresight. And you did it using my daughter, who died in my arms with tears in her eyes. I was willing to serve you, I exclaimed, I really was. Death is a noble concept to follow. The impartial judge, the balance to life, it's a very interesting concept, and one that I respected immensely. I would have happily served you without a second's thought as your avatar. I would have massacred civilizations if you asked me to, and you knew it. Hell, you asked me to do it many times, but you had to push me, you had to stifle every freedom I had, you had to take away everything that made life worth it, so that my only purpose would be death. The cloaked figure finally shifted slightly, showing me that she was being affected by my words. And yet, she did not speak. It was frustrating and I had to goad her into it. Are you seriously so callous that you would allow entropy to come back, after he was defeated? Are you so completely devoid of mercy that you would let an entire timeline to be destroyed? Not even destroyed, but pruned, lost to the chaos of indecision. Their souls were erased, not even having been granted the luxury of an afterlife or reincarnation. And you did that just because you want me to fight entropy again. Is this what you want? To watch me fight an impossible enemy again and again, timeline after timeline for your own amusement? Finally, Death spoke up. No, I do not. I froze when I heard her voice. None of the previous arrogance was there. She sounded hurt, vulnerable, for the lack of a better word, human. Then why? Why all of this? Why manipulate the fundamental laws of the universe, laws that you helped put in place, by the way? Because it was necessary. I am not the one that decided that it had to be this way, but when it came to you, I am as constrained as you are, the figure answered. What could possibly constrain Death? You're one of the most powerful entities out there. The cosmic entity let out a bitter laugh. Destiny, I suppose. You have a destiny, one that is very important. Being my avatar was part of it, so is staying in this timeline, hence why the Council of the Endless worked together in making sure that you remain in the same world line. But it was never meant to come to this. It was never meant to end this way. And how was it supposed to end? I couldn't help to ask. The cosmic entity gave me a wink. Spoilers. What wasn't supposed to happen? Was it entropy? I questioned. No, entropy was always supposed to rebel. You were always supposed to fight him and defeat him as you did in the last timeline. However, the way that you did was different than the one predicted. Something changed your destiny. Something stopped you from completing it. Something that was supposed to happen didn't, and it endangered everything. So, I wasn't supposed to die, then. Death gave me a bitter smile. I will not give away your destiny, no matter how much you desire it. For when things are let out, the less your choices matter. But the final battle did not occur as we predicted, and we had to find a way to redo it, in the same timeline. So, when we found out that Wanda Maximoff, corrupted by the Darkhold, was planning on going back in time, we let her go back to her own timeline, so that we would have a new chance to make what was supposed to happen, happen. We locked the dimension as much as we could to prevent any god, demon, or cosmic entity from interfering once more, as it was the most common theory that emerged. Time and fate stopped anyone from peering into the future, and we were ready to redo it. You wanted another chance, and you risked the entire multiverse for it. I asked with an incredulous tone. Yes. We can rebuild a multiverse. What is created can also be destroyed. We would have contained entropy, imprisoned him, and we would have restarted. But your destiny is critical not only on a multiversal scale, but above. What you were supposed to do would have been critical to the very concept of creation. It was supposed to reverberate throughout time and space, throughout the multiverse itself, in the past, and in the future. Without that happening, we risked existence itself to turn into a paradox, and that is far more dangerous than the multiverse being destroyed, hence why we are so insistent about your destiny occurring. She took a deep breath and continued, we tried being nice, we tried being harsh, we tried to be monsters, we tried to be angels, but nothing seemed to put things back together. The timeline was irrevocably changed because of entropy's actions, and we didn't know what we were supposed to do. Fate was being thwarted, she was crippled in this timeline, and we had no guide. We had our clairvoyance, our omniscience, but nothing more. This timeline is a chaotic mess of cosmic energy. A cosmic storm would be more apartment. We sent challenges at you, but you were different. You acted differently. We pushed too much on you, and you started rebelling. Of course, I started rebelling, I shouted, you started breaking the very laws that you claimed to protect. We did, because we were desperate to preserve your timeline, to see your destiny fulfilled. You started to resent your destiny without even knowing what it was, and you wished to run away from it, to reject it. So much so that you almost chose to join Olympus. Which is why I blackmailed you with its destruction. You couldn't accept that offer, and I had to do what I had to do. I was desperate and I do regret it. I pushed too much, which brings us to this. You found a way to almost circumvent me once more. You came close, and this is me, putting the cards on the table. I need you to fight entropy. I need you to defeat him in a very specific way. I groaned to myself, I'm just tired. Can't you get someone else to do it for you? Why me? I'm sorry, but this is beyond me, beyond you. Some things are just set in stone. We need you to fulfill your purpose, after that you can do anything you want. You could come back here. What if I lose? What if I don't defeat entropy in the exact way you wanted? I asked. Then we'll rewind time, and we'll start again, and again, until you get it right. If you complete what you're trying to do, I will not destroy Olympus. I will respect your decision, but the timeline will start over. The timeline will be pruned, and we'll start again. We are that desperate. Olympus might be a godly realm that is beyond my supervision, but it is still bound to time. It will rewind, and you'll start over. Someone will probably end up destroying Olympus to prevent that from happening in the next timeline. It won't be me, but I will not stop them if they do it. If you finish this decision, the timeline will be considered to be defunct, and we'll start over. I paled at her with my mouth open. I could feel the truth of her statement, her resignation, her desperation. She gave me a blank look. So, Morrigan, my champion, now that you have brought death itself to desperation, what is your decision? If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 360, The Final Choice. Chapter 360, The Final Choice. March 24, 2015, Dimensional Void. Jasmine Sayer POV. I'm sorry, but this is beyond me, beyond you. Some things are just set in stone. We need you to fulfill your purpose. After that you can do anything you want. You could come back here. What if I lose? What if I don't defeat entropy in the exact way you wanted? I asked. Then we'll rewind time, and we'll start again, and again, until you get it right. If you complete what you're trying to do, I will not destroy Olympus. I will respect your decision, but the timeline will start over. The timeline will be pruned, and we'll start again. We are that desperate. Olympus might be a godly realm that is beyond my supervision, but it is still bound to time. It will rewind, and you'll start over. Someone will probably end up destroying Olympus to prevent that from happening in the next timeline. It won't be me, but I will not stop them if they do it. If you finish this decision, the timeline will be considered to be defunct, and we'll start over. I paled at her with my mouth open. I could feel the truth of her statement, her resignation, her desperation. She gave me blank look. So, Morrigan, my champion, now that you have brought death itself to desperation, what is your decision? April 25, 2015, New York City. Jasmine Sayer POV. 1 month later, and I still didn't know if my decision was the correct one. I chose to trust death one last time. Well, calling it trust wasn't really true. It was mostly just giving up my defiance. My plan was a rash one, completely impulsive, born out of fear of remaining bound to an entity that was doing her best to make me miserable. But now, I understood that freedom just wasn't even in the cards, that should I escape my fate somehow, I would have been bound once more. Time would unwind and I would be back to the start. I would need to do it again and again until I fulfill my destiny in the exact method that the cosmic entities devised, and it was then that I realized that I had no chance. It felt stifling, like I was some puppet in a play that needed to do an exact thing that I didn't even know about. I wanted to ask the universe why I was chosen. What made me special? Everything in my life was controlled, calculated for this single purpose. I understood now that I was raised like a lamb to slaughter, the only difference is that it took a while for it to happen. What an ironical turn of events. I had the same fate as the original Harry Potter. Dumbledore had arranged his death, his sacrifice, like some sort of mastermind. He made sure to keep him humble, to destroy any value the boy had on his life, to promote and encourage his self-sacrifice, so that he was alone, that he walked into the forest without a second's thought, and stood motionless as he was hit with a killing curse. I was the same. I was made for the battle to happen exactly the way Death, and her fellow Endless predicted. Only this time, the mastermind wasn't an arrogant wizard who thought he knew better, no, it was endless beings with power beyond my understanding that weaved this tapestry that is my life. A part of me wished to see what would happen if I just refused and let the cosmic entities turn back time. I wouldn't have any memories of Celine betraying me. I wouldn't have had any memories of my sister leaving me. I wouldn't be uncomfortable with Wanda and Jean. I wouldn't be alone, hell, I would still have my humanity. But alas, there was no point in continuing this cycle of life and death. If I choose to redo it now, how would I know that I hadn't chosen the same thing in the past, that I wasn't stuck in a time loop making the exact same decision, suffering the same exact betrayal and abandonment? It was no guarantee that everything would go better in the next iteration, and since I would lose my memories, I wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. That's not mentioning that this entire reality would be pruned out of existence from the paradox, since the timeline would remain the same. Yeah, I had no choice but to fight, and well, hope that it would work this time around. Not that I actually knew what I was supposed to be doing in the first place. Like, seriously, what is this shit? It's not defeating entropy, because I already did that in the final timeline. It's not me staying out of it or they wouldn't be so insistent on me doing it. Although, I wonder how my counterpart was able to defeat entropy. It was a cosmic entity, a being of almost infinite power that couldn't die. As long as the concept of entropy existed, the cosmic entity would persevere. And the very concept of entropy is necessary for the universe to exist. It was intrinsically bound to time. Entropy is a measure of the disorder or randomness of a system. It relates to the distribution of energy within a system, and how that energy is distributed among the system's particles or states. The second law of thermodynamics states that the entropy of an isolated system tends to increase over time, leading to an increase in the overall disorder of the system. That meant that theoretically, entropy had the power to disperse any type of energy, which was especially what its disintegration was. It could control the chaos in a specific way. It could possess the power to disrupt or dismantle existing patterns, structures, or systems. It might accelerate the breakdown of order and induce disarray. However, the very concept of entropy shows that it cannot be reversed. The laws of the universe say that the chaos of a system, the entropy, increases over time, and that means that its relation to the concept of time is very high. Long story short, entropy is closely linked to the arrow of time and the tendency for systems to move towards a state of higher disorder, and that relation is a vulnerability. A shard of a plan started to form in my head. Yeah, it wasn't much, but it was more than enough. This could work, this could actually fucking work. Yeah, there were a lot of variables, known and unknown, and I needed to prepare quickly, but I wasn't fighting some impossible enemy with the off chance that something would work. I needed to act quickly. I started laughing. It was so obvious in hindsight, not that it's important now. I was in the middle of New York City, having chosen to take a walk to calm my head. I must look like some insane woman, just laughing like a maniac in the middle of the street. Yeah, people were watching me, mothers kept their children close when they were near, but I didn't care. I had a plan, I had a chance, and that was enough for me to continue. All this hopelessness I was feeling, all the desire to just give up and leave the multiverse to its fate, it was all gone. I had a chance, we had a chance, but I needed to act quickly. Entropy was due to arrive at any time, and I had barely prepared, having lost myself in the hopelessness of it all. I looked around and saw myself in front of the New York sanctum. Did I unconsciously walk all the way here? Did I know where I needed to be somehow? Choosing to trust my gut, I walked up the stairs and knocked. Wong opened the door and paled slightly. Lady Morrigan. May I ask the purpose of your visit? I need to speak to the Ancient One. I simply reply. The man nodded and motioned for me to follow. As usual, I ignored the knickknacks all over the mansion and sat down. Afterwards, Strange and his master arrived slightly wary. I stifled a chuckle as I saw that the former neurosurgeon was still keeping his distance from me. Damn, he's still terrified of me. His master, though, wasn't fazed. Morrigan, Wong said you wished to speak to me. I nodded. It's going to start soon. I wanted you to be prepared. The bald woman stiffened. Are you sure? Nimue, you know me, would I be here if I wasn't sure? It's time to prepare, for the battle on our two fronts. The woman nodded, while Strange looked confused. Wait, what's going on? The end of time, that's what's going on, young Strange, I answered. Yeah, I'm going to need more than that, the former neurosurgeon said with a sarcastic tone. I'm sure your master will explain it to you, but we're really short on time. I then turned towards the Sorcerer Supreme. Be ready at any time. It's closing in, I can feel it. You're different, she commented, the air of defeat that you held recently is gone. I think I might have a plan, for my end of the battle, I mean. So, you do not wish for me to be present in the real battle, she commented, sounding slightly upset. Because of the aberration, the time stone is very weakened. It's better for you to lead the troops in the battle with Thanos, while I handle the rest, I replied. The bald woman didn't seem to be convinced. Stephen here can lead the troops. Better than you. Especially considering how unlikely you are to survive the first few seconds of my side of the fight. The woman grimaced and nodded, if you're certain. Doctor Strange though didn't seem to accept it. What troops, what army, what conflict? What in the name of the Vishanti are you all talking about? I winked at him and spoke up. Get him up to speed, will you? The bald woman nodded, and I teleported out. Yeah, I needed to do a lot, but I didn't have enough time. First of all, I opened a telekinetic conversation with Wanda and Jean, Wanda. Both girls responded at once. Jasmine. What's going on? Prepare the troops to be ready at a moment's notice. I already have the sorcerers on board. Jean, go to Genosha and tell Emma Frost to start assembling the troops. Wanda, I want you to go to Stark and get his people ready, and then go to Wakanda, and try to convince them to hold the battle there. Say that their force field could give you a fighting chance against Thanos. Make sure everyone is ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. Yes, Jasmine, both of them replied. Jean left immediately but Wanda stayed on. Is it really time? I can feel it, yes. It should start anytime now. Don't worry, I've got a plan, a real one this time. It's good to have you back, Mum, the girl answered before disconnecting our psychic connection. Wanda must have noticed that something was different, that I was less defeated somehow. It made me wonder how much she noticed. She's been there all this time, supportive and all. She stayed when Celine betrayed me, and when I banished Rose she didn't even judge me for it. She was always grateful and helpful in my lows. And she saw that I was acting differently, speaking differently. I was so defeated after my conversation with Death, having let go of my defiance due to the inevitability of it all. I honestly had nothing. Every single hope I had was practically gone. Without Odin and the Celestials there with me, my chances had dropped astronomically. I was ready to fail, and to have Death and her fellow cosmic entities restart the timeline. But no more. I was going to take my place and fight with everything I can, not because of some higher beings, but because that's what I did. It was always my role. I realize that now, the woman who stops the monsters. I guess I could have it in me for one last one. Suddenly, a voice appeared that no one but me could hear, a voice that made me stiffen when I recognized it. It was Entropy. Morrigan, I know you can hear me. I was hoping to make this somewhat civil by having a little pre-battle meeting to put a few rules in place. Meet me in the place your daughter died in your hands. You have 1 hour. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 361, Parameters. Chapter 361, Parameters. April 25, 2015, New York City. Jasmine Sayer POV. Wanda stayed when Celine betrayed me, and when I banished Rose she didn't even judge me for it. She was always grateful and helpful in my lows. And she saw that I was acting differently, speaking differently. I was so defeated after my conversation with Death, having let go of my defiance due to the inevitability of it all. I honestly had nothing. Every single hope I had was practically gone. Without Odin and the Celestials there with me, my chances had dropped astronomically. I was ready to fail, and to have Death and her fellow cosmic entities restart the timeline. But no more. I was going to take my place and fight with everything I can, not because of some higher beings, but because that's what I did. It was always my role. I realize that now, the woman who stops the monsters. I guess I could have it in me for one last one. Suddenly, a voice appeared that no one but me could hear, a voice that made me stiffen when I recognized it. It was Entropy. Morrigan, I know you can hear me. I was hoping to make this somewhat civil by having a little pre-battle meeting to put a few rules in place. Meet me in the place your daughter died in your hands. You have 1 hour. I didn't know how long I was just frozen in place, but it felt like an eternity. Logically, I knew that the confrontation was coming to a close, but to have it proven to you in such a way was petrifying. A battle for the multiverse was commencing, a battle for my freedom in a way. If I somehow succeed and manage to do what Death says I'm destined to do, then whether I survive or not, I will be free. There was more on the line than anything I have ever experienced before, and I wasn't ready. My plan was solid, but I needed more time to prepare and set everything up. I had to somehow delay the battle by at least a day or so. Hopefully, I would be able to wrangle something out of Entropy, especially since he's going out of his way to have rules. What was his angle exactly? He had every advantage. He had Thanos and his army at his disposal, he had the fucking Reality Stone, and the Mind Stone on him, which synergized with his actual abilities to a ridiculous degree. Hell, he even had the Necrosword, which was honestly, fucking broken. Still, there had to be something missing, something that he needed to start the attack. Well, I might as well go meet with him. There isn't much I could do with an hour that he wouldn't easily foresee and plan for. I teleport to my desired location and was met with the familiar sight of Bayville. Damn, I haven't been here in years, ever since my first encounter with Entropy, and my banishment to another universe. There was this odd feeling of nostalgia here. Well, it was towards my peaceful years here, when I taught in the high school that I could see in the distance. All I had to worry about was Wanda's rehabilitation, making sure that Jean didn't go all Dark Phoenix and destroy the planet, and make sure that Xavier and his little boy band didn't really fuck things up. I mostly stayed at home with Celine. We worked jobs, me as a teacher, and her as the CEO of my company. I got to relax slightly. In the few moments in my life I even had the illusion of freedom, and she got to deal with the little politics that she liked so much. We were happy, and when I looked back to my situation right now, I couldn't help but pity myself. Barely a decade ago, I had everything I could have ever wanted, but now, my wife had betrayed me, and I locked her up for it. My daughter is practically a stranger considering how much time we spent apart, and I understood that my freedom had never been anything more than some wishful thinking. I slowly walked while reminiscing, remembering the time I scared the hell out of Fury and his minions when they came to confront me in my classroom, while Wanda and Jean watched secretly from the back. It was a funny memory. Things were so simple back then. There was no multiversal threats, no cosmic entities butting in every single choice I make. Hell, I was still human, in mind and in body, something that I couldn't claim to be anymore. For all the feelings that were assaulting me, there was this detachment to them, and while I wouldn't say that it wasn't useful to have a clear head, I hated it with all my heart, or at least what remained of it. I froze the moment I arrived at the street where I saw the corrupted future version of Wanda, who killed herself in a foolish quest to save me from something inevitable. I didn't know if I was going to die or not, but it didn't really matter. The end result was what Death alluded my destiny to be, and they would restart the time loop with countless iterations just to achieve it. After that second of hesitation at the memory of my daughter being erased from existence, I continue forward. I could sense entropy's power envelop the entire street. Every single person on the street just walked away, and I could see the cosmic entity waving at me from a coffee shop. Taking a deep breath, I slowly walked towards him and sit down in front of him. A mind-controlled woman, probably one of the only remaining civilians on the whole street, gave me a fake smile and a blank look while giving me a cup of tea. "Ah, Morrigan," Entropy spoke up. "Entropy," I replied. I took a sip of the tea. It wasn't that bad, all things considered, especially for one brewed in a random cafe. I stared blankly towards the men in front of me before losing my patience slightly. "Why are we here, Entropy?" "Well, I believe we have a lot to talk about. This is our destined battle, one that would impact the very fabric of reality on a scale that has never been seen since the one above all created the multiverse. Some pre-battle banter and insults are almost required at this point." I raised an eyebrow at this. "Required, you say? We both know that for all our differences, the battle itself is not a personal affair. You wish to destroy the multiverse, and I wish to save it. There's no need for the usual insults that don't really mean much." The cosmic entity actually burst into laughter. "That's right, there isn't, is there? But you have a point, for all our differences, this has never been personal from either side. I want to achieve my goal and you want to stop me, which is why I'm proposing a few ground rules that would benefit us both." Well, he had my attention now. "What do you mean by ground rules?" "As you probably guessed, I want to use Thanos' snap to spread my essence when the dimensional borders are weakened. And you want to have an actual chance against me. So, here's the deal, I am willing to make our confrontation an actual duel, in a location of your choosing, and in exchange, neither of us will use our Infinity Stones. They will be outside of our duel. You will give yours to a mortal, or do with it whatever you want, but the stones can't be in the duel. I will give mine to Thanos. That's an even fight, don't you think? You and your little team against me, while humanity fights against the Mad Titan." I was flabbergasted by the offer, to be perfectly honest. I didn't really know what to do about it. Giving away the stones makes it easier for Thanos to collect them, but if I do accept this offer, both Entropy of myself would lose enough power for my team to make a better difference, giving me a better chance at defeating him. However, I voiced the biggest question that was on my mind: why? Why go through all this trouble for this? Can't I just be generous about it? "No," I replied, "that's not it, is it? You could simply beat me, take the Infinity Stones, and give them to Thanos later to do his treasured snap. Except, you can't, can you? You're stuck and you know it. It's the universal lock, you just realized how close to it you are. We didn't know exactly when it would fall, but I can sense now that it's in a few days and you don't have the time to do this without some huge risk. With the stones, there's a chance that we'll end up in a stalemate at best, and you can't risk that. You ran out of time to whittle down my strength for the stones. Your plan has to happen in the exact moment the dimensional walls are down, a second later, and the rest of the Cosmic Council would interfere. The man was gritting his teeth now. They can't interfere, since I made myself as mortal as possible to escape their silly little restrictions. But I don't want to take the risk." Entropy stayed silent for a moment before continuing. "The deal I am offering you is a generous one and you know it. I'm giving you an increased chance at victory. I'm giving you a chance of not just delaying the inevitable and waiting for my siblings, the cosmic entities, to deal with their mess. Your little team, the Phoenix Force Avatar, Dream's champion, the half-celestial, can have a better chance at making an impact in our fight. They were cannon fodder before, now, they stand a chance at doing something other than delaying me at best, and inconveniencing me at worst. And well, with your wife not around to help, you did lose one of your strongest fighters." I suppressed the urge to growl at the infuriating men. I needed to stay calm and not make rash decisions. I needed something clearer, and more concrete to make the choice. For the first time in a while, I opened up my death sight and took a look at Entropy. He had gotten more powerful, but that didn't really matter to my plan. I used my plan as a scenario and saw where it would have gotten me. It was odd, in a way, cosmic entities weren't really alive as much as just existed, but I could see that Entropy had mutated in a horrific way that mimicked a living being. Had he done it to escape the other entity's sight? I didn't know, but that gave me enough to create a model using my death sight, and see what would happen if I implemented my plan with and without the Infinity Stone. Which one had the better chance at killing him? I couldn't really see the future since it would have overwhelmed my brain with possibilities and the universe was still time-locked. It wasn't even future sight, it was more like modeling a possibility based on existing data. Something that I never really did before, but it worked well with my death sight. Surprisingly, the chances of killing Entropy without the stones were astronomically higher. Taking him by surprise was a lot easier when he didn't have access to the stones, and that was critical. Choosing not to rise to his bait, I simply nod. "You have a deal. We will have a duel, you and only yourself against me and my team. When the duel officially begins, no other participants will be involved. We will fight in an empty dimension, devoid of life, to not risk any casualties. The fight will be tomorrow, in exactly 24 hours. You will not allow Thanos to attack the planet before then. That is my final offer. The cosmic entity, I agree to these terms, may my very existence be bound to my words. I responded, and may mine be bound by my words. A pact is sealed, and a deal is made. I will see you on the battlefield, Entropy. I teleported away. I had a lot to do, and not a lot of time to do it all. Firstly, I needed to get to Avalon. I could tell with my death vision that my chances of success were higher if I visit my wife first. I was already dreading this conversation. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 362, Marital Conflict. Chapter 362, Marital Conflict. April 25, 2015, New York City. Jasmine Sayer POV. Surprisingly, the chances of killing Entropy without the stones were astronomically higher. Taking him by surprise was a lot easier when he didn't have access to the stones, and that was critical. Choosing not to rise to his bait, I simply nod, "You have a deal. We will have a duel, you and only yourself against me and my team. When the duel officially begins, no other participants will be involved. We will fight in an empty dimension, devoid of life, to not risk any casualties. The fight will be tomorrow, in exactly 24 hours. You will not allow Thanos to attack the planet before then. That is my final offer. The cosmic entity, I agree to these terms, may my very existence be bound to my words. I responded, and may mine be bound by my words. A pact is sealed, and a deal is made. I will see you on the battlefield, Entropy. I teleported away. I had a lot to do, and not a lot of time to do it all. Firstly, I needed to get to Avalon. I could tell with my death vision that my chances of success were higher if I visit my wife first. I was already dreading this conversation. I was honestly pretty hesitant to go through with it. What Selene had done was abominable. There was something primal within me that just wanted to hurt her for the betrayal. In 5,000 years, I have never felt so betrayed by a single person. Yeah, I wanted nothing to do with her, and the fact that I only banished the Black Witch was a testament to my mercy and to my love for her. I should have outgrown this primitive sentiment of betrayal a long time ago, pretty much the moment Selene's plan actually worked. In a weird way, my quick conversion into a Celestial had saved her. Because from my memories, the woman I used to be just decades back would have destroyed her body, and banished her soul into a hell dimension to be at the mercy of a demon lord, or an elder god. That was the creature I was. For all my years of living and gaining experiences, I was a vindictive creature at heart, and taking away that spite and hate from me had saved her from a fate worse than death. Yeah, logically speaking, keeping Selene banished in a dimension under my control was the right thing to do. I could call upon her for the final battle, and she was an asset that I didn't want to discard. She was an ace that no one really understood the significance of. Selene's soul being the way it is allows her to absorb a tremendous amount of life force. There's no reason why this wouldn't work on Entropy. Cosmic energy was his life force in a way, and that was a potential weakness of his. It probably wouldn't work, but it was still a backup plan that might slow him down. So, yeah, keeping Selene alive and close was the right decision. But then, why was I hesitating? Why was a part of me so outraged by the idea of asking that woman for help? What she had done was reprehensible, horrible, and outright malicious to someone who trusted her unconditionally, but her usefulness should outweigh something as banal and mortal as her feelings. I could tell with my death perception that I needed her in the fight against Entropy to stand a chance at winning. It was a fact that Selene was necessary, and yet I was still hesitating. Was it the remnants of my humanity surfacing finally after 2 years of being silent? I had given up trying to undo what Selene had done, because it didn't really matter anymore. She had changed my soul, and I was technically a different being. Going back would be like committing suicide, and the effects would be completely random. Manipulating one's own soul was tricky. It was like trying to perform a brain surgery while wearing mittens, while being drunk on a crashing airplane. It could be done, but was it really worth the risk? Especially with the coming battle. I wasn't human anymore, and I accepted that fact, even if the details of my ascension still bothered me. I had cut Selene out of my life, and a part of me died with that event. I started becoming more distant to everyone else, even Wanda and Jean were not spared. After all, they were all so small, so mortal. They didn't feel the world turning, the cosmic energy that makes up the universe shifting in every fraction of a nanosecond. They would never understand, and that was final. I had resigned myself to a life of solitude, even if I survived the fight. It was odd, after losing my humanity, this fight didn't feel as important anymore. It was just a test that some higher beings wanted to be solved in an exact manner, and would keep trying until she did it. It was a loop that would only end if that requirement was fulfilled, and that detracted from its importance, and while I understood what was at stake and wanted the cycle to end, a part of me wondered on which iteration I was really on. How many versions of me were killed for not winning that fight? How many had even gotten to this situation exactly? I was going to try and end the loop, of course, to stop this cycle of death and destruction, but a part of me couldn't help but be resentful for my situation. I was a pawn, and I understood it now more than ever. I was a program that was being written and rewritten, hoping that its purpose would be fulfilled without being given any parameters to train myself, just relying on pure probability and chance. Yeah, I was bitter, and I was now given another dilemma. My mind told me that I needed Celine in the coming battle, but the shard of my remaining humanity just refused to have anything to do with the woman who hurt me so. But alas, I didn't really have a choice in the matter. At least the end of this cursed existence was nearing. I was probably going to fail my goal, even if I defeated entropy. It was the most likely scenario, and the cycle was going to restart. Even if I somehow win and my mad plan succeeds by some miracle, the chances of survival are pretty slim. So, yeah, my chances aren't looking good. This might be my last day alive, and I honestly didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. I was going to convince my ex to support me, but that was it. I had no one, not really. Just a daughter that I didn't know how to interact with, and subordinates that were wary of me. I had never been more alone in my life. Choosing to just go with it, I waved my hand and a small break in the fabric of space-time appeared. I walked through it and was met with my kingdom. It was exactly the same as before. The magical utopia that I created. If there was one thing I was proud of, it was this kingdom. I had spearheaded the entire mutant race, I changed the course of magical history countless times, but this place, this paradise, was my greatest achievement. It was the only purely good thing that I have ever done. A true safe haven for all magical creatures, far away from human greed and corruption. I walked up the stairs of the floating castle until I found the tower where I imprisoned the woman I once called my wife. I knocked and a familiar voice answered, "Come in." She looked exactly as I remembered. Her pale skin, black eyes, and hair. She was making tea. It smelt nice. I knew you'd come someday, Morrigan. How long have I been here? It's hard to tell. 2 years from my end, I responded. A blink in the eyes of beings as old as us. Have you come to forgive me, my love? My face became impassive. I would have left you for longer, but I don't have a choice, Celine. It's time, then, she asked. Yes. We have 1 day to prepare. Do you have a plan, Morrigan? Or are we just winging it and hoping for the best? I nod. Yes, I have one. It should work, but the chances are slim. But you already knew that, didn't you? It's always one battle after another with you. You try so hard to save these people who might as well be ants. I shook my head. It's different now. There's a lot you missed, and I don't have a choice in this. But either way, this is my last battle. If I live or die, win or lose, this is it. I'm done. You said that before, remember? Yes, I did. But this is the endgame now. This is what my entire existence had come to, what I was designed to become, and they won't stop unless I fulfill it. My former wife tilted her head, and it took a few seconds before her eyes widened in realization. The cosmic entities, they made you, designed you for this singular fight. Yes, I answered while nodding. Why would they do that? If entropy was going to escape and they knew it, why didn't they just stop it in the first place? I shook my head and took a sip of my tea. It's not about entropy. It was never about entropy. If I defeat him but not in the exact way they want, they will restart the cycle once more. I don't even know what my real purpose is, but it has something to do with entropy somehow. But defeating him isn't my actual true purpose, I'm sure about that, since another version of me achieved it, but was still deleted out of existence. And what makes you so sure that this is different, that you have a chance at winning? I don't, I simply answer, I don't know. I'm so tired, Celine. Tired of all this needless fighting, tired of the struggle that is this cursed life. They took my entire life and turned it into a script, forcing me to experience pain, horror, and despair, while making sure that I'm unable to stop it. Even the small chapter that I'm supposed to write, the final page of my book, they keep erasing what I do until they're satisfied with it. If I refuse to fight for them, they'll rewind the clock and try something else. If I do fight, at least there's an end to all of this in the horizon. Whether I'm alive or dead, it doesn't matter, the cycle must be broken. Celine looked down. I'm sorry. You're sorry? About what exactly? About you betraying me in a manner that was so heinous, so terrible that I can't put it into words. Or is it about the miserable existence that is my life? I asked without showing any sign of the anger simmering deep inside me. She was tearing up now. I know that what I did was wrong, and that I lost your trust. But is it horrible that I don't like seeing the woman I love turn into this broken thing? You're the one who turned me into this, remember? She didn't have anything to say to that and just looked down. After 10 minutes of silence, she asked, "Would you have ever let me out, if you didn't need me to fight?" I looked at her. I saw the woman that had been my trusted companion for thousands of years, that I shared my joy and sorrows with, and all I could feel was disappointment at her betrayal. I let my face stay as impassive as possible when I uttered the word, "no." I could tell that it hurt her deeply, but she had asked for the truth, and I delivered it. She buried her obvious distress in her mind and stood up. "All right, we've wasted enough time. Tell me about that plan of yours and how we're going to kill a cosmic entity. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athosbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 363, The Last Stand. Chapter 363, The Last Stand. April 25, 2015, New York City. Jasmine Sayer POV. She was tearing up now. "I know that what I did was wrong, and that I lost your trust. But is it horrible that I don't like seeing the woman I love turn into this broken thing? You're the one who turned me into this, remember?" She didn't have anything to say to that and just looked down. After 10 minutes of silence, she asked, "Would you have ever let me out, if you didn't need me to fight?" I looked at her. I saw the woman that had been my trusted companion for thousands of years, that I shared my joys and sorrows with, and all I could feel was disappointment at her betrayal. I let my face stay as impassive as possible when I uttered the word, "no." I could tell that it hurt her deeply, but she had asked for the truth, and I delivered it. She buried her obvious distress in her mind and stood up. "All right, we've wasted enough time. Tell me about that plan of yours and how we're going to kill a cosmic entity." Wanda Maximoff POV. The last couple of years in Wanda Maximoff's life weren't the best. While her relationship with Jean was going well, she couldn't say the same about the one with her mother. It wasn't Jasmine's fault, she knew that, but it was hard not to be resentful at the creature wearing her mother's face, and yet didn't have an ounce of her compassion and humanity. Ever since that bitch Celine betrayed her, Jasmine started to lose whatever remained of her humanity. She was always something more, something above, like a goddess among men, but now, she was like an apathetic sentient computer. Jasmine stopped trying to stop supervillains, stopped trying to help the magical world she had invested thousands of years into, and she stopped caring about the fate of the race that she had created, the mutants. What remained of her was an apathetic empty shell with her memories that still had the same face. Comparing her to the woman that had saved her all those years ago from her prison and fought for her so zealously just because it was the right thing to do, it was like she was a different person. Wanda liked to think back to those days of just spending time with Jasmine, learning how to control her magic. How she wished that those days never ended. Still, even though she suffered, it wasn't until Rose's betrayal, which was orchestrated by Celine, followed quickly by the bitch's own betrayal, that put the last nail in the coffin. All of Jasmine's suffering started because of her toxic relationship with Celine, which is why it was grating to see the bitch walking next to her mother as if nothing had happened. Yeah, Jasmine had called her and Jean, told them that the battle for the multiverse was the following day, and that they should start assembling their forces for both conflicts. They did their best. They had assembled a council of the heads of each faction. Emma Frost for the mutants, the Ancient One for the sorcerers, King T'Chaka for Wakanda, Peter Quill for the Guardians of the Galaxy, Tony Stark for the Avengers, Reed Richards for the Fantastic Four, hell, even Victor Von Doom, who Richards was able to convince to attend somehow, was present. The mage community was deemed to be too divided and weak to make a point, and they wouldn't survive being exposed to the spotlight like that. Everyone was arguing, of course, until Jasmine entered the room, followed by that bitch, Celine, where everyone quieted down. Jasmine nodded to herself and started speaking. "Some of you may know me, some of you may not, but that doesn't really matter. My name is Morrigan, and I have asked to meet with you today because we face a threat that is far larger than anything any of us have dealt with alone. I am not talking about a nice fight with some supervillain that's in over their head, I am talking about another extraterrestrial attack." King T'Chaka questioned, "Then why don't we let the Avengers fight them again? They did beat the invasion in New York." New York was a sham, with a fraction of the forces available to them, without any heavy hitters around, that was bottlenecked by a portal. They will not make that mistake this time, and an entire fleet will try to attack as well. This is an active threat to humanity, and to a larger extent, the entire universe. Jasmine waved her arm and an illusion of a giant muscled purple alien appeared. "This is our enemy, Thanos. He's also known as the Mad Titan in the galaxy at large. He's a scourge, a disease, he conquers planets, and actively seeks to wipe out half its population by random. He's coming to Earth to find artifacts of great power, the Infinity Stones. There are 6 of them, he has already claimed 2, probably even 3, and we have 3 in our possession." Emma Frost shook her head. "Why don't we just give them to him? He won't be our problem if we do, will he? He seeks the stones so that he could commit genocide on a universal scale. With all 6 stones, he'd be able to wipe out half the universe with the snap of his fingers. So, giving him the stones equates to half our planet dying. And it'll be random, each one of you will have a 50% chance of dying. So, what do you think? Should we give up the stones? Jasmine answered with a sarcastic tone. Reed Richards was the one to ask another question. It's logical that we need to stop them, but why risk collateral damage by bringing the fight here? We could just bring the fight to them. Wanda shook her head and spoke up for the first time. Mutant powers don't work after a certain distance from the planet. We would have to not use any mutant fighters, and that'd pretty much destroy our already small chances at surviving this. Jasmine nodded to her. Wanda is right. We have to keep the fight contained here, but in a somewhat isolated location, which is why I'm asking King T'Chaka if he would volunteer Wakanda as the location of the battle. Thanos will go after the stone wielders. That means that we can pick the location ourselves. The force fields inside Wakanda are unrivaled, and you have infrastructure to prevent an invasion. That makes it the perfect location. What about my people? The outraged Wakandan king yelled back. We can evacuate the civilians easily enough. But honestly, do you have any better idea? I am not doing this to be antagonistic, but the fact remains that your kingdom is the single most protected place on the planet that is large enough to have a battle of this scale in. The surrounding lands are mostly desert, and you have the technology to rebuild, and your buildings are all technically strong enough to withstand a lot of damage. I'm sorry that I have to ask you of this, but your people are all at risk and we need every advantage that we can get. Jasmine replied with a cold tone. The men sat down, still looking displeased, and Wanda's mother continued, I have already asked for Asgard's help and Thor had pledged that he would help us as a favor for something I did a few years back, so we have a good army coming. Emma Frost, I want you to get Genosha's entire army ready. Get Doormaker and Clairvoyant to mobilize them at a second's notice. T'Chaka, I'm leaving the command of Wakanda's resources to you, and Sorcerer Supreme, you know your strength better than I do, so I'm leaving you to make any decisions on it. Doom, I want you to bring an entire army of Doombots with you, same with you Stark and your drones. Also, Tony, find Nick Fury and tell him to call in Carol. We're going to need her. We need every advantage we could get. Richards, I know you're queasy about it, but you need to bring every big gun you have on this thing. Quill, I want you to put Rocket in charge, and make him and the Guardians responsible for organizing the defenses outside of Wakanda's force field. Gamera should be able to give you insights on Thanos' methods of attack, use them to plan out an actual defense. You're joining me and the rest of my team to fight the bigger fish. Tony Stark spoke up for the first time. What bigger fish? Not that he would admit it, Thanos is a pawn to someone a lot stronger than him, and stronger than me. I designed a team, tailored to fight this being. This is a fight your entire forces wouldn't survive past a minute, and that's me being generous about it. I was able to turn it into a duel of sorts. The team I chose will not interfere with the fight against Thanos, nor will he, thus giving you an actual chance at succeeding. The team will be composed of myself, Jean Grey, Selene Gallio, Peter Quill, and Loki of Asgard. On your side of the battle, you will be led by my daughter, Wanda Maximoff, and you will follow her words as if it was me being there. In the event I do not survive my battle, I ask of you to consider her my heir, and she will take my place protecting humanity from its countless dangers. Wanda froze at this, and so did the rest of the faction leaders. Jasmine was giving her command. Why would she do that? For some reason, everyone in the room ended up cowed in some way. They all nodded, and Jasmine clapped her hands. All right, now, prepare yourselves. We have less than a day to do anything. Say your goodbyes to your families in case we lose, and they end up being wiped out. I wish I could be reassuring at this time, but things are looking grim. However, I have faith that humanity will survive this crucible. Fight with everything you have and even more so, because it's not just some random lives on the line, it's the ones belonging to your families, your friends, your colleagues. Everyone is at risk. The question is whether or not you wish to cower in fear and hope that chance saves you, or if are you willing to fight against the coming storm. With that said, Jasmine gave them all an imperious nod, and they all disappeared to their homes to prepare, leaving only Selene, Jasmine, Wanda, and Jean. The reality manipulator wanted to throttle her mother's ex-wife the moment she saw her, but she contained herself. You're making me lead. Jasmine nodded. You are my daughter. I have taught you everything I could. It's time for you to grow into your role as my heir. And now is the time to do it. With the entire multiverse as risk. You decide to give me even more responsibility now. I'm supposed to be in the fight with you and you know it. I'm strong enough to do it. The woman gave her a sad smile and shook her head. You're the person I trust the most in the world, Wanda. You're literally the last anchor of whatever remains of the person I used to be. Is it wrong that I want you to remain slightly safer? It's why I'm even doing this in the first place. Doing what? Wanda questioned. She didn't have the time to react when Jasmine palmed her chest with a glowing purple gem. The reality manipulator started feeling hotter and hotter, like a fire starting from her chest burning herself out. She could barely even think of anything but the pain that surrounded her. But there was something else, something more, outside of the pain. Pure power, that's what Wanda realized it was just before the world turned black. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 364, Breathe. Chapter 364, Breathe. April 25, 2015, New York City. Wanda Maximoff POV. The reality manipulator wanted to throttle her mother's ex-wife the moment she saw her but contained herself. "You're making me lead." Jasmine nodded. "You are my daughter. I have taught you everything I could. It's time for you to grow into your role as my heir. And now is the time to do it. With the entire multiverse at risk. You decide to give me even more responsibility now. I'm supposed to be in the fight with you and you know it. I'm strong enough to do it." The woman gave her a sad smile and shook her head. "You're the person I trust the most in the world, Wanda. You're literally my last anchor of whatever remains of the person I used to be. Is it wrong that I want you to remain slightly safer? It's why I'm even doing this in the first place." "Doing what?" Wanda questioned. She didn't have time to react when Jasmine palmed her chest with a glowing purple gem. The reality manipulator started feeling hotter and hotter, like a fire starting from her chest, burning herself out. She could barely even think of anything but the pain that surrounded her. But there was something else, something more, outside of the pain. Pure power, that is what Wanda realized it was before the world turned black. Jasmine Sayer POV. I looked at the unconscious body of my daughter with complicated feelings in my heart. I loved her, I knew that, and it was the single greatest anchor to my humanity that was left, and I wasn't about to lose it. I honestly didn't know what would happen if I did. Would I just be completely purposeless? Would I be relatively the same as before? My humanity, even if it is a fraction of what made me up, was what drove me to fight in the first place. If it was up to the rest of me, I would have decided that fighting a being obviously more powerful than me, for an exact conclusion that I didn't even know, had too many variables. The chances of success were low, so it would be better, and logical, to just give up and let cosmic entities just restart again and again, hoping that the next variation would be successful somehow. Fortunately, or unfortunately, it depends on how you look at it, I still had a smidge of humanity left, even if it rarely felt like I did. I was going to fight just because even if I lose, even if Death and her allies restart the cycle, I wasn't going out without giving that bastard Entropy the fight of his life. Wanda was literally all I had left in the world. How pitiful. 5,000 years and that's all I'm left with. I wasn't going to lose her. I waved my hand and my staff appeared. I had already incorporated the Power Stone into her. Her body and instinctive reality manipulation adapted pretty well to the Infinity Stone, increasing her power manyfold. Now, what to do with the Space Stone? I didn't really trust anyone to be able to defend it properly. Stephen Strange was a possibility since Nimue had the Time Stone with her. I shook my head. For all that Stephen Strange was skilled in sorcery, Thanos and his children could still defeat him. Perhaps, I could just give it to my daughter and make her decide if she wants to keep it. Yeah, that was a good compromise. I waved my hand and a shard of my staff surrounding the Infinity Stone broke away. The URU metal started morphing into a simple necklace with the Space Stone in the middle. I used runes to regulate the output, making it able to channel the power of the stone. The necklace slowly floated down to Wanda and enveloped her around her neck. Wanda Maximoff now had 2 Infinity Stones in her possession. Jean gave me an odd look. "You still care for her, don't you?" I nodded and simply answered, "She is my daughter." That seemed to satisfy her somewhat. "Are you sure about giving her the stones?" "She'll be a target. She could remove the Space Stone at any time and can choose a wielder she finds suitable if she wishes. No, she is Earth's most capable warrior now, its strongest defender. Thanos will target her, and so will his army. Giving her more power ensures that she will have a better chance at surviving. After all, the Mad Titan will also be using Infinity Stones of his own." The Avatar of the Phoenix Force nodded. "What now?" "Now, Wanda should leave all 3 of us." I pointed at Celine, who had stayed silent during the entire conversation. "Jean and myself, we need to meet up with Quill and prepare." "Are you serious right now? You still want me to fight alongside her?" The Avatar of the Phoenix Force answered while pointing at Celine. "After all she's done to you, to Wanda, to Rose. I don't have a choice in the matter. We need her to fight Entropy. Do you think I'm happy about it? Seeing her after she betrayed me is enraging. I want nothing more than to smite her for the pain and misery she caused me, for the breach of trust, but for the sake of the coming conflict, I don't. Because I know that while my suffering is horrible, the universe, no, the multiverse should not pay the price for it. You do not have the right to be angry. You were not the one wronged, you were not the one betrayed, and you were not the one that was banished and forgotten. So, don't forget yourself, Avatar of the Phoenix Force." The redhead nodded while Celine practically shrunk to herself. A vicious part of me was glad that she was experiencing some discomfort even after leaving. She didn't like the new me, the one that had lost her humanity, the one that she had created. In a way, it was vindicating to see her visibly regret the actions after seeing the consequences, but that past cannot be rewritten by us mortals, only by overbearing cosmic entities, it appears. I waved my hand and created a portal, letting Jean and Celine through. I followed after them, and they gasped when they entered. What is this place? It feels like the mirror dimension, but at the same time, not. I shrugged. It's something similar. I call it the other side, or the underworld, but that confusing a lot after I figured out that hell dimensions also existed. I settled on calling it Remnant. It's a dimension that's very similar to Earth, but empty of any life. It doesn't have any stars, just a sun, and the moon, that is. When they looked, they gasped in shock. Instead of the usual circular object that made up the natural satellite, half of it was missing, turned into pieces that were floating near it. What happened to the moon? Celine asked while gaping. As far as I could tell, it was hit by some kind of comet, which ended up blowing up half. It probably killed whatever life existed here before. I could see remnants of civilization sometimes when I explored this place, hence the name. It's a remnant of what it once was. Celine then gasped in realization. There's magic here. It's pretty weak, but there are also a few ley lines available. I chose this place while considering your limitations. This way your magic could regenerate without too many issues during the fight. With no other magic user, it should theoretically match your magical regeneration rate on Earth, I explain. I never knew about this, my ex-wife remarked. I honestly forgot about it. I haven't really explored this place a lot, only during my youth. It's a barren planet with dying magic, and practically no stars. It wasn't that interesting apart from discovering the ruins when I was bored back in Atlantis. It was my little resting place. Jean nodded to herself. You're right about it being a dead planet. I can't sense any living thing. I have to admit that this is an appropriate place for a destructive battle. We won't have to worry about collateral damage. Celine nodded. Yes, good thinking, Morrigan. But isn't there supposed to be another 4th and 5th team members for this conflict? I nodded. Yeah, they should see this too. I waved my hand and 2 portals appeared. A second later, 2 figures fell through. What the hell? A voice complained. It was Quill, of course. He was still wary of me after a year of teaching, but I had to admit that he was fun to be around. Loki, though, held his tongue. He was a smart one with pretty good survival instincts. It was a shame that he still had a temper that often got the better of him, especially over imagined slights. Still, he was my student, and he was the avatar of Dream, which made him an important ally. Instead, the godling looked around and gasped, what is this place? This is where the battle against entropy is going to take place. I reply, it's an empty planet in a deserted dimension. We can be as destructive as we want, not that we weren't going to be in the first place because the entire multiverse is at stake. But now, there should be no moral conundrum, no worrying about civilians or external damage, only us and him. Loki nodded, understanding. Do you think we stand a chance? Before I could answer, Quill interjected, of course, we stand a chance. I am the son of a freaking celestial, you're a god of dreams or something. The redhead is a freaking phoenix, and I don't know who that lady in black is, but she seems terrifying. And our glorious leader was able to defeat Ronan and his armies as if they were nothing. We have this in the bag. I suppressed the urge to groan. Half of that was entirely wrong, and the rest was only slightly incorrect. After all that training, Quill was still a child in the body of a man. He used his powers to play around with children, make real-life video games, or just have fun. In taking care of Ego, I had done something critically wrong. I had stopped Quill from getting the experience enough to mature into the hero he is supposed to become. The title, Guardians of the Galaxy, was kinda useless when I was the one who saved Xander, and I was the one who took care of Ego. Still, he was powerful and it wasn't like I had a lot of options, so I sigh and answer, again, Quill, I am the avatar of death and a pseudo-celestial. Jean is the avatar of the Phoenix Force, which grants her amazing psionic abilities and control over the cosmic flames. Loki is the avatar of Dream, which makes him able to bring dreams to reality in a certain range. And finally, Celine is an old but very powerful witch. You haven't met her because I imprisoned her for a few years before. A fellow convict then, the man-child remarked and then turned towards my ex-wife. So what did you do? I betrayed my wife and tricked her into banishing her sister, and then violated the sanctity of her soul, Celine answered with a dry tone. The man blanched and just turned away. So, now that the gang is all here, what's the plan? Like we have our enemy, big bad entropy, who wants to destroy the universe or the multiverse, whatever, but we need to make a plan before we start. Of course, since I am known for having great plans, here's what I'm proposing. I raised an eyebrow towards the man, and he shut up, much to the amusement of Loki. I suppressed my amusement and spoke up. Well, I happen to have a plan in mind. So, listen very carefully and ask any questions you might have. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athosbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 365, Grim Night. Chapter 365, Grim Night. April 26, 2015, Remnant. Jasmine Sayer POV. Again, Quill, I am the avatar of death and a pseudo-celestial. Jean is the avatar of the Phoenix Force, which grants her amazing psionic abilities and control over the cosmic flames. Loki is the avatar of Dream, which makes him able to bring dreams to reality in a certain range. And finally, Selene is an old and very powerful witch. You haven't met her because I imprisoned her for a few years before. A fellow convict then, the man-child remarked and then turned towards my ex-wife. So what did you do? I betrayed my wife and tricked her into banishing her sister, and then violated the sanctity of her soul, Selene answered with a dry tone. The man blanched and just turned away. So, now that the gang is all here, what's the plan? Like we have our enemy, the big bad Entropy, who wants to destroy the universe or the multiverse, whatever, but we need to make a plan before we start. Of course, since I am known for having great plans, here's what I'm proposing. I raised an eyebrow towards the man, and he shut up, much to the amusement of Loki. I suppressed my amusement and spoke up. Well, I happen to have a plan in mind. So, listen very carefully and ask any questions you might have. The following day, I woke up without even remembering when I had fallen asleep. We had all remained on Remnant to argue on the validity of my plan. I had to say that not everyone was ready for it, since it was somewhat out there. Quill called it the single most insane plan he had ever heard, so that didn't really fill me with confidence. He had a point. Calling my plan unorthodox would be an understatement, and it showed in the manner that everyone just stayed silent when they woke up. There was this solemn silence to it, this acceptance that they were going to die. I could understand that. We were fighting something impossible, and the odds of all of us surviving were very slim. Everyone watched with an odd content smile on their face as the sun got up in the dead world that was Remnant. I wish I could have seen it before it was destroyed. I think it would have been a beautiful place. I sat away from the others. I didn't want to perturb them, and there was always this sense of unease whenever I was there. It had something to do with the fact that they understood that I was profoundly different, that I was inhuman in a way. I also held authority over all of them. I trained them, and I'd seen them at their lowest. I was like a teacher at a party. Of course, instead of a party, it was pretty much everyone saying goodbye to one another. However, Selene noticed me and slowly walked over. What are you doing here, all alone? I gave her a sad smile, admiring the sunrise. What else? It might be the last one I ever see. You know, people don't realize how beautiful this all is until they realize that they might never get to appreciate it again. It's wondrous, in a way, how everything fits in so perfectly, like some sort of cosmic puzzle. Imagine that, for a universe to exist, it had to be created with the exact calibration to be real, and don't get me started on how life could exist on a planet. It's all so wondrous, so elegant, that I just can't put it into words. I have lived thousands of years watching mortals in their silly little insignificant lives, and now, more than ever, I could understand why they're so busy all the time, why they just keep pushing on. It's odd, isn't it? I have always said that I would embrace death with dignity, that I wouldn't fear it, but now that it's potentially coming. I get it now, I understand. Selene was shaking her head. You're not going to die, Morrigan. So, just stop talking like that. I gave her a bitter chuckle. My dear, I have nothing. For all the power I possess, for all my might, I am alone. It's time for Wanda to flourish on her own. I recognize that, and I now realize that win or lose, life or death, this is it for me. I have nothing outside this conflict. I suppose death finally got what she wanted in a way. I have no purpose but to destroy Entropy. I don't know what I am without that goal. Morrigan, you're worrying me. Selene begged. You could have been it, you know. You could have been my reason for living. In a way, you were what kept me going during the cycle. But you betrayed me, you left me alone, changed in a way that I could barely comprehend because of your selfish desire to see me stoop down to your level of apathy, that I would just let humanity go. And honestly, you succeeded. I was more than happy to just let humanity die, to let the multiverse end. I still don't know if that was out of spite, or if I just didn't care anymore. In a way, I still don't care, I just know how futile this all is. They're going to repeat this cycle again and again, until a version of me somehow fulfills their weird prophecy thing. It's all so useless. I don't even know why I'm fighting anymore, and yet it's the only thing I have. What a weird contradiction. My love, please. I ignore her. People fight because they have goals, ambitions, or they are afraid. We are all here to fight in fear of what might happen if we don't. Well, everyone but me. I don't care anymore. I am not afraid of dying, not in the way mortals are, at least. I guess I'm intrigued. I don't care about the multiverse collapsing or being destroyed since it's not my responsibility. If the cosmic entities don't want to do their duties, it's not mine to replace theirs. And yet, here I am, fighting an impossible enemy at impossible odds. It would be so easy to just let the cycle restart and let another version of me do it instead. So, the big question is, why am I even pushing on? What am I working for? What's this all been towards? You're fighting for Wanda, for Hogwarts, for Rose, for all who had died at your side. And I will fight alongside you until the very end, Celine responded. You might get your wish very soon, Celine, I answered, but you're wrong. Wanda, Hogwarts, Rose, they will all still be there when the loop restarts, and yet I'm still fighting. Is it some weird sense of duty? It's oddly merciful from the powers to remove my memories after each iteration in a way. Is it a prison when you don't see the bars? Is it punishment when you don't even understand that you're being punished? Now, that's a nice question. Morrigan, I know that I have failed you in so many ways. You were all I had, and I think I forgot that, in a way, I was all you had as well. But you kept getting involved in so many things. The moment you were free from fate's hand, the moment your time loop ended, you started drifting away, and I guess I was jealous. I gave her an incredulous look. You were jealous? You were literally my rock, Celine. You were my other half, my companion. Words could not express how much I loved you, and you say that you destroyed my very self, altered me in unspeakable ways, because you were jealous. You were mine for centuries, and suddenly, you weren't mine anymore. You kept focusing on the world, on humanity, on your little apprentices, while I was left behind. And the sad thing was that I saw how much they hurt you when they inevitably die or betray you. I thought that I was helping. I thought that by grounding you, making you care less, you would stop this endless cycle of hope and heartbreak. All you ever needed was me, just like all I ever needed was you, Celine explained. I snorted. You were selfish, and you know it. You wanted me to be like you, to stoop down to your level. Well, congratulations, it worked. How did it turn out in the end? Celine was tearing up now. I'm so sorry, Morrigan. You're right. I was selfish, I was spiteful, and I was jealous. I just wanted you to be like me and it backfired, all right. No, it's not all right. It will never be all right. I know that when this is all over, you're hoping that we will somehow fix our marriage, that time will heal the wounds of your betrayal. I could see that hope all over your face, but the truth is that that is never going to happen. You went too far, Celine. But I love you, the witch protested. And I once loved you as well, but now, I don't know if I'm capable of love anymore. My ex-wife looked stunned at my revelation and stayed silent. I continued, some say that love is a chemical reaction, a few hormones going around a human brain, but it's so much more than that. Love is powerful, it's something that can't be expressed in words. But most of all, love is illogical. And what you have done is turned me into a creature of logic, a celestial. You changed my soul, my very being, and doomed me into a loveless existence, a cursed existence as a few would say. Celine looked at me, horrified. I'm so sorry. You are sorry that you were caught, Celine, that it backfired, but had your mad plan worked and I was still myself, just slightly more apathetic, you wouldn't have cared. And that's why, even if I could feel love once more, I wouldn't try to rekindle our relationship. My trust in you is gone. If it wasn't for this crisis, I wouldn't have involved you at all. You would still be rotting in Avalon for your crimes, as my final act of humanity before I became this thing you see before you. Celine looked down but stayed silent. I understand. I know it doesn't mean much, Morrigan, but I still love you, and I do regret my actions, not because it didn't work, but because I can see the creature I turned you into. I only wish I could go back in time and yell at my past self for my insecurities, and how much they rotted me from the inside, but I can't. You are the love of my life and I'm not letting you stay alone again. Win or lose, life or death, I will follow you. I nodded and didn't respond. There was nothing to say after all. Instead, I simply stood up and walked over to the rest of the team. They all nodded at me in greeting but also stayed silent. We remained that way until suddenly the sky started to darken, and a few bolts of black lightning fell from the sky all around us, followed by loud thunder that shook the earth itself. I gave my team a solemn look. He's here. They all stood up behind me, in the positions that we agreed on before, as we waited for our enemy to reveal himself. The shadows in front of us started to take shape slowly, revealing a sinister figure that seemed to absorb the light itself. I rolled my eyes. Entropy really liked his theatrics. It was hard to see how this behavior was coming from something that was as old as the multiverse. Finally, the cosmic entity released his shadows and let everyone see his grinning face. What a nifty place you found, Morrigan. I simply stayed unmoving in place and quirked him a slight smile. Hello, Entropy. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 366, The Other Side. Chapter 366, The Other Side. April 25, 2015, New York City. Wanda Maximoff POV. The reality manipulator wanted to throttle her mother's ex-wife the moment she saw her but contained herself. You're making me lead. Jasmine nodded. You are my daughter. I have taught you everything I could. It's time for you to grow into your role as my heir. And now is the time to do it. With the entire multiverse at risk. And you decide to give me even more responsibility now. I'm supposed to be in the fight with you and you know it. I'm strong enough to do it. The woman gave her a sad smile and shook her head. You're the person I trust the most in the world, Wanda. You're literally my last anchor of whatever remains of the person I used to be. Is it wrong that I want you to remain slightly safer? It's why I'm even doing this in the first place. Doing what? Wanda questioned. She didn't have time to react when Jasmine palmed her chest with a glowing purple gem. The reality manipulator started feeling hotter and hotter, like a fire starting from her chest, burning herself out. She could barely even think of anything but the pain that surrounded her. But there was something else, something more, outside of the pain. Pure power, that is what Wanda realized it was before the world turned black. Wanda woke up feeling different. There was a fire in her that wasn't there before. There was something that wanted to burn her inside out, something wild, something alien, yet it seemed to combine with her somehow. What had happened? She remembered the meeting about Thanos' invasion, seeing that bitch Selene one more time, and then her mother putting something purple inside her. The Power Stone, that was it. Who the fuck puts an Infinity Stone in their daughter's body without even asking? It's not like Wanda was a clueless child. Sitting up, the reality manipulator realized that she was very sore, and also that she didn't recognize where she was. The room she found herself in was serene, bathed in soft golden sunlight that streamed through sheer curtains. As her gaze adjusted, the intricate details of her surroundings gradually came into focus. The walls were adorned with vibrant tapestries depicting some kind of ancient African legends, their colors alive with the tales they told. Each thread is intricately woven, showcasing the craftsmanship and pride of a people deeply connected to their history. Wanda immediately realized where she was. This combination of tradition and advanced technology could only be in one place. Wakanda. The Scarlet Witch didn't always see eye to eye with her adoptive mother, but she could understand her distaste for this nation. Their entire culture was based on a sense of patriotism and isolation. They felt that they were superior to outsiders, and yet did nothing to rectify that. This nation could have been the center of the world, and yet their lack of ambition diminished humanity's advancements as a whole. If they had shared their technologies and advancements, Earth would have been a planet advanced enough to make its mark in the galaxy. It wouldn't be considered to be a primitive rock in the middle of nowhere that anyone could invade. Humanity would have been prepared for Thanos' invasion. They could have met his fleet with one of their own instead of letting them have the high ground and lock themselves in a single city. However, it was this sense of patriotism and isolation that made this country stagnate while the rest of the world caught up. You could see it in the decorations, in the way their history was portrayed proudly everywhere. Wanda stood up and took a closer look at the room. A bed draped in luxurious fabrics dominated the center of the room. The canopy above it, supported by elegantly carved pillars, billowed gently, reminiscent of the African savanna breeze. The bedding, a symphony of warm earth tones, radiated comfort and tranquility. The pillows were adorned with embroidered symbols and patterns, a testament to Wakanda's cultural heritage and attention to detail. The furniture in the room exhibited a seamless blend of tradition and modernity. A solid wooden desk stood against one wall, featuring a sleek design and smooth lines that harmonized with the room's aesthetic. A collection of delicately handcrafted artifacts sat atop it, reminiscent of Wakanda's rich cultural tapestry. Wanda had to admit, for all her misgivings, Wakandan had good taste in decorating. But now wasn't the time to admire this. Thanos was coming and Jasmine had left her in charge. Even if she had probably left with Jean without saying a word. To be honest, the Scarlet Witch was lost. She didn't know where to begin. She wasn't Jasmine. She wasn't someone capable of making the decisions her mother made. She was now responsible for an entire species, and that was terrifying. Just as she started to hyperventilate, a projection appeared in front of her. Hello, Wanda. The witch simply stared at the illusion of her mother. Mom. I'm sorry, little one, but this is a recording. I know that we haven't been as close as we used to be. It has probably something to do with the time I was away, or how different I became after Selene. Well, after the thing with Selene and Rose. I know I'm different. I know I'm so inhuman. I could see the discomfort whenever you looked at me afterwards. I haven't been much of a mother to you, have I? I am sorry for that. I should have gone out of my funk. I should have taken care of you more, but you've grown up into such a beautiful and amazing young woman, and I couldn't be prouder of you. I wish we could have had more time together before this, but we can't go back in time, can we? Well, I did go back in time. It's a bit complicated, but that's not important. For all my failures, and I have had many over thousands of years, the way I have failed you as a mother is one of my biggest regrets. The projection looked down, with a sad look on her face, and Wanda's eyes started to tear up. It was true, Jasmine hadn't been much of a mother recently. After the thing with Celine, the woman was pretty much catatonic. She just had this laser focus on entropy and just forgot about Wanda. She trained with her students, but it was impersonal. She made plans, but it was so calculating, so useless. It was like she removed emotions and relationships from her equation entirely, and Wanda wasn't spared. It was depressing, but it wasn't her fault. Jasmine was made into this, and it was hard to compare this cold calculating person to the woman who had rescued her from her asylum and raised her when she was a teenager filled with nothing more than angst and rage. It broke her heart, but this message was so unlike her new personality, if it could be called that in the first place. Wanda sniffed and the projection continued, I know you're scared. I sent you this message because I know you and I didn't like the way I left things. First of all, you must be wondering why I even put the power stone in your body. Something I never really mentioned is the fact that as I trained you, I had to alter your body somewhat. It was mainly to help you control your power and make sure that you wouldn't hurt yourself. There is a reason why your body is faster, stronger, and just plain better than any normal human. The energy you keep leaking around is being absorbed back into your cells, strengthening you, and giving you a shard of physical magic. However, in doing so, I also made you into a human being able to contain the power of an infinity stone, if only minutely. You don't need an artifact to channel it, and the power stone is the perfect stone to enhance your already impressive power set for what is coming. I have also put the space stone in a locket around your neck. What you do with it is your choice, but I would recommend using it as well. Sure, that would make you a target, but Thanos will be wielding at least 2 stones with his gauntlet, and possibly even a third one. Entropy wouldn't have started this fight if he hadn't already found the Soul Stone. And I want to give you every possible advantage. Wanda looked down and saw the glowing locket that held the Infinity Stone. What the hell was Jasmine thinking, giving her that? Now, outside the firepower, outside of the stones, I know that you're terrified. So many people are relying on you, and your decisions could save the universe or even doom it. But I haven't declared you as my successor, as my heir, for no reason. I trust you and believe in you. Even if you couldn't see it, I have trained you for decades for this position and you have always surpassed my expectations. I am confident that you will do the same now. Since you're passed out, I gave Alfred authority to speak in your name until you wake up. As for me and Jean, we're setting up our own plans. I regret that we didn't get to say goodbye in person, but we don't have that much time. Don't worry, I will personally make sure that your little girlfriend comes back to you safely. As for me, I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a feeling that it'll be big. All my life, I was pushed for this exact moment, and I have no idea how it's going to end. For the first time in my life, I am uncertain with what's coming next, with what happens after entropy, after Thanos. I don't know if I'm going to live or die. There's a certain beauty to not knowing, isn't there? But no matter what happens, I want you to know that I will always love you and I will always believe in you. Always. This is me officially passing you the torch. Humanity is in your hand, Wanda Maximoff, and I wouldn't have trusted it in anyone else's. I also gave you a little gift. You'll see it when you need it. Goodbye, my daughter, and I wish you good luck in the wars to come. The projection winked out of existence and Wanda just stood there, frozen. It was a lot to process, but her thoughts were interrupted by the doors opening, revealing a bald woman holding a golden vibranium spear. She was Dora Milaje, one of the elite warriors of Wakanda and protectors of its king. General Maximoff, you're awake. Just in time. The council is ready for you. We followed your instructions. The deadline is almost up, but we have a few concerns. Brief me as quickly as you can, Wanda responded automatically. Emma Frost is concerned about the fact that we're putting mutants on the front lines. She doesn't want to risk her people, the Dora Milaje answered. Wanda nodded. Tell her that only the brutes and physically resilient mutants are in the front line. Have Clairvoyant and Doormaker coordinate with an appropriate mutant with a thinker to blast their way through portals. If it's too much, coordinate with the Sorcerer Supreme to assign non-combatant sorcerers to make portals for them too. Also tell them to have a medical bay ready with healers and portals to avoid as many causalities as possible. The Wakandan warrior nodded. Very well, General. It continued like this all morning, with requests being made through Alfred to process and given to her by the Dora Milaje assigned to Wanda. She was so busy that she didn't even have time to be nervous anymore. Things continued like this, until finally, she got a message from Tony Stark. We have a huge fleet of ships appearing right on top of the planet. One of the battleships is coming this way. Wanda nodded and addressed the entire council at once. It's time. Thanos is here. We are the defendants of humanity. It's time for us to assemble. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 367, The Infinity War. Chapter 367, The Infinity War. April 26, 2015, New York City. Wanda Maximoff POV. General Maximoff, you're awake. Just in time. The council is ready for you. We followed your instructions. The deadline is almost up, but we have a few concerns. Brief me as quickly as you can, Wanda responded automatically. Emma Frost is concerned about the fact that we're putting mutants on the front lines. She doesn't want to risk her people, the Dora Milaje answered. Wanda nodded. Tell her that only the brutes and physically resilient mutants are in the front line. Have Clairvoyant and Doormaker coordinate with an appropriate mutant with a thinker ability to blast their way through portals. If it's too much, coordinate with the Sorcerer Supreme to assign non-combatant sorcerers to make portals for them too. Also tell them to have a medical bay ready with healers and portals to avoid as many casualties as possible. The Wakandan warrior nodded. Very well, General. It continued like this all morning, with requests being made through Alfred to process and given to her by the Dora Milaje assigned to Wanda. She was so busy that she didn't even have time to be nervous anymore. Things continued like this, until finally, she got a message from Tony Stark. We have a huge fleet of ships appearing right on top of the planet. One of the battleships is coming this way. Wanda nodded and addressed the entire council at once. It's time. Thanos is here. We are the defendants of humanity. It's time for us to assemble. If it had been any other occasion, Wanda would have been proud of herself and her mother. The army behind her was the culmination of their efforts to unite humanity. It was the first step of really making Earth into a single entity. It was a shame that the magical world didn't seem to be receptive. But Jasmine had a point, it wasn't the right time to unveil them. The world had enough issues with mutants being around, wizards would just complicate things even further. Yet, for all the suffering, all the death and misery, Wanda couldn't help but think that it was worth it. Right behind her stood the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, an entire army of mutants, the entire Wakandan military, and an entire Doombots army thanks to Victor Von Doom. Everyone was pitching in, but for all that this was a cause to celebrate, the mood was somber. This was it, the battle that Jasmine was preparing for. She was fighting her own battle, her own impossible enemy, and it was time for Wanda to step up. Wanda ignored the spaceships floating around the Wakandan force fields and started addressing her allies. Tony Stark POV. When Tony had gotten a message from Maximoff and Grey again, he knew something was up. These women did not contact him without a crisis on the horizon, but he didn't expect this. The aliens were coming back, and now, the little advantages that they had, that allowed them to win last time, were gone. An entire fleet was coming, without being bottlenecked by a single portal, and that just didn't look good. They had more warning this time, they had plans. Warnings were sent out to every major government they could get a hold of. They didn't know where the aliens were going to hit, but they were luring them with what they came for to have the battle on their terms. And it seemed to have worked. The entire fleet seemed to converge towards the hidden city of Wakanda. Don't get him started on the technology here. To think that there was a mountain of vibranium available that they just wouldn't share, or even sell. The entire city was moved to Genosha, which also happened to be some sort of secret country. Honestly, how many of those were there? Thor and Asgard seemed to be nowhere to be found, and that was already bad news, but the amount of preparation being made was impressive. Maximoff, or most probably the Morrigan, had been preparing for this for years, at least. Jarv. Status report. His faithful AI responded, the battleship seems to be stationed in the upper atmosphere, probably for orbital bombardment. It's deploying smaller ships filled with Chitauri and some kind of biologically engineered mindless soldiers towards Wakanda. Tony could see them, floating in front of the force field that protected Wakanda from outsiders. He nodded to himself, and just before he could speak, Maximoff turned and looked at them. I know that most of you don't like each other. The citizens of Wakanda are unhappy that we're using their capital for this battle, and I am sorry, but this was the place that would give humanity the best chance of surviving. I know that some of you have fought before, as enemies, or maybe as rivals. We have different ideas of what the world should look like, or how it should be run, but if there's anything we can agree on, it's that humanity must survive. We are not fighting because we want to win, or because we want to add a new achievement to our long lists. We're not doing this because we want to beat someone, or because we hate someone, or because we want to blame someone. It's not because it's fun. God knows it's not because it's easy. It's not even because we know that we'll win, because there's a good chance that we won't. We're fighting because it is right, because by doing this, our people can survive and thrive. We will suffer, we will see dark and dangerous things, because the rest of the world shouldn't. We are doing this to be kind. If we turn our backs, if we run away, good people will die. And it's not just random people, your friends, your families are in danger. If we stand and fight, we have a good chance at saving them, at giving them hope to live. We fight for hope, not just for each of us, but for our entire species. I don't know if we'll win, but I will stand my ground and fight, even if it kills me. Now, if you ask me, protecting my people is something worth dying for. What do you think? The woman's voice had reverberated throughout the entirety of Wakanda. For a minute, everyone stood silent as they heard the woman's speech. And just like that, the entire place roared in approval. The woman had a slight smile on her face. So, tell me, are you going to let these outsiders come to our planet, to massacre our people? The entire place shook with the loud "N-O" that everyone yelled. Tony found that he was cheering with them too. Good, now everyone, you know your posts. I want everyone to give their all. If these aliens think that we're just some defenseless planet, then they have another thing coming. The place shook, and portals started appearing, taking everyone to their assigned posts. Of course, it was then that the invasion actually started, with a bang, literally. The ships that had lowered themselves from the main one started to fire without warning at the city. The force field held against the strikes, but Tony could see that it would not hold indefinitely. Then the ships had begun sending down monsters and an army of Chitauri down to the surface that attacked the force field as well. Maximoff looked unperturbed before yelling, "Blasters, you're up." Before he could ask what was happening, thousands of portals appeared just above the spaceships and the armed soldiers, and from them, different bolts of energy blasted away at them. Some of them were blasts of fire, some of them were blasts of energy. Slowly but surely, half of the ships had fallen, and most of the ground forces were wiped out. Unfortunately, the other ships had activated some sort of shielding, but that was enough to give Tony a little hope. Everyone else's spirit was also lifted as well. This was proof that they still stood a chance. Or at least, they would have if it wasn't for the giants that started to fall from the ships. They were followed by some sort of slimes that seemed to eat everything they could touch, that in the seemingly endless troops of Chitauri and monsters, things didn't really look good. Maximoff seemed hesitant for a second before yelling out, "Fire the Etherian cannon on the ship that's still full of troops. Try to get as many other ships as you can." Another portal appeared right next to the ship, hovering higher than the rest, this time dwarfing the previous portals in size. From it, a giant beam of white energy just struck the ship and easily overwhelmed its defenses. Tony couldn't see the impact because of the light, but when it cleared up, the ship, alongside two others, were simply not there. There wasn't any wreckage or destruction. The blast was so strong that the ships had been disintegrated entirely. The entire battlefield froze for a moment. They definitely didn't expect something like this from them. Tony definitely didn't know that Maximoff had the kind of firepower behind her, outside her frankly ridiculous powers, that is. She spoke up loudly, "The cannon will need to recharge for a bit. We need to press on our advantage." While the blasters' portals continued to rain down on the attackers, the giants seemed unaffected and they were actively protecting the slimes, who started eating the force field somehow. Maximoff spoke up once more, "Doormaker, put a portal to a volcano above them." Immediately, the portal appeared in front of them, and tons of lava covered the attackers, burning them alive. The screams were harrowing, but Tony didn't feel any pity for them. Jarvis started to speak up, "Sir, the battleship released another wave of ships towards this location." Tony nodded and looked at Wanda, "You just bought us a couple of minutes. Do you think you could do the thing with the lava again?" She shook her head, "No, it could destabilize the force field. We need to open up a section to make a bottleneck again, and I could risk hitting our own troops with the lava." The Prince of Wakanda, or the Black Panther, spoke up, "Are you sure about that?" She shook her head, "We won't be able to survive against what are obviously troops engineered for force field sieges. The slimes can somehow dissolve the shield, and the giants will continue to protect them. A fight on our terms and from one side is just easier to handle." As if to prove her point, the moment the new wave of ships started to arrive, even with the blasters raining out on them, the slimes were able to make a temporary breach in the force field and go through. They were killed immediately by a wave of Maximoff's hand, but her point was made. And so, while whittling down their numbers with the blasters, and as more and more stragglers started to break into the city, Wanda nodded to herself, "All right, I'm opening a section of the force field soon. By the way, remember the briefing, if you see any children of Thanos, or the Mad Titan himself, call it in immediately, and Doormaker will send the appropriate opponent to your location to fight them." Ah, yes, the children of Thanos. His prized lieutenants that are utterly devoted to him and his cause. Not that the Mad Titan wouldn't kill them in a heartbeat if it helped him achieve his goal. They were dangerous and had a tricky range of powers, which was why the Scarlet Witch had designated a list of people that should engage each one. Maximoff then continued her orders, "All right, open section 14. Immediately, the force field started to open up like a door, and an entire army of Chitauri and monsters started to flow in, ready to kill them all. And well, the defenders of humanity did what they were supposed to against these impossible odds. They charged. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athosbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 368, Sunset. Chapter 368, Sunset. April 26, 2015, Remnant. Jasmine Sayer POV. Celine looked down but stayed silent. I understand. I know it doesn't mean much, Morrigan, but I still love you, and I do regret my actions, not because it didn't work, but because I can see the creature I turned you into. I only wish I could go back in time and yell at my past self for my insecurities, and how much they rotted me from the inside, but I can't. You are the love of my life and I'm not letting you stay alone again. Win or lose, life or death, I will follow you. I nodded and didn't respond. There was nothing to say after all. Instead, I simply stood up and walked over to the rest of the team. They all nodded at me in greeting but also stayed silent. We remained that way until suddenly the sky started to darken, and a few bolts of black lightning fell from the sky all around us, followed by loud thunder that shook the earth itself. I gave my team a solemn look. He's here. They all stood up behind me, in the positions that we agreed on before, as we waited for our enemy to reveal himself. The shadows in front of us started to take shape slowly, revealing a sinister figure that seemed to absorb the light itself. I rolled my eyes. Entropy really liked his theatrics. It was hard to see how this behavior was coming from something that was as old as the multiverse. Finally, the cosmic entity released his shadows and let everyone see his grinning face. What a nifty place you found, Morrigan. I simply stayed unmoving in place and quirked him a slight smile. Hello, Entropy. The two of us stayed silent, unmoving, while my allies shuffled around slightly. None of them had ever seen Entropy, let alone fought him like I have. Celine knew of him, of our encounter, but never experienced one herself. Jean was much the same for that matter. Quill was barely a fledgling when it came to fighting powerful opponents. Hell, he still considers Thanos to be a powerful adversary. And Loki was unconscious during the events of Ragnarok, and the fight with those who live above in shadow. The man's grin widened. Well, I have to say that I'm surprised. This place, I never knew it even existed. A parallel world so worthless that there isn't even any life left. I would have thought that death or time would have cancelled this entire universe since it's obviously a failed experiment of some kind. I thought it was appropriate for this fight. A dead world for the battle for the multiverse. Don't you think so too? The cosmic entity nodded. Well, appropriate is the way to go. And you adhered to the terms of the duel. That's unexpected. I thought that you would at least try to sneak something, like having a secret Infinity Stone. But I checked, you gave the Maximoff girl the real ones. Is it wise to trust such a desperate creature with such power, one that proved that they were perfectly willing to destroy an entire universe because of their selfishness? I shook my head. You don't realize what you've done, do you? Your trip back in time changed things, changed me as a person. You have been dealing with me like you did my counterpart. She was a loving mother, a wife, a human. Yet I'm not anymore, and with that change, my relationship with Wanda is not as close as it used to be. I missed so much time during our fight in that temporal attack. My daughter learned to live without me, without using me as an anchor. Should I die, as I did in your timeline, she would not be tempted by the Darkhold. There's no going back after this fight. Just like if I lose, it's permanent. If you do, then it's permanent too. I was lying, of course, not that he knew it. Entropy was bound to time by his own nature. Warped as he may be, his powers were based on his own domain that he embodies. Honestly, the time loop that Death was arranging wouldn't have worked on another cosmic entity. No matter what happens, the chances are that the loop would restart with Entropy in it. Unless I win in the exact manner Death wants, that is. Entropy though looked startled for a fraction of a second before exclaiming, it doesn't matter. You won the previous time because of a trump card that I didn't know about, and even then, you died pulling it off. But I do know now, and with it my victory is guaranteed. You poor fool. You have no idea about the game being played, do you? Do you not see what you've become? With every step you take to become more powerful in this physical realm, you hack away at your very nature as an endless being. Honestly, look at yourself. Do you look like a cosmic entity? Do you feel like one? He admired the resilience of Earth's defenders against his might. He thinks that he is going to succeed because it is his destiny, but losing all those brave souls that actually managed to defeat him is not a good thing. After all, it was enough that half of them would probably die when he completes his mission. His pride would push him to accept the offer, but his rational mind would argue against it. It was a moment of indecision, and that was all they needed. With a quick nod, the Ancient One seemed to understand what she was getting at, and in a fraction of a second, the world shattered into reflective shards behind him. Thanos seemed to sense it and readjusted reality using his Infinity Stone. Thanos started to use the Soul Stone, and Wanda started to feel weaker and weaker, like something was leaving her. It was like she was suffocating, even if there was air around. The Ancient One seemed to be having the same issue, but she touched Wanda, and the Scarlet Witch felt the world slow down. Time dilatation using the Time Stone. Wanda was still in agony, but she used the Space Stone to create a portal that surrounded the three of them, as well as a burst of gravity to push Thanos away. The attack seemed to disorient him, since Wanda started to regain her clarity. She slowly stood up, being helped by the Ancient One, who seemed to have recovered spontaneously. She prepared to be ready to fight Thanos, but he was too busy staring around him. You brought me to Titan. You brought me to my home. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 373, Attack on Titan. Chapter 373, Attack on Titan. April 26, 2015, Wakanda. Wanda Maximoff POV. She prepared to be ready to fight Thanos, but he was too busy staring around him. You brought me to Titan. You brought me to my home. His pride would push him to accept the offer, but his rational mind would argue against it. It was a moment of indecision, and that was all they needed. With a quick nod, the Ancient One seemed to understand what she was getting at, and in a fraction of a second, the world shattered into reflective shards behind him. Thanos seemed to sense it and readjusted reality using his Infinity Stone. Thanos started to use the Soul Stone, and Wanda started to feel weaker and weaker, like something was leaving her. It was like she was suffocating, even if there was air around. The Ancient One seemed to be having the same issue, but she touched Wanda, and the Scarlet Witch felt the world slow down. Time dilatation using the Time Stone. Wanda was still in agony, but she used the Space Stone to create a portal that surrounded the three of them, as well as a burst of gravity to push Thanos away. The attack seemed to disorient him, since Wanda started to regain her clarity. She slowly stood up, being helped by the Ancient One, who seemed to have recovered spontaneously. She prepared to be ready to fight Thanos, but he was too busy staring around him. You brought me to Titan. You brought me to my home. Wanda looked at the purple-skinned alien with an intense look on her face. It's only fitting that you meet your end at the place where you began. No, bringing me here would do nothing more than motivate me. This is where my plan to save the universe began. You know, Titan used to be such a beautiful place. However, slowly, like most planets, it faced its difficulties. Too many mouths to feed, and not enough resources to go around. And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution. The Mad Titan used the Reality Stone to make an illusion of his home before it died, and the Scarlet Witch stated, genocide. Thanos nodded, but at random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike. They called me a madman. And what I predicted came to pass. The illusion faded away into the true state of Titan, a ruined barren planet. Congratulations, you're a prophet, Wanda snarked. No, I'm a survivor. Who wants to murder trillions? The alien warlord looked unperturbed. With all 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers, and they would all cease to exist. I call that mercy. And then what? I finally rest, and watch the sun rise on a grateful universe. The hardest choices require the strongest wills. This place is where my dreams began. If you thought that bringing me here would destroy my spirit, then I'm afraid that you have done nothing but remind me of my true purpose. Wanda snorted. It was never our intention to break your spirit. Then, what was this for? The Mad Titan asked while frowning. A distraction. The Scarlet Witch answered with a smug smile on her face. Before the alien warlord could even grasp her words, a giant bolt of lightning appeared out of nowhere, striking the distracted Titan directly, followed by a veritable rain of black swords. Thor and Hela were there. This was a scenario that they had discussed before. Hela had initially been partnered with Doormaker to send her necro swords at their target discreetly. Her presence was a little trump card that would assist anyone having issues, and Wanda had planned that once the fight is purely with Thanos, that Hela reveal herself. As the dust settled, the Mad Titan was revealed to be kneeling slightly. He had a gash on his cheek, but nothing more. It's been a while since someone had made me bleed. Perhaps this isn't going to be a waste of time, after all. Thor attempted to send another bolt of lightning, but halfway through, the attack was dissolved into a red mist, because of the Reality Stone. Wanda on the other hand just kept sending small blasts of energy at him to distract him, but he seemed to block them with his gauntlet somehow. The Sorcerer Supreme knelt and touched the ground, creating a wave of stone that flowed towards the Mad Titan, who attempted to jump over it, only to be brought down by 2 whips of lightning. Hela leapt into the air, conjuring a dozen swords. However, Thanos closed his fists, and the necro swords were sucked into the gauntlet, as were the ropes of lightning that Thor was maintaining. He opened his gauntlet and a wave of fire spread in front of him, which Wanda diverted into the sky by using the Space Stone. This took Thanos off guard enough for Thor to throw his hammer, and this time, it actually broke Thanos' armor when it hit his shoulder. Jasmine sort of forgot to mention how bullshit Thor's new hammer was. Of course, Thanos wouldn't have any of it, and he reeled backwards for just a moment, before his fist shot forward, catching Thor in the face and throwing him away to slam into the side of a mountain. For the first time in the fight, Wanda decided to use the Power Stone and concentrated for a moment, before sending a giant beam of purple energy at the being in front of her. The alien warlord's eyes seemed to widen for a fraction of a second, and he just raised his palm, seemingly absorbing the blast, and returned with a blast of pure chaos towards a surprised Hela, that was leaping at his back with a giant necro sword in her hand, sending her flying in the opposite direction from her brother. However, the Sorcerer Supreme decided to involve herself and sent a giant saw of extra-dimensional energy towards Thanos, who tried to turn it using the Reality Stone, only for it to fail. He must be unaccustomed to dimensional attacks then. That's good to know. Still, for the first time since Hela's surprise attack, they had wounded Thanos. The Mad Titan growled and leapt towards her, only for him to notice that the Eye of Agamotto was open, revealing the Time Stone. What the Ancient One had been doing was revealed quickly, since mid-charge, the Mad Titan was hit with an accelerated Mjolnir, thrown by the God of Thunder, sending him flying back. The Prince of Asgard followed after him with an accelerated Thunder Punch, sending the alien warlord flying back further. The Sorcerer Supreme yelled, "We can't let him have enough time to use the Soul Stone." Wanda nodded and teleported herself near the flying Thanos. She created 4 portals into a loop, hoping to disorient the Mad Titan while giving herself enough time to think of something else. Thanos was stuck in a loop between portals, but it didn't take long for the Mad Titan to yell out, "Enough." The 4 portals broke, but now, Wanda had a plan. It was a terrible plan, but it might still work. Deciding to give herself a little breathing room, she used the Space Stone, enhanced with the Power Stone in her body, and broke the moon nearest to Titan. She then teleported the debris towards her opponent in a veritable meteor shower, and teleported herself back to the rest of her team. Thor spoke up first, "Do you think he's still alive?" Hela grunted back, "What do you think?" "What now?" The Scarlet Witch grinned, "Now, I do this." Wanda took a deep breath, used her chaos magic to float all of the meteors, and summoned them towards Thanos, crushing him inside a giant ball of stone that was slowly lifting up, summoning more and more debris to make the ball bigger. It looked like a giant meteor floating in the sky. For a fraction of a second, Wanda thought that it might be enough, but of course, Thanos used the Reality Stone to turn the stone into smoke. The witch grinned slightly, as the smoke solidified into spiked shadows that rotated like drills towards the alien. Her opponent snarled as a few of them injured him before he dissolved them into nothing. Wanda decided to use the Space Stone to alter the gravity on Thanos, pushing him towards the ground. The Mad Titan fell, with a giant impact, creating a veritable cloud of dust around him. Hela didn't let him catch his breath, as she conjured hundreds of swords towards their opponent. However, their victory was short-lived as Thor, for some reason, sent Mjolnir towards the unsuspected back of the Sorcerer Supreme, knocking her out. He tried to do the same to Wanda, but he was sent flying back with a ball of chaos energy. It was then that she noticed that the Mad Titan was slowly getting up, but most of all, that the Mind Stone and the Reality Stone were glowing. Damn, Thor must still be under some kind of illusion or under Thanos' control somehow. Choosing not to risk it further, she opened a portal behind Thor towards Wakanda. They would handle it from there. Emma Frost would be able to tell if the control was temporary or not, and maybe revert it. They were down 2 members now. The Ancient One didn't seem to be waking up, but Wanda couldn't risk sending her away for Thanos to return to Earth immediately. Instead, the Scarlet Witch focused and sent her to the mirror dimension. She didn't know if Thanos could access it, especially with the Reality Stone at his disposal, but it was better than leaving her unconscious in the middle of the battlefield. She will be able to leave when she wants to with her sling ring anyway. However, now, only Hela and Wanda were left, with just a little move. They had been on the offense ever since the fight started, and she didn't expect a counterattack like that. Speaking of the Mad Titan, he was slowly getting up from their barrage. His armor was missing critical pieces, making it more of a hindrance than providing any protection. The warlord used the Reality Stone to dissolve it, and stumbled up. He didn't look good. There was blood running all over his face. His breath was ragged, and he was limping. "You are good, I'll admit that. You wiped out my back order, and tricked me into underestimating your planetary defenses. But the time for playing is over." Slowly, he clenched his hand, and all 3 of the stones at his disposal started glowing. Wanda didn't know what the Titan's attack was immediately, but it became apparent after a few seconds. Thousands of what seemed like shades started to appear out of nowhere, behind Thanos. It was a veritable army against them all. "You made a mistake bringing me here. My people will follow me, even in death. Your death is inevitable, I am inevitable. However, you may take heart before you die, however, knowing that you hurt me more than any other opponent has in a very long time. Goodbye, Wanda Maximoff." The army of shades started to attack, and Wanda had a mad idea. Jasmine had told her about no-win scenarios, and this was very much one. The idea is to flip the board and get your enemy to be in the exact same position you are. For all her power, the reality stone really was a good counter to almost everything she had in her arsenal. Wanda had always depended on her reality manipulation, and even with the power stone boosting her abilities, her reality manipulation didn't come close to what Thanos possessed when he used the reality stone. So, the answer was simple. Exponential growth. Give him something that's easy to make, but very hard to contain. After all, for all his control over the reality stone, he had to actively think about it. Wanda smiled and used her reality manipulation to transform some of the air around her into an element that Reed Richards had, theoretically, invented. A few molecules, that was all, which burned hotter than anything magical or found in nature outside the interior of a sun, and from there it would spread, those first molecules changing their fellows. It would spread, and it would interact with the rest of the elements of the atmosphere with a very simple result: fire. A blaze so intense, so hot, it would burn and sear the entire planet's surface clean of all life. It was supposed to be made for a theoretical terraforming scenario, but Richards had thankfully put it aside because he thought it was too dangerous and that he couldn't test it without a lot of needless danger. Jasmine had it catalogued in the possible apocalypse events and had created a magical counter to it, to be deployed the moment something like that appeared. Unfortunately for Thanos, he didn't have a counter for something like this, and Wanda wanted to rub in her success by adding a bit of chaotic energy into the original molecule, making the fire a veritable inferno of chaos that spread towards the Mad Titan. That's the thing, for all his detachment, Thanos was seeing his world being destroyed once more, the remnants of his people, even summoned as shades using the Soul Stone, being turned into cinders. Thanos stared in shock at the massive storm of fire that was shooting his way and tried to use the Reality Stone to stop it. Alas, he couldn't, not really, since it was just multiplying too quickly. Every molecule of air it touched became a target as well. In the end, Thanos kept containing the fire, slowly, unable to change it because of the chaotic element inside it, making him require giving up his control of the flames to change its nature. Thanos decided to dismiss the shades around him and snarled at the devastation to the place that he once called home and focused on undoing as much of it as possible. Wanda, though, held a crimson sword of chaotic energy and stabbed Thanos in the chest with it. The Mad Titan grunted and then grabbed Wanda's neck. She was choking slightly. The fire had died down and the Mad Titan looked like he was grabbing her necklace, which held the Space Stone. "You should have gone for the head." The choking woman snorted, "And you shouldn't get distracted in the middle of a fight." Thanos didn't have time to say anything as his hand holding the gauntlet was cut off. It was Hela, that was sped up using the Time Stone that the limping Sorcerer Supreme held in her hand. They knew that Hela's Necrosword bypassed the Titan's regeneration, but her swing didn't seem to be physically strong enough to bypass his durability, so accelerating her using the Time Stone seemed obvious. And now, here he was, the Mad Titan, without his Infinity Gauntlet. He was kneeling. It was fitting, in a way, that he knelt before the human that destroyed him, a monster that destroyed thousands of civilizations, killing billions, if not trillions. Wanda simply grabbed his head and used her reality magic to turn the warlord into dust. He didn't have the protection of the Infinity Stones after all. Thus ended the tale of Thanos, the Mad Titan. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athosbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 374, Remnant of Loss. Chapter 374, Remnant of Loss. April 26, 2015, Remnant. Celine Gallio POV. As the men started to stab her beloved, Celine did the only thing she could and replaced herself with her wife. She felt the blinding pain where the attack happened, and felt the destructive energy spread throughout her body. But she wasn't afraid. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of death. Instead, she looked at the love of her life, the woman that she caused more pain to than any enemy of hers, and she remembered the beautiful moments they shared, the love they experienced, and she realized that her sacrifice was worth it. The last thing she ever saw before she turned into dust was the anguished look her wife gave her, and all she could offer in return was a soft smile. Jasmine Sayer POV. I stared at the decomposing body of the woman who used to be my wife, and I just didn't know what to do, or what to feel. Ever since my ascension to a celestial, I have had a hard time processing my emotions, and before seeing Celine's cold body on the ground, I was reasonably sure that I had lost all pretense of humanity anymore. Then why did it hurt so much? This woman had betrayed me, smashed my heart and my trust for some kind of selfish ambition that backfired. She literally turned me into another person, after thousands of years of love and trust that we shared. Even if I had any humanity left, seeing her die should have made me feel vindicated, like I was avenged. No, like the woman I used to be, that was betrayed and killed by the wife she loved so much, was avenged. And yet, all I could feel was pain and overwhelming despair. It was odd to feel anything as strong, especially since I haven't felt anything for years. But the emotion was intense, and I was having a hard time processing it. It seems that I still had some humanity in me. Not a lot, just enough to make the pain unbearable. And by all the powers in the multiverse, I wish I didn't have that little spark of humanity, if only to spare me the suffering of seeing Celine perish right in front of my eyes. It didn't make any sense. Why was I even mourning her? I should hate her, and yet, now that I know that I will not see her again, I am in pain. Perhaps I still loved her somewhere deep down, despite her failure, despite her betrayal, despite her selfishness. The pain she caused me paled in front of the agony of seeing her body slowly slump to the ground, with a large hole in her heart. I wanted to scream, yet I couldn't. I wanted to yell at the world, but my body couldn't move. I wanted to cry, but my eyes were dry. I stood there, my form trembling with conflicting emotions. The sight before me was surreal, and the scent of death hung heavy in the air. A mixture of sorrow and anger swirled within me, a turbulent storm that threatened to tear me apart, as I watched her lifeless eyes look back at me. The pain I felt was not just from her death, but from the realization that a part of me still loved her, despite all she had done. It was a love mixed with regret and anger, an intricate tapestry of emotions that entangled me in their intricate web. I yearned to release the pent-up emotions inside me, to let them flow freely and wash away the ache in my soul. As my mind struggled to process this overwhelming surge of emotions, my physical form remained frozen. It was as though my body was locked in a state of stasis, mirroring the internal conflict that raged within me. In the midst of this emotional maelstrom, I felt a profound sense of loss and emptiness. The world seemed to fade into the background, leaving me alone with my turmoil. That was until I saw the face of my former wife's killer. He was grinning at me, happy that he caused me pain. I honestly never knew what I ever did to that abomination of a being to make him revel in my agony so much. Our rivalry, our fight, was purely professional. We fought because he wanted to destroy the multiverse and I wanted. What did I want? Why was I even fighting? To save the multiverse. I stopped caring a long time ago when I realized that I didn't have a choice in the matter. Sometimes, I just forgot why I even bothered. Suddenly, I realized that everything I did was half-hearted. I fought because I was forced to. It was a professional assignment, not something I was really committing to. Well, now, entropy had made it personal. I didn't care that I was the one that asked her to fight for me. I didn't care that she wouldn't be dead if it wasn't for me. I didn't care that it was my death perception that guided me towards inviting her, in the first place. I only cared about the smiling face of the men who killed her. My agony slowly morphed into something else, something more, something bitter. It was as if the floodgates of my emotions had burst open, and a torrent of raw, unfiltered feelings surged through me. The pain and despair were still there, but now they were joined by a seething anger, directed at the men responsible for her death. I had killed Celine. I realized that now. I trusted something that I knew I shouldn't have. But if I survive this, I will atone for my crimes, and mourn appropriately. But right now, I wanted nothing more than to kill Entropy. No, more than that. I wanted him to hurt, to lose everything that ever mattered to him and watch it wither away into nothingness. Funnily enough, my death perception seemed to agree somehow, but I didn't care. I just wanted to wipe that grin off Entropy's face. Said cosmic entity wiped his sword of my former wife's blood. You still cared for her, didn't you? For all your talk of ascension, you're still so human. I gave him a blank look. You're going to pay for that. I don't think so. You only have that redhead there for backup. I just killed over half your team. I guess you should have called it the Suicide Squad instead. They all seemed to drop like flies. No, I interrupted, you don't understand. I don't care about the multiverse. I don't care about cosmic entities. I don't care if you win or lose. I care about hurting you. If you win, I'll make your victory as costly as possible. If you lose, I'll make your defeat as painful as possible. The cosmic being looked perturbed for a fraction of a second, after which his smirk came back on his face. Yeah, good luck with that. I yelled in fury as I sent a giant wave of pure destruction towards my opponent. He seemed to send one of his own. The two waves met between us. Neither of our attacks seemed to get past the other, and at the point of impact, the darkness seemed to rise into the air, higher than even a mountain. Yet, slowly, I was being overpowered, pushed back. Until I felt Jean's flames somehow enhance my own attacks. I had forgotten about the avatar of the Phoenix in my grief, but right now, I didn't care. I only wanted to see my opponent suffer as I was suffering. Dark red and black fought to a standstill. It seemed like in terms of raw power, the combination of me and Jean was enough to somehow balance the scales. But I was still fueled by my hate, and I decided to stop this stalemate. A cloud was gathering above from the heat of our attack, and I tapped into its natural element with a mixture of darkness and light, and created two giant bolts of lightning, one filled with burning light, another with consuming darkness, that fell down towards the abomination that used to be a cosmic entity. The attack was powerful that it would have vaporized most opponents. However, Entropy wasn't your usual villain. But it did seem to do a good job at distracting him, especially since Jean's flames seemed to win out against his attack and consume him. The battlefield was silent for a moment. We were waiting to see the result of Jean's strongest attack. A singed entropy with a few cuts on his face emerged. Now, that's just playing dirty. I didn't dignify that with a response, as I prepared one of my strongest attacks. It wasn't one that I would usually use on an inhabited planet. There was a reason I chose to fight in another dimension, like Remnant. Turning towards Jean, I exclaim, "Can you distract him for me? I'm setting something up." I gathered my power for what will probably be my last attack. I never wanted to use this in my life. I learned while experimenting with my cosmic powers that the dimensions surrounding a reality exist in some kind of balance. It's why reality doesn't destroy itself easily. For every light dimension, there exists a dimension filled with nothing but darkness. For every fire dimension, there is one where nothing is left but cold and ice. And for every material dimension, there exists one with antimatter. It was easy to create antimatter with energy, but it was energy-consuming. Slowly, I started to convert my cosmic energy into antimatter, making my inevitable attack stronger and more devastating with every drop I put there. I looked towards Jean, who was valiantly holding her own. I had to admit that she was impressive and more than a match for my daughter. I sincerely hope she'll survive this. I use whatever is left of my reserves to pull her back as I unleash my attack while yelling out, "Enuma Elish." What? Even with practically no humanity, I was still dramatic. A gigantic vortex of energy appeared in front of me. It converged into a beam of power, which was fired towards my distracted opponent. Entropy couldn't really do anything about it. His power is to dissolve the bond between molecules, but antimatter would do the exact same damage even if the energy is dissolved. He couldn't negate the attack, since there wasn't anything to negate. The beam seemed to disintegrate anything it touched. Even the ground was barely more than a pile of ashes. I suppressed a grin as Entropy widened his eyes when he realized that he couldn't negate the attack, and finally, the beam connected. Reality itself seemed to bend and shatter under the weight of my attack, and Entropy was overwhelmed, his physical form turning into nothing. His form, no matter his power, was material, hence it was nullified by the antimatter vortex I created. Jean gave me a hopeful look. Did we win? He couldn't have survived this. I knew that. But damn, cosmic entities really were bullshit. This was literally everything I had left in the tank. But of course, my luck was shit anyway, and some of the darkness started to converge into the familiar form of my enemy. He looked pissed now. That was impressive. I wouldn't have thought about an attack like that. But I told you, in my core, this is nothing more than a projection of my power, one that I could reform. Nice attack though, even if you're practically powerless now. Instead of going after me, dashed towards Jean, and grabbed her by the neck. As she tried to summon her flames, he waved his hand, and they were dispelled immediately. He summoned the necro sword and pointed it at the redhead's neck. Now, none of that, dearie. You're the only one left. I'm going to enjoy seeing the look on her face as I get you like I did her wife. It was then that I realized that there was literally nothing I could do against him. This was a consciousness that was powered with energy, a living form of a concept. You can't kill an idea, that's the truth. Suddenly, my death perception gave me a path to follow. It was so simple. Why didn't I think of it? With renewed purpose, I grabbed a small disc and ran towards my enemy. He stabbed Jean with his infamous weapon, only for both our eyes to widen as she turned into sand. Wasn't Loki supposed to have died? It didn't matter. What did matter was that my enemy was taken aback. I tackled him into the ground and the disc I was holding started to glow. Suddenly, we were both enveloped in a kaleidoscope of colors. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athosbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 375, Unraveling Realities. Chapter 375, Unraveling Realities. April 26, 2015, Remnant. Jasmine Sayer POV. It was then that I realized that there was literally nothing I could do against him. This was a consciousness that was powered with energy, a living form of a concept. You can't kill an idea, that's the truth. Suddenly, my death perception gave me a path to follow. It was so simple. Why didn't I think of it? With renewed purpose, I grabbed a small disc and ran towards my enemy. He stabbed Jean with his infamous weapon, only for both our eyes to widen as she turned into sand. Wasn't Loki supposed to have died? It didn't matter. What did matter was that my enemy was taken aback. I tackled him into the ground and the disc I was holding started to glow. Suddenly, we were both enveloped in a kaleidoscope of colors. It was hard to explain with words what happened. English was just so limited in terms of adjectives to describe the sudden change in my surroundings. Colors blurred, and the world seemed to stretch and twist around me. Gravity lost its grip as I felt myself being pulled apart, yet staying whole at the same time. It was overwhelming. The fabric of reality itself seemed to unravel, revealing a kaleidoscope of vibrant hues that defied description. I was surrounded by a pulsating symphony of energy, where particles danced in intricate patterns that I could scarcely comprehend. I floated in this ethereal realm, no longer confined by the limitations of the tangible world I once knew. The very concept of time became malleable. Moments stretched and condensed in ways that eluded rationality. I realized then how small I was compared to this. Entropy stopped mattering, Celine's death didn't matter, nothing mattered, in front of the representation of infinity before me. I had no idea how long I had been adrift in this mesmerizing expanse, nor did I have any frame of reference to understand it. Honestly, for all my ascension and talk of surpassing humanity, it was humbling to see something that I just couldn't comprehend. All my life, I lived in a material universe with concrete laws that were tightly governed by cosmic entities. There was a distinct balance of order and chaos, blending in perfectly to create the requirements for reality to exist. But what I was seeing was paradoxical and my mind just couldn't cope with that. The mighty Morrigan brought so low with incomprehension. Suddenly, I found myself pulled downwards and I was slowly getting more and more overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of what I was witnessing. It didn't take long for me to black out. Well, not really. It was more like my consciousness was blocked to somehow shift my view of reality. Gradually, my consciousness settled into the chaos around me. I found myself in an environment that was simultaneously familiar and alien. I was lying down upon a crystalline landscape that stretched beyond sight, its facets reflecting a spectrum of colors that shifted with every step. The air itself shimmered with microscopic motes, like specks of stardust suspended in infinity. I gazed up at the sky, or what I assumed was the sky. It was a breathtaking display of colors that I could never have imagined. Hues I had no names for blended seamlessly together, creating an awe-inspiring panorama that stretched to infinity. There were no stars or constellations, instead, the entire expanse seemed to be alive with a luminescent energy that pulsed and twinkled in harmony with the colors below. I decided to look around me and saw that my trusty staff was just a few yards away. I still didn't trust myself to stand up since I felt dizzy by the change of environment, so I pulled myself towards it. By the time I grabbed it, I used it to pull myself up and noticed that my body just felt sore. I took a few steps forwards and the ground beneath my feet seemed to respond to my presence, creating ripples of light that echoed outward. Bizarre flora sprouted from the crystalline terrain, their translucent petals emitting an otherworldly glow. Strange creatures flitted about, their forms resembling delicate fractals that twisted and turned in intricate spirals. I knew deep in my mind that what I was seeing was an illusion of an incomprehensive reality. My mind was adjusting my senses in a way that it could interpret it without going insane. It seemed like I wasn't the only one that was frazzled by what I have done, since on my right, the familiar form of entropy was groaning while limping up and gasped, "What is this place?" I grinned at him, something that Hank Pym inadvertently discovered. This is the quantum realm, a universe underneath all other universes. A realm where the very fabric of reality is woven from the threads of possibility and uncertainty. Time, space, reality, these are all illusions here, stripped away to reveal the raw essence of existence. Entropy's eyes widened as he absorbed my words, his expression a mix of disbelief and fascination. Illusions. So, what we perceive here is just in our heads. Everything is in our heads, entropy. We try to interpret the universe around us in a way that makes sense. And if lying to ourselves is a way to do so, then we create an illusion of reality that fits our worldview. What we're witnessing right now is a translation of something far more intricate and unfathomable. We're seeing a mere fraction of what the quantum realm truly is, for its true nature is incomprehensible. So, of course all of this is in our heads. But that doesn't make it any less real. Entropy's gaze flickered between me and the bizarre landscape surrounding us, his expression a mixture of surprise and frustration. "You sacrificed yourself to imprison me here. I'm afraid that it won't hold me for long, and if this place is really beyond time, an eternity here could be nothing more than a fraction of a second in the outside world. After all, to something like me, it is but a blink of my eyes." I snorted, "No, I did not bring you here to imprison you. You'll escape and then you'll probably try to do the exact same thing again. And even if you fail, you'll find a way to do it all over again. If imprisoning you was my goal, there would be dozens of better places to do so. Aren't you curious why I chose this place specifically? It doesn't matter, you'll be dead anyway." The cosmic entity moved its hand, and nothing happened. He tried once more and frowned. The frustrated look on his face was too funny and I couldn't hold it as I burst into laughter. "Performance problems. I hear they're more common the older you get. What have you done?" Entropy yelled at me. I grinned. "I told you. This is a place where the laws of reality, where concepts are nothing more than illusions. Your powers are conceptual in nature. As are mine, for that matter. In this place, such things don't mean anything. You are entropy personified, but the concept has no weight here, no authority over this reality. You have your powers, but you cannot use them to alter the reality you perceive. We're both powerless in this place. The cosmic entity's eyes widened in panic as he tried to use his power once more, and I grinned. It's just you and me now, Entropy. No shortcuts, no tricks, no hidden aces. So, you brought us here to level the playing field, my opponent muttered, his tone laced with a begrudging admiration, which was eclipsed by his anger. I nodded, twirling the metallic staff in my hand, a glint of determination in my eyes. However, my opponent burst into laughter. You always have one last card up your sleeve, don't you? Well, all right then. If you want to make it a contest of arms, I am more than happy to oblige. Your chances are not much better there. Yeah, he had a point, quantum realm or not, he was still a conceptual being and he knew it. He literally can't die without the very concept of entropy disappearing from the multiverse, while I could very well die. In a battle of attrition, his victory is inevitable. I couldn't accept that. My cycle must be broken. I don't want to redo this again. But if victory was impossible, my death perception wouldn't have urged me to do this. Even if it didn't work anymore, now that I was in the quantum realm, there had to be a chance of victory. I just needed to find it. I've beaten worse odds, I simply replied. With that said, I took a defensive stance, the staff held firmly before me. The ground beneath us continued to shimmer with the ripples of light, responding to our presence in ways that were both mesmerizing and disorienting. The surreal surroundings served as a reminder of the unique battleground we now stood upon, a realm where reality itself was malleable and uncertain. With a sudden surge of energy, Entropy lunged forward, his sword arcing through the air with a deadly grace. I deflected the strike with my staff, the clash of metal against metal ringing out in the strange, vibrant silence. Our movements were fluid yet strained, each of us adjusting to the unfamiliar physics of this realm as we sparred amidst the dancing lights. Both our weapons were useless. The necrosword was tied to the concept of darkness that originated from Null. Now, it was just a durable sword. My staff contained the powers of 2 infinity stones within it that it absorbed when I held them, but that energy was meaningless in this place. It was barely more than a stick of metal that I could use to hit people. It was hard to believe that this was a duel for the multiverse. There were no reality-destroying attacks, no unbeatable defenses, just 2 people who physically tried to kill each other. It was oddly fitting in a way, to see both men and God brought down to the same level, fighting like savages. Entropy gained the advantage by sending a vicious swing of his sword at me, which I blocked, but he was able to counter it with a kick that sent me flying. Yeah, and physically, he was still stronger than me, so that was a big disadvantage on my side, that and his durability. Entropy leapt at me, trying to finish me off, but I rolled to evade his strike. I jumped up, while retrieving my staff and used the hook to grab onto my opponent's outreached hand and bent it. If Entropy was a normal human being, the wrist would have been broken, but all it did was make him drop his weapon. I pushed him away and used all my strength to slam my staff towards the infamous necrosword. 2 artifacts that should be indestructible met in a paradoxical existence. They should have remained unscathed, but for some reason, something in my gut told me to do this. All I heard was Entropy's yell, "No," before the impact created some kind of explosion of white light that sent me flying back, my eyes burning from the blinding light. I grimaced when I was able to blink my eyes open and looked around to see dozens of shards of metal around the place of impact. Both my staff and the necrosword had shattered. Entropy limped up and I followed. You think I cared about that toothpick of a sword? It was a weapon, nothing more. You think that you somehow won something? He walked towards me and took a shard of the necrosword. I was at the epicenter of the explosion, so I was very hurt, and I was too disoriented to stop him from stabbing me in the gut with the piece of metal. The pain was a lot more intense than I thought. It was like someone had pierced through my very soul. Wait a minute, I scrambled through my awareness and noticed that it was in fact wounded my soul. Was this a property of the necrosword that was so powerful that it still existed in the quantum realm? I didn't know, but I was quickly losing the fight. I could feel my life force leaking from the stab. It was painful. It was agonizing. Did Celine always feel this way? Wait a minute, wasn't this exactly Celine's condition? Was I now as cursed as she used to be? Entropy didn't let me ponder too much and just punched me in the face. The moment he touched me, I felt a small thrill of energy enter my soul. The enraged cosmic entity continued its violence. You pathetic little worm, think that you can stop me. With every hit, I felt stronger. My body was getting weaker, of course, but my soul was growing far beyond what it used to be. The men got up, gasping in breath. Just stay down. You know, I think I might not even kill you. I'll just keep you alive as a trophy until I find a way to leave this place, and I'll just leave you here alone when I go back. If this place doesn't die when I wipe out the entire multiverse, you could just stay here, undying, knowing that you failed to save anyone. You would be trapped in this infinite realm of chaos, in eternal torment. How does that sound? I didn't care what he was saying and just stood up, limping, with blood running down my nose, and a stab wound in my gut. I could do this all day. The cosmic entity just huffed, "This is just sad, he hit me again, just stay down." I got up again and he punched me again, "Give up. This is meaningless. You lost." But I got up again and again. I wouldn't stand down. Every time I felt like giving up, I remembered Celine, the love that betrayed me, but stood by my side, in the end. I remembered Wanda, the daughter who deserved a better mother than I. I remembered Rose, the sister that I cursed with ignorance in my anger. I remembered Hogwarts, my pride, the daughter that I didn't contact as much as I wanted. I remembered Jean, Wanda's girlfriend, that I started to view as a daughter myself. I remembered Mordred, the daughter that I failed. I remembered Hestia, the love that I lost. I remember Atlan, the father who taught me everything he knew, who gave me the responsibility to help our people, that I failed either way. I wasn't fighting for me, not anymore. My existence was a cursed one and I waited its end for so long. I lived as a spectator to my own life for most of my existence, bound by time and fate, and when I broke these chains, I found myself bound in another. A part of me just wanted to give up, so that the pain would end, but every time I came close to doing it, I remembered who I was fighting for. What a joke, that I start feeling human again in a place where being human didn't mean anything. But with every punch, with every kick, with every insult, I kept getting back up, grinning and laughing. Entropy was incensed. "Why are you smiling?" I coughed up some blood and smiled at him again, "Because I know something you don't." "And what is that?" "You lose." He tried to hit me again. I dodged and grabbed his head with both my hands and started to absorb his life force. Well, life force would be an exaggeration. Entropy didn't have a soul, he was a cosmic being. His life force was his power. It kept going inside me, and my soul was getting denser and denser, it was expanding. He blocked my hands in panic and tried to punch me again, only this time, I grabbed his hand. The cosmic entity gave me a disbelieving look. "How?" I pinned his hand and went back to absorbing his power. I was almost done now, but frantically, he tried to get away. I let him. He was almost dry now. My soul felt like it was going to burst, and Entropy looked like he was half faded. "This is impossible." I shrugged. We're in a realm that is paradoxical in nature. The word impossible is just that, a word. He looked at me with pleading eyes and yelled, "It's not fair. It's not fair. I did everything right. I should have won." I stayed silent and the cosmic being looked in tears now. "I'm sorry. I know I crossed a line. I did. I shouldn't have done what I did. I just wanted my existence to have meaning. I wanted to matter. I wanted to do my duty." "I know," I replied, "and I did." I could understand him better now. His nature, his desperation, his existence, it made him into the being he became, forged him into a bitter cosmic being that held very little influence. "You don't have to do this," he said, while kneeling. "You know I do," I answered simply. He nodded and looked down and asked, "Does it hurt?" "Not at all," I said. "Quicker and easier than falling asleep." "Good," he breathed, "that's good. Farewell, Morrigan. Farewell, Entropy." I grabbed his head once more and felt the remnant of his power enter my soul. By the time I was done, Entropy had faded into nothing. The moment that happened, I could feel my soul pop, and everything turned white. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athosbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 376, Infinite. Chapter 376, Infinite. Unknown time, unknown space. I am looking at the immense kaleidoscope of realities in front of me while fully understanding what I am seeing for the first time. My mind comprehends what happened. The past, present, and future are all coalescing into a single moment, like a videotape that I can rewind and see. My perception expanded, embracing the boundless tapestry of existence that stretched infinitely in all directions. It's a unique sensation, the touch of every thread, every story, every life dancing upon my consciousness. With a mere thought, I traverse the realms beyond time's grasp. My powers are not confined by the limitations of past, present, or future. Time is a tapestry I weave and unweave with the mere flutter of an eyelash, a dance I choreograph with the flick of a finger. The boundaries that mortals perceive, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, are but illusions to me. I navigate the currents of existence with ease, for I am the fulcrum upon which the pendulum swings. And so, I found myself suspended in the interstitial spaces, a silent observer of the cosmic ballet. Stars ignited in the velvet expanse, galaxies spun like celestial pinwheels, and planets danced in the rhythm of their own gravitational waltzes. My senses drank in the symphony of creation, each note resonating through the infinite cosmos. I don't know why I chose to look at this specific universe. Maybe it was just out of nostalgia. It doesn't matter, I don't have to be logical anymore. I don't need to prove anything. I just am. As I enter the universe at the center of the multiverse, I create a body construct in the void of space and choose to admire the miracle of creation. My form is arbitrary, a reflection of the perceptions of those who encounter me. Yet, I've always chosen to retain my distinctively vivid green eyes. This time, I chose to wear my cloak around my shoulders, with my hood up, hiding my somewhat human appearance. I think I like this form. It's intimidating enough that no one would dismiss me, but not too monstrous and mind-provoking, which would often drive three-dimensional beings into madness. I look at the stars. They're so far away, yet to me it seems like they're right next to me. When I see them, I do not see the small blips of gas, heat, and light, but them being the source of all life, of all creation. I couldn't help but marvel at the fragile intricacies that made it possible, the delicate interplay of forces, the intricate choreography of particles, the cosmic ballet of cause and effect. It was a testament to the exquisite artistry of creation, a canvas painted with the hues of the infinite. Just like me. Just like my very nature. It's the last day of July in 1980, and Jasmine Potter was born. She was a cheerful baby, who was attached to her brother. I see Tom Riddle, the boy who tried to flee me in pieces, walk up the stairs. He's so angry, so hateful, unaware of just how useless all that fear, all that anger, and all that hate, truly are. Nothing would ever stop me from collecting him at the end. After all, I am not bound by time, nor am I bound by space. You would think that he should disgust me, but all I feel is pity, for the man has doomed his soul to limbo until it is recycled once more. Normally, I would have just killed him out of irritation for messing up my system, but he is necessary. He is needed, and I let him come up the stairs. I see him hitting the girl with a killing curse, which will rebound on him. I decide to let it hit her because it is necessary. The curse should have killed the girl, its energy had to go somewhere. I used it to split her soul into two, one that remained in her body, and another which had most of the trauma from the spell, that I stuck in a simulated life, enjoying watching other universes as movies or reading about them as books. I made it just for her, to live, to grow, and to learn. She needs the information if she is to fulfill her destiny. I wait for it while it recovers from the trauma. It is the 20th of March 1987. The small soul fragment in the simulation has recovered. She thinks she lived an entirely different life. In a way, she did. The soul inside Jasmine Potter's body knows nothing but pain and suffering. It is intelligent for a mortal child, but not really anything to write about. Such a small thing, for such an immense destiny. When the girl is unconscious from an accident, I put the second piece of her soul back into her body, knowing that they would merge eventually. It takes 2 years for that to happen, a blink of an eye for something like me. It is the 5th of April 1775. The Morrigan had just wiped out an entire clan of vampires that developed a plague that could have wiped out the entirety of humanity. I put a small runic array in her mind without her noticing. It will start as an idea and prosper into something more. It will only work a single time, at the exact moment it is destined to be used. It is the 27th of August 1989, Jasmine Potter touches a Wadjet eye, with that specific runic array that I gave the Morrigan. I had an agreement with time to let her go back to her own timeline. I asked Destiny to write her a story, a book filled with adventures and tests, a book to temper her towards her own destiny. He agrees, and I can tell that she is suffering. It is 3729 BC, and I could feel some mortals try to summon me. I could have ignored it, but I knew that it was important. It was necessary. I let a fragment of myself answer the summons, knowing that anything more would disturb the delicate balance of the universe. I let it play my role, like a play with strings. On that day, Atlantis sinks and I gain a new servant. My only servant. It is 823 BC, the Morrigan is calling herself Medusa now. She uses the Soul Stone to create a realm for the survivors of Atlantis, allowing the Olympians to ascend. I could have stopped her and destroyed the entire realm with a wave of my hand. It wouldn't have taken much for me to do it. They all forget that even gods could die, that they are not safe from my wrath. They're lucky that I am not capable of such an emotion, not anymore. I let Olympus rise but take away the Soul Stone. It's just a trinket to me, really, but it achieved its purpose. The Morrigan's soul has mutated, and grown into something fundamentally inhuman, capable of growth and change. I put it on Vormir, where it should have been anyway, to be later retrieved by the Mad Titan. It's the 3rd of July 2017. Wanda Maximoff completes her ritual to return to the past and save her mother. Her soul is almost entirely beholden to the Darkhold in her desperation to see her mother again, the only woman who had ever loved her. She is unaware that she has a passenger. Her ritual shouldn't have worked. Thon is an elder god of creation, a multidimensional fearsome creature that is connected to countless universes. But it is not a cosmic entity. It might as well be a speck of dust to me. It's the 2nd of March 2006. I watch as the Morrigan mourns a corrupted version of her daughter as she is erased from the universe to correct the timeline. I ask time and destiny to lock up that universe specifically, allowing no one to peer into the future or change it. Too much is at stake. The Morrigan must complete her destiny. 3 months later, I see the Morrigan meet her fated enemy, Entropy. She loses badly and is banished to another dimension. Destiny had written it down and the ink was dry. It was the only way that she would survive the fight, something that was necessary for her destiny. Entropy is a weakling of a cosmic entity, and he knew it. We do not measure our power using the energy that we can output but through the strength of our concepts. He was born as the first Big Bang in the first universe occurred, and he was different because of the fact that he was bound by time. He should have been connected to another entity as a way of stabilizing it, but I told them all not to. I had plans for it. Plans that are coming to fruition now. But the main issue is that he is paradoxical to his own nature, and he doesn't have anything to compensate for. In a reality of complete entropy, the concept itself cannot exist there. As such, I often reap universes when they almost reach such inevitability. I do it to avoid this entity going mad as he realizes the contradictory nature of his existence. When he leaves with the mad purpose of destroying the multiverse, I let him. As the final battle nears, I pull a few strings. I put the ritual to ascend using Ego's seed in her head as a final resort and arranged for her to be desperate enough to perform it, knowing that the essence inside her would spread and slowly take away her mortality. I manipulate Celine and Rose into betraying her, pushing her further and further towards her inevitable ascension. Hundreds of thousands of little things put together, small pushes, small things that would be impossible in the eyes of any mortal, slowly edge the whole thing towards my desired outcome. It is the 3rd of March 2013 and the Morrigan has banished both her sister and her wife, dooming her humanity in the process. It is the 24th of March 2015 and my champion is trying to tie her soul to the realm she had created long ago, seeking comfort in the familiarity of an old love. I know the exact words to kill her defiance, to destroy the hope she has left. Some might call it monstrous, but that word doesn't mean anything to something like me. I call it inevitable. It is the 26th of April 2015. On the remnants of a world that prospered once, Entropy and the Morrigan battle. Soon after the battle starts, the celestial hybrid is dead, but the avatar of Dream survives with an illusion and a dream. I did help slightly, after all, Dream wouldn't like his only champion perishing so quickly. As the Morrigan's wife sacrifices herself for her sake, the final anchor is finished. She is ready. I watch as she tricks Entropy into transporting them into the quantum realm. Most cosmic entities are aware of this realm but aren't interested in it. It is a realm of chaos, and most concepts like entropy don't exist there. I watch as the Morrigan slowly stores her opponent's power in her soul, unaware of the consequences of her decision. Her heart was shattered, her soul broken enough that she would absorb anything to mend it. The nature of her soul allowed her to absorb far more than any other soul could manage. The restrictions on all souls do not exist in hers, allowing her to take more than she probably should. But she didn't care. Her only purpose was to kill her opponent, to make him hurt. I am not surprised. After all, I made her that way. When entropy finally fades into nothing, she finally understands that something is wrong for a fraction of a second and feels fear for the last time. A token funeral is held days later. There is nothing to bury. No one even knows what happened, only that the multiverse hasn't ended. Slowly people forget and the world moves on. The Morrigan's cursed existence fades from everyone's mind. No one knows what happened to her. No one understands what she became. They couldn't even if I had told them. No one but me. After all, I used to be her once. Her soul was shredded, something that never happened before. Something that will not happen again, and from the ashes, I was born. For I am the personification of the end. For I am death, the destroyer of worlds. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times. Chapter 377, Scarlet Closure. Chapter 377, Scarlet Closure. June 15, 2018, Sayre Manor, New York City. Wanda Maximoff POV. Wanda Maximoff woke up next to her fiancé, Jean Grey, like she did every day. She got to her kitchen and saw her usual cup of coffee ready for her, courtesy of her mother's house elf. Well, her house elf now. Even 3 years after Jasmine's death, she still had some trouble considering what her mother had left her as her own. She knew that Jasmine was rich and very influential, but honestly, that barely scratched the surface. The Marvel Media Company alone was responsible for most of the news broadcasts in the world, even in foreign countries. It was the producer of over 3/4 of any media company, from books to movies, in the country. It wouldn't be a lie to say that Jasmine literally controlled public perception. Well, Celine did, most of the time. Jasmine's tragic death meant that Wanda had control over all of that, and also a few hundred companies that were each worth more than entire countries. And that's not even mentioning the countless priceless artifacts whose number is large enough to build dozens of museums. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Wanda became the richest person in the world overnight, and that was terrifying. What was also unsettling was the godly figure that she became to the entire world after the invasion. Wanda had coordinated the defense of the planet, and the entire world knew it. Governments all around the world wanted to know about the conflict, and Wakanda had no choice but to reveal the footage, revealing the technologically advanced nature of the country, as well as the military of Genosha. Thankfully, the sorcerers were assumed to be mutants as well, so that wasn't that big of a deal. It wouldn't do for people to realize the extra-dimensional threats that the sorcerers keep fighting. People would start summoning demons left and right, and that was just bad for everybody. Anyway, the nations of Genosha and Wakanda revealed their existence and formally allied themselves. Mutants became the saviors of humanity overnight, and the biggest assets against extraterrestrial threats. Which was very useful, since Thanos dying at the hands of humanity meant that humanity was on the map on a galactic scale. The Mad Titan was very well known in the galaxy, and his death was celebrated in thousands of systems. Young mutants stopped being persecuted and instead became something akin to celebrities. Already, there were plans for hero schools all over the world, and with the rising number of mutants, it was a good way to handle this. Mutants needed to register in the government to get access to facilities to train their powers, which they were allowed to use in public if they did not inconvenience civilians in any way. Yeah, it was the Mutant Registration Act, but only done properly. The changes were gradual, slow, but very welcoming. And with Stark and Richards designing planetary defenses, the world was strangely in peace. Just as Jasmine planned it would be. And wasn't that a surprise, to see Jasmine's office reveal a secret passage after her death, one designed for her, that had the details of her assets, the location of thousands of caches of treasure that she just left around out of boredom, and her plan for uniting humanity. But amid this newfound harmony, there was a sense of bittersweetness. The absence of Jasmine, the architect of this transformation, was acutely felt. Her foresight, her determination, and her belief in the potential of both mutants and humanity at large had paved the way for this reality. And yet, she wasn't here to witness her vision become a reality. For Wanda, Jasmine's passing brought a flood of emotions. There were countless unsaid words, regrets that lingered like shadows. The estrangement between mother and daughter during Jasmine's final years weighed heavily on Wanda's heart. She longed to apologize for her silence, to explain that she hadn't understood the depth of her mother's pain and struggles. The incident with Rose, a turning point in their relationship, had created a rift that was never truly healed. Speaking of Rose, she had finally stabilized the Wizarding World's economy after Jasmine practically destroyed it. She had accepted a position as the headmistress of Hogwarts after McGonagall's retirement and was pretty much internationally recognized as one of the main pillars of the magical world. Soon, after humanity fully accepted mutant kind, the statute of secrecy would be abolished, just like Jasmine planned. Wizards and witches would just be accepted iterations of mutants, and the separated humanity would finally be at peace and united. Fucking hell, that woman thought in the long term. Her vision had transcended generations, and her impact continued to shape the destiny of the world. In the end, Jasmine had lost faith in her dream, not because she thought that it was impossible, but because she just stopped caring about it. Such was the creature she became in the end. There were a million things that Wanda wanted to say to her. She wanted to apologize for not helping her with her condition. She wanted to apologize for seeing her lose hope, but choosing not to do anything about it. There was no doubt in her mind that Jasmine knew that she was going to die, and it was obvious, yet Wanda did nothing. Perhaps she thought that it was a mercy, in a way, to die and not become something so inhuman that it could barely be categorized as alive. But most of all, she wanted to ask, why did you have to leave? Because, I was needed, of course, a soft voice answered behind her. With the voice, came a particular sensation. The air seemed to grow heavier, and a subtle hush fell over the garden that Wanda inherited from her deceased mother. Wanda turned, her heart instinctively quickening at the sight before her. A figure stood at the other side of the garden, in the shadow of a large willow tree, yet her voice was projected as if she was next to Wanda. She dressed in a flowing ebony cloak that seemed to drink in the light around it. The cloak was embroidered with countless intricate patterns, resembling stars and galaxies woven into fabric. Her raven black hair was breathtaking, each strand glinting like starlight caught in an obsidian river. The figure's back was to her, their heads slightly tilted as if listening to the whispers of the wind. Wanda was about to demand the woman to leave, but froze when she turned. The woman was pale. No, it was better to say that she was chalk white, which contrasted starkly with the inky darkness of her attire. She had a silver ankh pendant nestled against her chest, a symbol of life and death intertwined, a delicate balance she upheld, but this wasn't what made Wanda freeze. It was the eyes. Her emerald green eyes that glowed with an intensity that reminded her of a single person, Mom. The figure appeared right next to her, in some ways yes, and in many others not. I don't understand. The woman that was your mother is a part of me. She became me, in a way. It's a funny way of seeing life, I guess. It all just disappears, doesn't it? Everything you are, in a moment, like a breath on a mirror. Wanda didn't really understand, but you are my mother. And I always will be. But times change and so did I. Everyone changes, when you think about it. You're all different people all throughout your lives. And that's okay, as long as you remember all the people you used to be. I guess I'm not any different, which is a funny thought, now that I think about it. What happened, Mom? Jean said that you were dead, and that you took Entropy with you. The woman snickered for some reason. I guess that's one way to look at it. Entropy was never the endgame, he was the catalyst. He was never meant to exist, naturally I mean. His domain was always mine, after all entropy is just a facet of death. I just let him gain consciousness because he was necessary. It's pretty complicated, but it's also convoluted that I don't know how to put it into words. This was getting pretty annoying, then try. Oh, so demanding. If you were younger, I would have grounded you. Just explain it, please, Wanda asked. That's better. I raised you better than that. But are you sure you want to know? The truth isn't something that you will like. I am. Sure, that is, the reality manipulator asked. The truth is that your mother's existence is a time loop. She was selected when she was born, her soul warped in a way, forced to live, experience life in a prison made of time, fate, and destiny. She needed to experience life at its fullest. Love, hate, contentment, agony, everything. And then, when she was finished, she needed to lose everything that made her willing to live until she accepted herself and became me. Every single moment of her life was scripted in the biggest play the multiverse had ever seen, also that I would be born of the ashes of her life. Wanda trembled. So, you tormented her, broke her, destroyed everything she was, everything she wanted to be, and for what? For you. I am different than her, but I am still her. I remember being her. Every moment of agony was also mine. Isn't it fair if I'm the one suffering alongside her? And who are you? The woman shrugged. I am Death. Oh, that's it. Wanda wanted to punch this woman in the face. You mean Death, the cosmic entity that made Jasmine's life a living hell. Yes, exactly. My existence is necessary for anything to ever exist. Trust me, I decided to take a break once because no one seemed to appreciate what I do. Let's just say that the other entity started to respect me a lot more after that. But for Death to be born, it needed to know the value of life. I needed to live the fullest life there was, and your mother did experience that. But why did it have to be Jasmine? Wanda asked. I am not the one that decided. I wish you could perceive time like I could. My existence was a time loop, and I needed to resolve it. I remembered being your mother, so I made sure everything happened the way they did for me. So, why were there so many other iterations of the fight with entropy? Death answered with a snort. There was only one iteration and I ended up overpowering Jasmine to cripple him. We then allowed an iteration of you to come back into the same timeline to set things in motion in the exact way I remembered. I just lied to her, just as Death lied to me when I was in her position. Then tell me, why are you here? To speak with my daughter, of course. I learned from the last time I did it to not just disappear on you. It's cruel to just think that I was dead. Wanda frowned. But aren't you staying? I have responsibilities, daughter, ones that I'm already ignoring just to speak with you. I am here to bring you closure, nothing more. I'm sorry to say that this will probably be the last time I'll contact you. But what about the others? What about Hogwarts and Rose? Death snorted. Hogwarts is thousands of years old, Wanda. She has seen more life and death than you could possibly imagine. Children she cared for were massacred. I watch over her sometimes. She was sad to hear about my death, but she moved on. Rose doesn't even know that I'm alive. Telling her would be needlessly cruel, but you have my permission to give her Avalon. She's definitely earned it by now. You are the only person that still mourns me, Wanda. Is it really bad that I wanted you to live your life once more? Jean is already worrying about you, especially considering the parallels to how I was behaving after Celine betrayed me. When I was Jasmine, when I was the Morrigan, I wanted you to be my heir, my successor when I retired or died. Now, as the last part of your mother that still remains, I want to ask only one thing of you. Just one. Live. You're leaving me again, Wanda said, ignoring her eyes getting wetter. I guess I am, but I want you to know that I will keep watching you, and that I will never forget you. I will never forget one line of my life as Jasmine Potter, as the Morrigan. Not even a single day, and that I swear. I will always remember being your mother. Goodbye, Wanda. With a blink of Wanda's eyes, Death disappeared, and the world resumed. A part of her wanted to pretend that it never happened, but she knew deep in her heart that it did. Her mother had come to say goodbye, one last time. Was she right? Did she really forget to really live after Jasmine died? Her thoughts were interrupted by Jean kissing her. Good morning, Wanda. When she noticed the tears on Wanda's face, her expression turned concerned. Are you all right? Clearing up the stains, the Scarlet Witch nodded. Yeah, just some sad thoughts. You know what, Jean, I've been thinking. We've been working really hard in the last few years. How do you feel about having a vacation, just the two of us? Considering the surprised and delighted expression on her fiancé's face, this was a good decision. Her mother was right. She needed to start living once more. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/athasbrkr. I tend to upload drafts of early chapters on there to get people's opinions of them so you can read up to 20 chapters ahead as a bonus. Thank you guys for your support in these hard times.